Hey you all, welcome to Just a Shinobi. Today, we dive into an exciting what-if scenario. What if Puppet Master Naruto trained by Sasori? If you enjoy this, hit subscribe for more thrilling content. Explore my other videos, share with friends, enjoy them too, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. It motivates me. Let's not waste any time. Jump into today's what if. Chapter 1. Beginnings. Betrayal. Hate. Anger. Sadness. Those were the feelings that plagued Naruto all of his life. For 4 years he lived a life of hell. Defenseless. He had no idea why, but nearly everyone in Konoha hated his very existence. And he could do nothing about it. But those days changed the day he journeyed to Suna with the third Hokage and discovered a way to defend himself. It also led to an obsession. Current time. 4-year-old Naruto didn't know how he got here. All he remembers was running from a group of angry children who saw him talking to a lonely redhead that could control sand. He ran for what seemed like hours. Running toward the outskirts of the village. He had tripped over a large rock, fell down into a ravine and into a tunnelway. It was there that he stumbled upon a door. It had a picture of a red scorpion and looked like it hadn't been opened in years. Injured and angry with those asshole kids, he pushes the door open with a scowl. He would get back at them later. He looks down a long dimly lit hallway and sees yet another door at the end of it. He makes his way over to it. Whoa. Was all he could say when he lays eyes on what was in the room. There were body parts, tools, weapons and scrolls all over the place. The body parts were made of strong wood. He looks around confused until he spots an old journal. It was sitting on a small worn-out desk and had a black cover with a drawing of a red scorpion on it. It obviously hadn't been used in years. He slowly makes his way over to it and flips through a few pages before realizing that the journal contained a single message. A mere paragraph of words. He reads the message with a raised eyebrow. I am known as Sasori of the Red Sands. That is all you need to know about me. My age is timeless. My prowess is unprecedented. My power will be unrivaled. I am the master of the puppet techniques, killer of a Kazekage, soon to be immortal. I have delved deep within techniques that all others have feared to tread. I have left this room as a taunt to you arrogant Suna shinobi. I have no doubt someone will stumble upon this room and use the puppets here to strengthen their own, and I have left the means to do so. And for that Suna you had better be thankful. Naruto smirks and drops the journal. Not at all impressed with this Sasori's little message. Too bad I'm not from Suna. Stupid Sasori team. He walks over to a simple-looking scroll and picks it up. I'll become greater than even you. Stuck-up bastard, he says with a frown as he looks at what the title said. Basic puppeteer exercises. Naruto raises an eyebrow and continued to read. What he found intrigued him. Apparently Sasori used this room exclusively when he created his puppets and even as he trained as a rookie puppeteer. He spent countless hours reading through the scrolls of this room and now it would be Naruto's turn. His interest grew by the second. He learned that in order to control the puppet, one required a skill to create chakra strings and complex finger movements. There were instructions at the bottom for beginners. He spent the next couple of days practicing the finger movements and the chakra exercises needed to create chakra strings. It went well despite his apparent lack of chakra control. After he had more or less perfected the chakra string, he went on to the next step of learning how to become a puppeteer. He had to learn how to attach the chakra strings to an object and make it move. This was a lot more difficult than creating chakra strings. He quickly learned that he needed to increase his control over chakra if he wanted to accomplish this goal. He spent 2 weeks doing so when yet another scroll was revealed to have several different chakra exercises described in it. Naruto didn't know what compelled him to continue reading the scrolls on puppets or why he even spent so much time learning the steps to learn the technique, but he did. He just kept on reading through the scrolls. Learning from the instructions left behind by some unknown shinobi of Suna. Completely unaware of the power he was granting himself. 3 weeks went by and Naruto had succeeded in making an arm on the wall move and launch a barrage of senbon. He had even managed to use the arm to hunt. He was coming along quickly. His skill growing every day. By the end of the 4th week he was able to walk up and down the walls using his chakra. He was able to quickly and efficiently create and attach chakra strings to the puppet parts and bring them to life. He even had a pretty good grasp of what movements moved what on the puppet. He grins and opens his current scroll a bit further, proceeding to the next step. Step 22: Creating your own puppet. Naruto grins. He didn't know it was even possible to create his own puppet. Then again it should have been obvious. He read through the instructions on how to use the various tools needed to assemble a puppet of his own. Various screwdrivers, oils, mallets, hammers and even a blowtorch lie about the room waiting to be used. Naruto grins again and looks around. There were various torsos, arms, legs, a few heads, a lot of different weapons including a large zanbatsu, and even some hair. He takes it all in, deciding what to use. He finally settles on a torso that would belong on a young teen, the large Zanbatsu and a large ball of yellow hair. 2 months went by. Naruto was covered in oil, dirt and sand. This was by far the hardest thing he had ever indulged in. Creating a puppet was something that took skill. And time. He was up for most of the 2 months working on his custom puppet. I hope Hokage Gigi isn't too worried about me, he says to himself as he makes the final adjustments to his puppet. The rate at which Naruto learned the techniques in the scrolls could have been described as prodigious. His brain soaked up the info with ease and efficiency. It was as if something within him provided him with the right type of deducing skills needed to learn quickly. He didn't focus on that though. He was currently reading yet another scroll as he tightened the joints and various other parts on his puppet. This one was a human anatomy scroll. He didn't really understand why a scroll such as this one would be in a room like this, but he figured if it was there then he perhaps should study that as well. Finally, says an excited Naruto as he finishes his puppet. It was a near-perfect replica of himself, only about 1.5 feet taller. He had the same blue eyes and wild yellow hair. He even had 6 whisker marks on his cheeks. His jaw was segmented so it could open wide enough for various projectiles, such as kunai shuriken and senbon needles. The left forearm was a wide cylinder that held senbon and poison gas, while the left arm split in half and a spinning demon wind shuriken attached to a rod extended out. On its back was the large Zanbatsu and a long fox tail. The tail was segmented and covered in yellow hair. It was twice as long as the puppet is tall. It held shuriken, kunai and senbon. All dipped in a powerful poison he discovered near the back of the room. It was dressed in a tattered black cloak. That's all he had to work with at the moment, but he planned on changing that. He flexes his fingers and attaches the chakra strings to the puppet to test out his kill and its maneuverability. It immediately comes to life with various clicking sounds. Naruto moves his fingers a bit and the puppet slowly rises to its feet. He grins at his creation. He does a few test movements causing the puppet to take a couple of steps forward. He smiles. Not bad for his first time. I'll call you Fox Naruto, he says as he pockets the anatomy scroll. The puppet clicks a few times. Naruto smiles and looks around the room. There was so much he still needed to learn. He knew that. He wanted to learn. He craved it. He walks over to the back of the room, his new puppet, Fox Naruto, taking clumsy steps toward him as Naruto continued to move his fingers and control it. Naruto scans the room and spots a pair of scrolls. He grabs them and looks at the titles. One was labeled storing your puppets in seals while the other was labeled forbidden. Intrigued, Naruto opens the seal scroll first. Here are the instructions on storing your puppets, it read. Naruto looks down and there was a drawing of one seal. It was quite simple really. It merely required a few complex designs and the kanji for what you were storing in that seal. Naruto grins and pockets the scroll. That would come in handy in the future. He then looks at the other scroll in his hand and frowns. Something that said forbidden on it just didn't emanate a friendly aura. But it still. He said he was going to surpass Sasori and that's what he intended to do. He could learn whatever was listed in this scroll. This forbidden scroll held the instructions to create a puppet made from a human corpse. In all of its gory detail. Naruto had never read anything so grotesque in his life. Hell, some of the treatment of the villagers weren't as gross as this. He continued to read. Drinking in the info and subconsciously storing it within his mind. He learned that in order to create a human puppet, he needed a lot of preservatives and a place to get rid of the organs. It was sick yet interesting at the same time. The more he read, the more he learned. For instance, he learned that a human puppet retains the abilities of the person used for the process. This included bloodline limits. He also learned that human puppets are a bit more durable than regular puppets. He pockets the scroll with a smile. He just might use this technique on some of his enemies. Naruto grabs a few more instruction scrolls and heads back toward the center of the room. Fox Naruto following. He looks around with a smile at all the leftover puppet parts, vials of liquid poison and tools. He grabs the tools, some of the jars of poisons and as much weapons as he could hold and puts them in his backpack along with all the scrolls and instructions. He looks around the room one last time and smiles. It was nearly completely cleaned out and Naruto's backpack was stuffed beyond its limits. Sasori of the Red Sands. I thank you very much, he says as he exits the room. I promise to be the greatest puppet ninja ever. And with that, Naruto Uzumaki and Fox Naruto leave the old lab of Sasori of the Red Sands and heads back into Suna to meet with Sarutobi. Scene change. Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, was panicking. It had been nearly 3 whole months since Naruto had vanished. He was supposed to be back in Konoha 2 weeks ago. But he wasn't about to leave the blonde boy. He knew Naruto must have gotten caught up in something. Especially after the young boy by the name of Gaara informed him that Naruto was chased away by a group of mean kids because he had said hi to him and said his sand was cool. Sarutobi could still feel the happiness that was radiating from the retreat. The poor boy was living a life just like Naruto it seemed. Suddenly a series of clicking behind him causes him to spin around. What he sees causes him to gasp. "And Naruto?" he asks. "No, I'm right here, Hokage. That's Fox Naruto." Sarutobi turns to the left and sees none other the Uzumaki Naruto standing on a boulder in front of him. His clothing was torn and dirty and his eyes were half closed. He was grinning with his arm extended and his fingers twitching and jerking. Sarutobi turns back to Fox Naruto and examines it closely. He gasps a second later. "Like it, Hokage? I created it myself. It was awesome. I found this old puppet room and learned from the scrolls there." Naruto has his puppet leap over the Hokage and take its position next to Naruto. Sarutobi was speechless. Naruto had learned a Suna technique to this level in a mere 3.5 months. It was unheard of. On top of that, he had created his own puppet. And Naruto Cool huh? Now I dare any stupid villagers to mess with me. Naruto leaps down to face the Hokage with a tired smile. Without another word the two then make their way to the exit of Sunagakure. Neither of them notices a small red head spying on them from a tree with sad smile. The boy sighs sadly before vanishing in a swirl of sand. Time skip. Naruto ran straight home as soon as he entered the village. A large scroll bouncing on his small back as he bounded through the village. Courtesy of Sarutobi who told him that walking through the village with a bag full of puppet parts, weapons, poisons and instruction scrolls would rouse the bloodlust of the already bloodthirsty villagers. He had sealed everything including Fox Naruto in that scroll for him. Naruto vowed to learn how to do that as well. He ignored the hate-filled glares and jeers thrown his way as he made his way toward his home. All of his anger and resentment gone for the moment. Replaced by excitement. For just this moment. He burst into his apartment room and drops the scroll to the ground. He bites his thumb and swipes the blood across the kanji for seal. A sizable burst of smoke and a large pile of everything he had taken from Sasori's room was in front of him. He grins and grabs Fox Naruto and places him in his chair. He then grabs all of the scrolls and puts them in a pile at the foot of his bed. Next are all the weapons. He had actually managed to stuff quite a few in his backpack before Sarutobi sealed them. 3 katanas, about 600 senbon needles, 80 shuriken, 100 kunai, 2 large demon wind shuriken, a pair of broadswords, a chain whip, a chain scythe, an extendable spear and 10 wicked curved daggers made up the pile. Next were the puppet pieces. There wasn't much, seeing as Naruto didn't want to be using Sasori's parts, but there were some essentials. 3 heads, 2 torsos and a set of arms and legs and 6 bottles of purple poison. He would make his own parts in the future. Last were the tools. The hammer, screwdrivers, the drills, the blowtorch. Everything he would need in order to build a puppet. Almost everything. He needed more tools and supplies. An issue he would address later. There was also that scroll on human puppets. Should he do such a thing? Turn someone into a puppet? For now he didn't have an answer. I'll worry about that later. I got work and training to do. He thought excitably. Over the next 6 years, Naruto became an enigma. He completely enthralled himself in the studies of the puppeteer and hardly left his apartment. He worked tirelessly day and night getting stronger. Sasori's message was taped to his wall, taunting him. Forcing him to grow stronger. He completely isolated himself from the civilization that scorned him so terribly. He never once created another puppet, but he did create several different installations for Fox Naruto. Controlling the puppet became second nature. So well developed that it looked like the puppet possessed a life of its own. Naruto hardly had to move anything to get the puppet to follow his commands. He spent countless hours reading through the scrolls. Learning constantly, and it seemed the more he learned, the more possibilities that revealed themselves. The art of the puppeteer was truly a treasure to discover. His skills skyrocketed. By the end of his second year he was able to control numerous items at once, one for every finger. This alone meant that Naruto could control Fox Naruto with a single finger. Over the years his apartment became a spitting image of Sasori's room. Homemade puppet parts, weapons and tools hung on nearly every inch of the wall. He took to growing herbs for his poisons and even had a little forge in his kitchen floor, and since he lived on the top floor, no one really noticed any smoke. He ventured out every once in a while and stole whatever he could get his hands on. Food, clothing and materials fell to his chakra strings. Sarutobi had taught him numerous funinjutsu. This included the one that stored items into scrolls, something that the blonde was greatly happy for. Naruto also began to study weapons. He figured that having all these items around and not be able to use them would be pointless. He took to sparring with Fox Naruto in order to learn them to a decent degree. Currently his favorite weapon was the chain scythe. Naruto trained intensely every day. He forged some makeshift weights and drew some seals on them that could store chakra and use it to increase the weight holding him down and practice daily routines every morning. This consisted of push-ups, punches, kicks and hanging from the ceiling upside down using chakra. It was a sloppy unorthodox routine, but it was doing wonders for the boy. He learned much. Between living alone and furiously training to be the greatest puppeteer, he had to learn these things. This included cooking, cleaning, sewing and even hairdressing. He was never out of things to do. Another aspect of his training was the knowledge of the human body. Not a day goes by that he didn't read a bit of that book. It was always with him. This book provided him with a vast amount of understanding. It helped him with his puppetry skills very much. It also gave him the knowledge he needed in case he decided to create a human puppet. For 6 years no one had heard a single word about Naruto. They knew he holed himself up in his apartment, but no one really cared. Just so long as the demons stayed out of their sight. That is until the 10th celebration of Kyuubi's defeat. That was when everything changed. Time skip. Like any other night, 10-year-old Naruto Uzumaki was nose deep in a scroll and tinkering with Fox Naruto's tail. He had shortened it after about 2 years. Now he was drawing a few more weapons, storing seals and making his routine checkup of the joints, latches and openings for the numerous contraptions hidden on the tail. He was lost in his own world of human anatomy and puppet maintenance when it happened. Crash. Bam. It came so suddenly Naruto didn't have time to react. A brick smashes through his window and bashes him in the head. At the same time his door is kicked in and about 20 villagers burst into the room wielding sake bottles, knives, planks and stones. Also 3 ninja came in through the broken window. 2 Chunin and an Anbu. Naruto's head was killing him and blood was gushing from the split in his skull. He groans. The group pauses when they see the assortment of items in the room. The lead villager voices his opinion. "What kind of sick practices are you doing in here, demon?" He lifts up a puppet head and tosses it across the room. The woman cringes. It looks like he was practicing for when he really decides to sate his bloodlust. The villagers and the 3 ninja glare. "Well, we won't let that happen now, will we?" asks the Anbu in a female's voice. There was a loud cheer of hell no. Before they all surge forward at the still dazed and confused Naruto. Fox Naruto being thrown to the side. The villagers pounded upon Naruto's prone form without mercy. They kept shouting things like, "Time to finish what the 4th started. And we've let you live long enough. You thought you were safe in this apartment." For what seemed like hours they attacked the boy who for the most part still didn't know what was going on. He could feel the pain, hear the taunts and decipher how many there were, but he still didn't know how or when this attack had started. It was relentless. And it brought back the memories of his earlier childhood. Blood poured from nearly every part of his body, gashes and broken bones decorated the boy's entire body. He passes out just as the beating stops and he is hoisted up by his underarms. Naruto's mind. Naruto sighs and gets to his feet. He looks around with a sad but angry smile. His eyes scan the area. "Where the hell did they dump me this time?" he says as he takes in the pale yellow glow of his surroundings. He also notices that the ground was covered in ankle-deep murky water. The sewer. How original, he deadpans as he begins to look for an exit. He rounds a corner and takes off down the hall. He comes to another corner and sees a red glow. "Must be sunrise," he says as he rounds the corner. What he sees was not the glow of the sun rising. It instead was a gigantic gate with a paper seal on the front of it. The red glow was emanating from inside. Naruto raises an eyebrow. "Diluo." The pair of huge red eyes suddenly snaps open. This causes Naruto to yelp and leap back. The deep growl so menacing it nearly causes the sewer walls to nearly fall apart erupts from behind the bars as massive fanged grin reveals itself in the darkness. Then there was a voice. It was terrible, deep and menacing. The voice of a creature that reveled in destruction. "So? You have finally come here, you pathetic human boy. What is it that you want from me?" Naruto stares wide-eyed at the beast. Unable to say anything. A set of massive claws suddenly slams into the bars. "Answer me, mortal." Naruto snaps out of it almost instantly. His eyes harden and he stares at the beast with anger and hate. "Listen. I don't know who think you are and I don't care. I've been beaten and tossed into this godforsaken sewer by a bunch of blind Konoha bastards. I don't have time to be fucking around with you. Now tell me how to get the hell out of here." The beast is silent for a couple of minutes until it laughs. A deep rumbling laughter that echoed all throughout the yellow sewers. "Ha ha ha. You must be my jailer. I admire you guts, brat. Even if you are an insolent whelp." Naruto raises an eyebrow. "Jailer? What are you talking about, beast?" The beast's grin grows as he speaks again. "It does not surprise me that you do not know. Ha ha, humans are such simple creatures. Perhaps that is why I enjoy feasting on their marrow so much. Tell me, boy. What do you know of the Kyuubi no Kitsune?" Scene change. Sarutobi was walking through the village, enjoying the festival. He was in a great mood. This was a day he didn't have to worry about paperwork. All around him there was activity. Everyone was celebrating the defeat of the Kyuubi no Kitsune 10 years ago. This brought him to another thought. Naruto Uzumaki hadn't shown up to visit him in a year. He hoped the boy was alright. It wouldn't be until the next day that he would become aware of the situation unfolding in the slums of Konoha. Scene change. The villagers, the shinobi and the residents of the apartment complex were gripped by a terror that they haven't known in 10 years. 3 minutes ago the female Anbu was smirking with her katana poised to strike. That was 3 minutes ago. Before an unbelievably powerful red chakra exploded from the boy's body and his eyes turned red and demonic. What the hell? The demon. It's escaping. Screams the Chunin a second before the power dies out and the boy glares with a look of contempt and hate. Okay everyone, we need to talk. Now. Naruto jams his clawed hand into the chest of the villager who was stupid enough to still be holding him and rips out his still beating heart. You bastard sealed the Kyuubi no Kitsune within my navel in order to save this place and you still treat me like trash. The man dies and the rest of the group is now desperately searching for an escape route. I'm a hero here if this is true. If the Kyuubi is indeed sealed within my body, then I am the only one capable of keeping the beast at bay. He takes a step towards the group and they step back. All except the Anbu. Naruto turns his gaze toward the door where a few people were trying to inch out. And you bastards ignore that rule and make my life a living hell. He raises his hand and attaches a chakra string to the door and pulls it shut. Trapping the people inside. Alone. With him. Why is that? And it better be the right answer. He turns his gaze toward the Anbu. Tears beginning to form in his eyes. He raises his other hand and a string of crimson chakra shots out and connects to Fox Naruto. The Anbu gasps when the puppet comes to life and glides over to its controller. He jerks his finger and the puppet draws its Anbu. One of the villagers decides to answer his question. He sneers and steps forward. We treat you the way you deserve to be treated, monster. We know what you really are. The fact that your eyes are like that is proof enough. That boy was dead the moment you took him over Kyuubi. Naruto's teary eyes harden and without a word and a slight movement of his finger, Fox Naruto lunges and cleaves the man in half with its Anbu. The Anbu gasps because the puppet moved at speeds that rivaled an elite jonin. She didn't have time to think though, because with another movement the puppet's tail suddenly splits into 4 sections and wave after wave of senbon needles and kunai flew from it, killing the 2 Chunin and half of the group. Naruto shows no sign of remorse as he has his puppet lunge again, slashing and hacking the group of people apart with ease and brutality. They tried to run. They tried to scream. They failed. They were doomed. And the entire time this was happening, Naruto stared down the Anbu woman. Tears streaming down his face. Wrong answer, he says as the last villager falls to Naruto's puppet. The Anbu glares and tightens the grip on her katana as the puppet rejoins Naruto at his side. Going to kill me next? Save the challenge for last? She asks. Naruto glares and his eyes return to normal. The red haze around him receding into his seal and the chakra string attached to Fox Naruto turning blue. He twitches his finger and the puppet suddenly spews a cloud of purple mist at the woman from its mouth. She didn't have time to react and the mist was inhaled. Ugh. What the? Naruto speaks again as he approaches the staggering woman. His voice normal again. I will not kill you. This time. He draws his own katana and lops off the woman's arm without a second thought. She screams out, but her senses were too messed up by now for her to do anything about it. Return to Hokage and let him know that I am Naruto Uzumaki, puppet master of Konoha, jailer for the Kyuubi no Kitsune. My age is 10. My prowess will be unprecedented. My skill will be unrivaled. He reaches down and yanks the mask from the woman's face, revealing beautiful brown eyes and long purple hair. Tell Hokage that anyone who crosses me from now on will meet a terrible end and become one of my tools. The woman looks up with clouded vision, clutching the bloody stump of her arm. I will not put up with anyone's crap anymore. Not after what has just been revealed to me, says Naruto as he picks up the woman bridal style. I am Naruto Uzumaki. And those who cross me will be turned into my tools. He then leaps out of his window with the woman in his arms. 2 days later, Sarutobi could be seen sitting at his desk on the verge of tears as he and the now one-armed woman watched through his crystal ball as Naruto began the process of turning his would-be attackers into human puppets. Hokage-sama. Why? Why did he spare me? Asks the woman. Sarutobi sighs and gives the woman a mild glare. I do not know you, Gao. Especially since you should have been the first one he killed. Yugao looks down in shame. I know. You should have thought before you acted. You listened to those villagers far too much and now an entire apartment complex worth of Konoha citizens has been lost. Yugao's head bows down even further. I'm sorry. Sarutobi sighs and puts a hand on the woman's shoulder. I am not the one you should apologize to. Yugao looks up with teary eyes. I'll find a way to let him know. I promise, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi smiles. Good. And who knows? He may even return your arms someday. Yuigao smiles a bit as she returns to watching Naruto. Okage-sama, just where did he learn the puppet technique? Sarutobi smiles and says, I took him to Suna. He learned it there. I see. Still. Human puppets. Just who did he learn from? Sarutobi gazes into the ball and sighs. He learned from the leftover findings of an infamous former shinobi of Suna. You mean? Yes. Naruto Uzumaki stumbled upon the old training grounds of Sasori of the Red Sands. I only hope that Naruto do not emulate the man too much. Yuigao could only nod. 5 months later, the apartment complex came back to life. But there was one key difference. The people that now guarded the now large home of Naruto Uzumaki were no longer alive. Their arms and legs were segmented and their skin was the color of stained wood. They wielded numerous weapons and wooden hands built into the building at numerous points controlled them with the help of a layer of chakra storing seals, sensor seals and security seals. They had become Naruto's guards. His tools. His security puppets. Heh. Anyone who gets too close to this place now better be on guard. Those seals pick up on chakra and ill intent. The second they get within 2 feet of this place my puppets will attack. Naruto smirks and flops down into his bed. Fox Naruto clicking a few times before becoming silent and dropping to the floor. For the first time in a long time, Naruto Uzumaki felt safe. He closes his eyes as visions of stronger human puppets began to dance around in his mind. I wonder if Sasori is still alive. If so, then he better be prepared for the day we meet. I might make him my tool if he isn't careful. Naruto falls asleep with this thought. An obsession beginning to form in his 10-year-old mind. This brat is an interesting one. I never knew one could do such a thing as turn a living creature into a lifeless tool. And it appears he aspires to turn all of his greatest enemies into these tools. Hehehe. Let's see if you accomplish this goal, boy. The Kyuubi then closes his eyes. Resuming its long slumber. Chapter 2 Decisions. A year went by without much incident since that day. No one dared approach Naruto's home after Sarutobi had spread the boy's message. Well, almost no one. The few that disregarded Naruto's warning soon fell to his ingenious traps and puppets. The name Naruto became an infamous one in Konoha. The council was enraged at Naruto's boldness but soon found they too could do nothing about it. Sarutobi had made it perfectly clear that Naruto is not be harmed. There was also the fact that his traps were dangerous enough to take out an Anbu. And they only seemed to be getting more intricate and dangerous. Civilians and shinobi alike had stories to tell about the infamous puppet house, as many came to call it. Using it to scare their children in order to keep them inside at night and causing a few people to wallow even further in their hate. Naruto left his place even less than before after that day. Not even Sarutobi had seen much of the boy. It made him sad to know that a village such as Konoha could do that kind of thing to a child. It hurt him deeply. Scene change. Yuigao was doing her daily patrol through Konoha like any other day, only she was lost in thought. She had always been so since that day. She unconsciously touches the stump where her left arm used to be and sighs. That day flashed through her mind constantly. That day she nearly stabbed him with that sword, and the day that he looked at her with those deep red demonic eyes that held more sadness and pain than any human she had seen. It was at that moment that she realized her mistake. Or perhaps it was when he spared her life and dropped her off at the hospital. Taking only an arm as punishment. She sighs and says one word. The word that was meant for only her but was picked up by her partner and caused him to raise an eyebrow. Naruto. Is that the guy who took your arm? Asks Gecko Hate with kind eyes. Yuigao nods, slightly surprised that the man heard her. He's a young boy who has been done a great injustice. Hate nods. He's that puppeteer boy, right? The one everybody talks about. Yes. Hate looks up in thought for a few minutes as the two continued to walk. He was so silent for a few minutes that Yuigao was getting a little impatient. Finally he smiles and says, go see him. Yuigao nearly trips over her own foot. What? I can't do that. Why not? Asks Hate. Yuigao looks at the man with a bit of a glare. Naruto is an infamous word in Konoha for a reason. I'm not risking those traps of his. Hate frowns a bit and says, I think you're just scared to face him. What? You told me yourself. Naruto took your arm a year back. You also said something about a great injustice. I'm guessing that you were part of this injustice and that's why your arm is missing. This draws me to conclude that you're afraid of what he'll say if you were to finally apologize to him. Yuigao looks at Hate and mentally curses him. His deducting skills were too good for his own damn well-being. Fine. I'm afraid to face him. It is well known that Naruto is distant from other people. And he very well should be, says Hate. Yuigao nods, but it's not just that. Naruto has been forced to resort to killing at such a young age. He trusts no one and he's quicker to add to his puppet collection than he is to listen. All valid points. "You are absolutely right," says Hade. Yuigao was going to say something else but was cut off by the man next to her. "But you forget one simple thing, Yuigao Yuzuki." "Oh yeah? What's that?" Hade smiles and puts a hand on her shoulder. "Naruto spared your life that day. He must have some bit of faith in you. Somewhere." And with that he leaps away. Scene change. Sarutobi sighs as he straightens out his robes and walks down a hall. He was not looking forward to this. No. Not looking forward at all. The council had summoned for him a few minutes ago and he already knew for what reason. He approaches that door and pushes it open. He is met with the gazes of every council member in the room. Their faces were emotionless and frozen, but their eyes betrayed what they were feeling. And Sarutobi didn't like what he was seeing. "Ah, Hokage-sama, it is good of you to join us. Would you like some coffee?" asks his old female teammate. Sarutobi takes his seat but turns down the coffee. He decides to get right to the point and address the situation. "I'm guessing you all have called this meeting to discuss Naruto?" he asks. One of the council members chuckle. She was a rather attractive woman of about 40 years of age. She was dressed in a red kimono and had jet black hair. "By Hokage-sama, impatient aren't we?" she asks. Sarutobi gives her a piercing look and says, "Just answer the question." The man sitting to the left of him snorts a bit before speaking. "Hokage-sama, we all know how fond you are of that boy and we know how great his potential is." "And?" says an impatient Hokage. "It's just that we feel that the boy is not stable enough to be allowed to live. We've seen Orochimaru and Itachi. We cannot have another one of those." Sarutobi could feel high anger rising as he comes to a conclusion. And it only rose higher once his conclusion was solidified. "We know you care for that boy despite his demon heritage, but he cannot be allowed to live." Hiashi Hyuga, clan head of the Hyuga clan and member of the council, stands up with a smirk. "That is why we have come to a decision to eliminate the boy." Sarutobi's eyes widen. "You sent assassins?" They nod. "But not just any assassins. Hiashi-sama has sent a team of highly trained Hyugas to deal with him. Nothing will get by their eyes." By now Sarutobi was growling. "They should be arriving at their destination right about now," says the black-haired woman. Sarutobi slams his fist into the table. "You fools. Do you know what the fuck you have done?" The council recoils a bit and then explodes into a mass of undignified yelling. Scene change. There were 4 of them. Highly trained. Highly skilled and highly pumped for this job. But nothing in the entire world of shinobi could have prepared them for this. No. Hiashi had told them that the target's house was riddled with very dangerous traps. What they were not told and what Hiashi apparently didn't know was that the target's home was one big trap. They spent an hour alone trying to get inside the house, then another 30 minutes trapped in the hallway. They had been scraped and cut several times, and those human dolls moved with the skills and speed of some elite ninja. Explosion seals tested their cadence to the limits, and poison gases tested their ability to hold their breath for minutes at a time. They were sweaty. They were tired and they were angry. This boy's skills in traps was almost unparalleled, and it had them unnerved and on edge. They pressed forward though. Byakugans on full blast so they could at least anticipate the springing of the traps Naruto had set. Hell, if it weren't for Byakugan they would already be dead. Finally they make it to the top floor and to a door marked Uzumaki and push. It didn't budge. "Damn it," growls the leader as he pushes again. It still didn't budge. The 4 gaze at the door with their bloodline limits and notice that the door is packed full of chakra. An odd thing, but they didn't really see anything else. "This kid's good, I'll give him that, but chakra enforced items are useless against a Hyuga," says the leader as he pumps his own chakra into his palms and slams it into the door. What happens next though made the 4 realize just why the door was packed full of chakra. The door splits apart into 4 sections, swings inward, and about 20 metallic tentacles shoot from the opening and snatch up the Hyugas, pulling them into the void. They felt themselves being pulled down. Further and further underground. Past the 2nd floor. Past the 1st floor. Past a basement until finally they are dropped into what looked like a large dojo. Confused and still shaken, the 4 Hyugas get to their feet and watch as the tentacles recede back into the ceiling. They were getting ready to ask where the hell they were when someone speaks up. It was a voice devoid of emotion and feeling, and it was a voice that belonged to a child. "You guys must be pretty good to make it this far. But you die now. I hope Hokage understands why." The Hyugas all whirl around to the source of the voice and gasp at what they see. That was right before the walls, doors, and floor were covered in iron bars and several tubes jutted from the ceilings and began to spew out green gas. They didn't have any time to do much else as the gas hit them and they are almost instantly paralyzed. Naruto approaches the 4 downed Hyugas wearing a special mask that kept him from being affected. He had them trapped. "No one enters my place and leaves it alive. Unless I want them to." He then draws his katana and swings. Half hour later. Yuigao was standing in front of Naruto's home trying to find the best way to approach it without getting filleted by his puppet's guards. She had looked all around the former apartment complex but still couldn't find a decent way in. She contemplated just going in the front since it looked like the traps there had already been activated. There were even a few broken puppets. Finally, after a few more minutes, she takes a deep breath and decides to walk calmly up to the front door. Bam! What the hell? Screams Yuigao as the front door is suddenly blasted out and nearly takes her head off. She had to bend completely backwards in order to avoid the flying piece of wood. A task that had her back screaming in protest. She gets back to her feet and brushes a bit of dust out of her eyes. What the hell was that? She says as she focuses her attention back at Naruto's front doorway. She gasps at what she sees. Naruto emerges from the doorway with an expressionless face. His wild blonde hair tied up in a waist-long ponytail. Yuigao notices that he had grown little taller. His deep blue eyes having gained the attributes of a seasoned warrior. Someone that has killed numerous times. His muscles were coiled and defined. Ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. He was dressed in a pair of baggy torn-up orange shorts and an open orange jacket. A bloody katana was held in his hand and a battle chain was wrapped several times around his waist. He looked quite handsome for an 11-year-old boy. Yuigao could only gape as the boy walked past her carrying a severely slashed-up dead Hyuga on his shoulders, and behind him was his signature puppet fox Naruto, dragging two more bodies behind it by the feet. The puppet had changed the most. It no longer stood upright. It was now hunched over into a crouching position and walked like the anti-form in Kingdom Hearts 2. The large Zanbatsu was still strapped to its back and its hair was still bright yellow, but now it had a pair of red fox ears and clawed hands. It was dressed in an orange and blue yukata and now had 9 red tails instead of 1 yellow one. Yuigao couldn't help but think of the Kyuubi at that moment. "Assassins," says Naruto plainly as he passes by the Anbu woman. She merely nods without thinking and lets him continue his way toward the Hokage Tower. She could say nothing. Her entire being racked with guilt for having a hand in turning Naruto into what he is today. She could only say one thing as he disappeared around a corner and scared the hell out of the villagers nearby. "Naruto." Scene change. Naruto briefly acknowledged the presence of the Anbu woman as he passed by her. He had other things to attend to, such as getting to Hokage Jiji and asking him why there are assassins coming at him. Not that he cared. Especially given the nature of the assassins. It only meant a powerful new puppet. He ignored the frightened cries of the villagers or the shouts from the shinobi as he made his way toward the Hokage Tower, dragging the bodies of 3 dead Hyugas behind him. Scene change. The council room was in a complete state of disarray and chaos. As soon as Sarutobi had called them all fools, they exploded into a jumbled mess of outrage and denial. "Hokage-sama. You can't possibly believe that the boy is capable of killing 4 highly trained Hyugas," yells Hiashi. "I agree. No matter how good his traps may be, he still does not have the skill to take them on and win. The Byakugan can't see through all. They'll be able to anticipate and avoid the freak's traps, and once they get to the boy itself, then they'll easily deal with him." Sarutobi sighs and says, "Naruto Uzumaki is not the type of person to slack off. Even before that incident a year ago, he was a determined, hard-working, intelligent boy. Naruto won't grow weak in other areas while his puppetry shoots through the roof. I can almost guarantee that his trap-setting abilities aren't the only things to improve over that time. He'll be evenly skilled in every aspect of combat." Another council member snorts. "Even so, Hokage-sama, those 4 Hyugas are at Anbu level. Even if the boy has improved, he still is no match for them. Hokage-sama, you place too much faith in the boy. I cannot understand why it is that you even protect him anyway." Sarutobi sighs and goes to retort but is interrupted by yet another council member. The clan head of the Nara clan, Shikaku. "All of you are too troublesome. It is in my opinion that if Hokage-sama has so much faith in this boy, then we should as well. I mean, if the boy was truly a demon, then Konoha wouldn't exist anymore. BFFT, what would you and your clan of lazy assess no Nara? Sitting around doing as little as you can. Like you would know how things work in a village that you deem too troublesome to deal with," says a woman with brown hair. Shikaku glares and says, "Troublesome, narrow-minded bitch. Why, you god." The woman didn't get to finish because one of the Anbu guards suddenly came blasting through the door and slams into the opposite wall. He falls to the ground unconscious. All activity ceases after that as the very subject of their heated conversations slowly walks into the room with his puppet and carrying 3 dead Hyugas. He was covered in blood and looking neutral as always. He drops the body he was carrying and has Fox Naruto drop the other 2 next to it. "Hokage Jiji," says Naruto looking right at Sarutobi. The council was stunned and Hiashi's eyes were as big as saucers. Sarutobi looks right into Naruto's cold blue orbs and says, "What is it, Naruto?" The boy wipes the blood off of his katana that sheaths it while one of Fox Naruto's tails relaxes after delivering the blow to the guard. He points to the bodies and says, I think these 3 belong to you. Sarutobi could only nod. Naruto looks right at Hiashi and says, and I kept the last one. I thank you for the gift. Hiashi snaps out of his shock and practically breaks the windows screaming, what the hell do you mean, brat? Naruto grins. It was a look that sent chills down everyone's spines as he has Fox Naruto re-strap its own sword on its back. His gaze never leaving Hiashi's. I have gained a powerful new tool because of you and this council, and I thank you for it. He then turns to leave. Wait. Boy. Screams the Hyuga head. Naruto pauses but does not turn around. What is it, Hyuga team? Hiashi glares so hard his Byakugan activates. You will return Yoshino. Now. Naruto looks up. Oh, so Yoshino is her name. A pretty name for such a pretty woman. I'll make sure to remember her name. He then begins to walk out again. Boy, did you not hear me? Naruto says nothing. Hiashi reaches into his robes and pulls out a white kunai. You will listen to your betters, demon. He chucks it hard before anyone who was not against Naruto could do anything. What happens next stuns the Hyuga clan head. Fox Naruto reaches up and plucks the kunai right out of the air before vanishing and reappearing in Hiashi's face with that kunai to his neck. Controlling Fox Naruto has become second nature to me. I always have a chakra string attached to him. I've gotten so used to this that Fox Naruto is like a sixth sense. The puppet presses the kunai a little closer. I control this puppet out of instinct and reflex alone now. A really powerful defense. Attacking me will get you killed. Especially if you underestimate me, Hyuga team. He has Fox Naruto release the stunned Hyuga and leap back over to his side. And as for Yoshino-chan. She died swiftly. I assure you. He then turns to leave again. Oh, and you'll only be losing shinobi if you keep sending assassins after me. I am not the helpless boy you can abuse anymore and I won't hesitate to end lives. Including yours if it becomes necessary. He smiles slightly at the old man. Goodbye Hokage. Then Naruto wait. Naruto pauses and turns to face Sarutobi. Yes. I would like you to join the ninja academy again. What? Yells the council. Naruto looks up and says, I'll think about it. First I have to go and prepare Yoshino. Sarutobi nods. Naruto turns to leave but is stopped a third time. This time by the Inuzuka clan head Tsume. Uzumaki-san, if you don't mind me asking, how did you manage to kill those 4? Naruto looks up then at Tsume with a smirk. I trapped them in my training dojo where I gassed them with my paralyzing solution before I opened them up with my katana like a couple of cans of tuna. He then quickly exits, leaving a room full of shocked village council members and a smirking Hokage. Scene change. As Naruto was heading back to his home he once again spots the Anbu woman. She was heading toward the Hokage tower looking deep in thought. He examines her a little closer this time because if he remembered correctly she was staring at his home. His eyes finally rest on her purple hair and he has a realization. You're that Anbu, he says, causing her to snap her head in his direction. They lock eyes for a whole minute before Naruto turns and continues on his way. He had a new puppet to create after all, and time was of the essence. Yuigao on the other hand continued to stare at him until he vanishes into his home. She couldn't stop. Her heart was aching. Naruto. I'm sorry, she whispers before body flickering away. What she didn't notice was that Naruto was looking at her through one of his windows with a special hearing-enhancing seal over his ear. All he wanted to do was confirm whether or not she was trying to kill him. He never expected to hear a genuine heartfelt apology. He smiles a bit and looks over at a jar. It had a perfect conditioned arm contained within it and was covered in preserving seals and embalming fluid. Perhaps sparing her life was a good thing, he says as he pulls the ribsage of Yoshino apart and takes out the organs. And perhaps I'll take Hokage up on his offer. Scene change. The ashi explodes into Sarutobi's face with pulsating veins and a red face. Hokage-sama. How could you let that abomination waltz up in here after killing 4 members of my clan and be so disrespectful? How could you allow him to threaten us all so openly? I agree. Hokage-sama. Everyone here heard the boy say he won't hesitate to attack and kill us. That should be liable for execution. Yells the woman in the red kimono. Shikaku and the Yamanaka clan head, Inoichi sigh. If he does decide to kill you, it would be your damn fault, says Inoichi. I agree. It is the ignorant people like you that do this to the boy. He has every right to be the way he is. What? Sarutobi clears his throat loudly to get everyone's attention. Once he has it he speaks in an almost cold tone. Naruto Uzumaki is indeed a unique case. He has indeed threatened the council and anyone who crosses him wrongly. I hold no ill will toward him for that. There are several gasps. You all can do what you see fit but I warn you now. Naruto Uzumaki is now officially under the protection of the Hokage himself and the Sarutobi clan. What? Hokage-sama. Enough. This is my decision. you have done enough to him already. I do this for the good of him and Konoha. Naruto will kill you all if no one puts a stop to this whole damn fiasco." The Naruto-hating council members could only stutter incoherent sentences and stare with huge eyes. Soon, Shikaku, Inoichi, and the Akimichi clan head Chaozu rise to their feet and begin to leave. "Naruto Uzumaki also has the protection of our clans. We have decided that it's too damn troublesome to waste time hating him for something he has no control over," says Shikaku. Hiashi and the rest of the council begin to scowl, and the woman in the red kimono decides to get their last words in. "You will protect that demon?" asks the woman. "Always, it was the Yondame's wish after all," says Chaozu. "Even as the boy murders innocent people and turns them into his dolls with his sick experiments?" asks Sarutobi's old teammate. "If Naruto turns someone into a puppet then they had it coming. Naruto has made it clear on his intentions. If you leave him alone you need not worry," says Shikaku. "I don't believe that. I refuse to believe that," says Hiashi. "Believe what you will," says Tsume as she and the others exit the room. Sarutobi looks at the rest of his council and says, "Like I said, do what you will, but if you attack him and he cannot fight back then you have 5 ninja clans to deal with." He bows and exits the room. Hiding his smirk. Time skip. About 3 weeks later Naruto was seen walking through the village with a new puppet following him around instead of Fox Naruto. This one stood proudly and arrogantly and had a slimmer figure than Fox Naruto. Long black hair with silver streaks flowed freely in the wind and a white kunai hung from its waist. Dressed in black and white robes and gifted with a set of beautiful pale lavender blank eyes was Yoshino. Naruto's first bloodline limit holding human puppet. A member of the esteemed Hyuga clan. The most powerful clan in Konoha. A clan whose bloodline limit is sought after by the hidden Cloud Village. "Now. To get some instructions on the Jaikin," says Naruto as he and Yoshino leap up to the rooftops. "I can't have a useless tool after all." He has her draw her kunai to defend from any possible attackers. The village may be scared of him for the most part, but they were not cowards. They would attack him the first chance they get. He was reading a book titled Konoha's Bloodline Limits and heading toward the Hyuga compound. A look of determination and sick excitement adorning his face. Chapter 3. Conflicts. Sarutobi sat in his office with a smile as he read the somewhat messy letter from Naruto. If you ignored the blood spots and small chunks of wood and bone, then you could easily read it. "Okijiji. I thought about it and I've decided to take you up on your offer. I will return to the ninja academy if only to learn a little bit more on ninjutsu and jinjutsu. But know this. I won't hesitate to behead those ignorant teachers if they flip me too much shit. I know ninja are valuable in any shinobi village, but I refuse to put up with anyone's crap. Of course Hokage, I won't go killing everyone for every little thing. I'm not that desperate for new puppets. I doubt that there's anyone there I could make into a useful tool anyway. I'll start tomorrow. Yours truly. Naruto Uzumaki. Greatest puppeteer ninja. P.S. If I do actually become a ninja for this village, then I will answer only to you." Sarutobi chuckles as he read the letter. He'd have to remember to have a talk with the boy to keep him from killing the teachers. He grabs a blank scroll and an ink brush. He had to let the academy know that there was a new student coming in. Even if it was already a month late. He just hoped that there wouldn't be too many problems. Scene change. The Hyuga clan was in an uproar. It had been 3 weeks since Naruto killed 4 Hyugas and had the nerve to make one of them his puppet. The council was not very happy to hear that part of Hiashi's report. Naruto Uzumaki had control of the Jaikin. He possessed the Byakugan. It was inconceivable to them. The whole clan soon heard about what Naruto had done. Some were quite impressed with the boy. He had taken out 4 very powerful main branch members of the Hyuga and made the bloodline limit more or less his own. However, as many as there were people who now respected Naruto, there were about 10 times more who hated him. Hiashi had banned anyone of the Hyuga clan from associating with him, and any who disobeyed his orders would be killed on the spot. The Hyuga council began searching for a powerful Hyuga in order to train he or she exclusively so they could kill Naruto. Hiashi had made a speech 2 hours long explaining to the entire clan that Naruto, the Kyuubi monster incarnate, was stealing bloodline limits and murdering innocent people. He even told them how the demon has brainwashed the Akimichi, the Inyazuka, the Nara, the Yamanaka and the Sarutobi clans. He had told them how they had to train 3 times as hard in order to do this demon in the future. He had the Hyuga clan on high alert that day. But they were so caught up in their worry and fear that they didn't notice as 2 figures slunk their way toward the Hyuga scroll room. Naruto and his puppet Yoshino approached the locked wooden door of the Hyuga scroll room and smirked. "This was too easy," he says as he disables the somewhat simple in his opinion traps that lined the door. After he was done he picks the lock and walks in. The room was filled with scrolls. Naruto grins. He was in the heart of the Hyuga clan. He had access to all of the secrets of the Hyuga clan and was about to steal everything here. He pulls out an empty storage scroll and begins to draw the necessary seals. Who are you and what are you doing here? Naruto whirls around with his hand on his battle chain and sees a pair of Hyuga girls. One was about 8 years old and her eyes looked angry and intrigued at the same time. She had long dark brown hair and was dressed in a black Hyuga-style training outfit. Her face showed very little emotion. The other girl was the complete opposite. Her face showed numerous emotions and she looked unsure of herself. Fearful even. She has short dark blue hair and looked to be his age. She was dressed in a thick off-white jacket and black ninja pants. She was looking away from him as if afraid. He smirked slightly at this. She had every reason to be afraid of him. The younger girl notices his smirk and glares. Answer me or face the consequences. Naruto nearly laughs in this girl's face. Who was she to dish out threats? Was she that good or just full of herself? He mentally shrugs and gets to his feet. My name is Naruto Uzumaki and this clan has something I need. Naruto barely heard the older girl gasp. I see, says the younger girl. What is it you are searching for? Are you looking to learn how to use that puppet of yours to its full potential? Naruto smirks. This girl was more intelligent than a kid her age should be. You realize that you won't be able to utilize the Byakugan, she says. Naruto shrugs. It is not the Byakugan I care about. I need to learn the Jaiken and any other Hyuga fighting style. Your eyes' abilities are useless to me. The younger girl raises an eyebrow. I see. You wish to master the Jaiken through Yoshino. Since she is a puppet she wouldn't be able to do the Jaiken if the controller does not know the proper movements. Exactly, says Naruto. Now if you have no more questions I have little time. He crouches back down and continues drawing the seal on the scroll. But there is still a couple of problems Uzumaki, says the girl. Naruto looks up at her. And what are those? He asks. The girl smirks and says, you cannot master the Jaiken if you cannot use the Byakugan. If you do not have the Byakugan you do not have the ability to see the chakra coils or the Tenketsu. Naruto looks up. I don't need to see the Tenketsu in order to learn the movements for the Jaiken. So it is an irrelevant issue. The girl sighs and says, fine, and turns to leave. The older girl was still looking down at her feet and pushing her fingers together nervously. Hinata. Father waits for us, says the younger girl in a firm but caring voice. Hinata nods and gives Naruto one last look before turning to leave. Good luck, Naruto-kun, she says in the faintest of whispers. Naruto HNS in response, stunning the girl. Hinata, come on, we must not be late, says the younger girl as she pokes her head back into the room. Hinata nods, her face crimson and riddled with shock as she shuffles out of the door. The younger girl gave Naruto one last look before saying, 5 minutes, and then leaving. Naruto smirks. He wouldn't need that much time. Scene change. Hanabi Hyuga didn't really know why she was letting that boy get away with what he was doing. Perhaps it was a deep-seated respect after hearing what he is capable of. Or perhaps she was interested in whether or not he could really learn how to use a Hyuga puppet in the art of Jaiken. She shrugs as she flops down into her bed. It was in the past already and she had to prepare for the chaos that is sure to follow Naruto's actions. Hinata was lost in thought. Or perhaps she was spaced out as she usually was. Hanabi didn't really pay much attention anyway. She closes her eyes and sighs. Sometimes I wish I was not from such a prestigious clan. Scene change. Naruto walks into his room with a smirk and flops down onto his couch. He had just got back from the Hyuga scroll room and was feeling quite satisfied. He didn't even have to kill anyone to keep them quiet. He bites his thumb and opens up his storage scroll. Without a word he smears the blood on the seal and a large puff of smoke follows, revealing the contents of the Hyuga scroll room. He smirks. Time to get to work, he says to himself as he opens the nearest scroll. This was a scroll that explained a bit about the Hyuga clan and its origins. He tosses it aside a minute later. The history of the Hyuga clan interested him very little. He opens another scroll and sees that this one is a family tree. He also tosses this one aside. 5 hours went by and it was now late evening bordering on night. Naruto was slightly frustrated. All of these scrolls were useless to him. He sighs and opens one of the last 3 scrolls remaining. It was an Injustu scroll. He looks through it and sees 2 water techniques, a fire technique and a flower technique. He puts the scroll aside for later. He eyes the last 2 scrolls and smirks when he sees the labels. Hyuga style fighting. Jaiken or the gentle fist. At last, he says as he seals up the rest of the scrolls. Scene change. An alarm was blaring. People were running around frantically trying to find an explanation to what the hell was going on. People were yelling and panicking saying things like, they're gone. We've been robbed. It was chaos. Hiyashi's eyes were bulging with an enraged Byakugan. And he was close to strangling anyone who got too close to him. Only two people knew what exactly was the cause of the Hyuga clan's plight. Hinata and Hanabi sat in their rooms lost in their own thoughts about a certain blonde. Hinata didn't know what to think of the boy. She didn't really know him well, and he completely vanished from the academy about a year ago. Like everyone else, she now knew of his current choice of attitude. She was scared of him a bit. He could effortlessly kill and transform someone into a puppet, and his eyes were dead to the world. Void of all emotions and feeling, but at the same time revealed a deep void of pain and sadness. Hinata sighs and says, "Naruto-kun." In a whisper. Hanabi didn't think much of the puppet user. She was intrigued when she heard he could turn people into puppets and was surprised when she found him in the scroll room getting ready to seal everything into a storage scroll, but his attitude didn't really bother her much. Nor did his morbid style of ninjutsu. If anything, she was fascinated by it. Puppetry was something she had never heard of. She closes her eyes and another pair distraught Hyugas rushed past her room. "Uzumaki, you interest me," she says. Scene change. "Ah. The Hyugas are all nothing but fucking talk," screams Naruto as he slams the Jaiken scroll into the wall behind him. He spent 2 hours studying that scroll and breaking down the instructions and fighting style, and he came to one conclusion. Hyugas are weak. He had discovered after reading that scroll that the Jaiken is the only thing that gives the Hyugas any form of fighting ability. That and the Byakugan. They rarely used ninjutsu or jinjutsu or weapons for that matter and depended on Byakugan far too much. The Jaiken wasn't all that hard to memorize and they only had 2 special attacks, Kaiten and the 8 trigram 64 palms. He copied the instructions for these 2 attacks along with the method for using chakra to do internal damage down and sealed the scroll up with the rest. The Hyuga ninjutsu scroll, however, sat at the end of his bed. "If they don't want it, then I'll be glad to take it and use it for myself," he had said. He grabs the storage scroll and leaps out of his trap-rigged window and onto the ground below. "The Hyugas can keep their useless junk," he says as he walks back toward the Hyuga manor. Scene change. It was night now and Yuiga was still sitting in the one spot she had been since earlier that day. At the top of the Hokage Tower. She was lost in thought, all awareness of the world around her completely gone. Thoughts of Naruto still racing through her head. How was she going to approach him and apologize? Especially after all this time? How could she face him now? Hell, even if she did manage to gather the courage to face him, he'd probably just scoff and tell her to save her pointless apologies. After all, it's not like severe changes of heart like the one she had gone through happen all the time. If anything, Naruto was a paranoid but intelligent boy. He wouldn't just accept her without any questions. Then again, he did spare her that day. But perhaps it was merely so she could deliver his massage to Hokage-sama. She cringes at that. Had he really only spared her out of necessity? She was filled with so many unanswered questions. So much doubt. So much fear. Uncertainty. She sighs and looks up at the moon, ignoring the distant blare of the Hyuga Manor security alarm. Her hand unconsciously resting on her stump. "Uzumaki-san." She mumbles before closing her eyes. "I have to apologize for the wrong I have done you. I'm Skip." The next day, Sarutobi awoke to a scene of all hell breaking loose. The area near the Hyuga compound was all chaos. Shouts and screams and people doing jutsus echoed all throughout the village, and a huge crowd was watching, jeering one opponent while cheering on the other. He practically flies over to the area and sighs at what he sees. "Yeah. Hokage-sama is here to witness the demon's demise," yells one villager, only to have a senbon jam into his neck and drop him. Courtesy of a glaring Naruto who dodges an attack from Hiashi at the same time. "Shut it, fool," he says with a sneer. Hiashi was blind with fury and was attacking Naruto like a bat out of hell, with Jaiken strikes and chakra flying all over the place. Naruto was smirking at the Hyuga clan head while evading his attacks with ease. "Damn it, brat," screams the Hyuga as he lunges again at high speed. Naruto ducks under the attack, then backhand springs away. "What the hell is going on here? And get that villager some medical attention," yells Sarutobi as Hiashi charges. "This little abomination has broken into the Hyuga compound," yells Hiashi. Naruto punches Hiashi in the gut, getting a grunt form. The man then shoves him back. "Quit your bitching, Hyuga. I have returned everything, so there was no harm." Hiashi charges and attacks with renewed vigor. "I'll kill you," he screams. This causes Sarutobi to widen his eyes. And for good reason, because as soon as Hiashi mouthed those words, the look on Naruto's face completely transforms from a smirk to one of rage and fury. "Better fighters than you have tried." He then bites his thumb and pulls back his sleeve, revealing a tattoo seal for Fox on his wrist while leaping further away from Hiashi. "Fine then. If you want to fight to the death over something so trivial, so be it." He smears his bleeding thumb across the seal, and Fox Naruto appears in all its 9-tailed Zanbatsu wielding glory. Sarutobi gasps as Fox Naruto and the puppeteer both vanish at the same time. Clang. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Everyone who was watching this fight couldn't help but marvel at the boy's speed. It was near Jonin level. A cloud of dust had kicked up, but one could clearly hear 3 people breathing. When it clears, everyone gasps. Naruto and Fox Naruto were right in Hiyashi's face, and Sarutobi's right hand was holding Naruto's left wrist, which was gripping the katana, whose tip was poking Hiyashi's neck enough to draw a bit of blood. Naruto's right hand was holding a senbon to Sarutobi's kidney, but the pinky was extended and controlling Fox Naruto. The Hokage had obviously intercepted the blow, which was aimed for Hiyashi's ribsage. Luckily Sarutobi was wearing protective ninja gear and was not stabbed by the poisonous needle. Sarutobi's left hand was holding a katana and intercepting Fox Naruto's zanbatsu would have cleaved the Hyuga right down the center. But the last things that truly had Hiyashi gripped by fear were the puppet's 9 tails. Each one was pointed directly at his chest, legs and stomach, and each tail had split open, revealing poison-drenched blades mere millimeters from impaling him. Naruto glares at Hiyashi with malice and cold eyes. He does not let up on his sword, nor does he struggle against Sarutobi. He just stares at Hiyashi's blank lavender orbs. Hyuga team, I told you I have returned your scrolls. I merely needed to study your fighting style if I'm going to use Yoshino to her fullest potential. For some reason this causes Hiyashi to laugh. As if you could master the Hyuga style to its full potential. You cannot use the Byakugan, and a Byakugan on a puppet is useless. Naruto presses his katana a bit further. You and your clan are a bunch of overcredited pompous weaklings. As I have said to the 2 girls yesterday. I do not need the Byakugan to use the Jaikin. I will master the Jaikin through Yoshino, then I will improve it. Take it beyond what you bunch of fools ever could. PFFT, go ahead and try, demon. Naruto's eyes flash red for a second. Oh, I will, Hyuga team, and once I do I'll have you groveling at my feet begging me to show you my techniques. Naruto struggles against Sarutobi's arm for a second, trying to press his blade further into Hiyashi's neck. Enough, Naruto. Stand down, says Sarutobi. Naruto looks into the old Hokage's eyes for a second before his gaze softens. He relaxes Fox Naruto and withdraws his katana and steps back. Sorry, Hokage Jiji. He pauses for a second. But not for that Hyuga. He says. Sarutobi raises an eyebrow. Naruto smiles a bit and points to the hole near Sarutobi's kidney. Sorry for nearly stabbing you. He then turns to leave when Hiyashi speaks up. Tell me, boy, how it was you were able to counter me so easily. Naruto smirks and says, I learned everything I know by reading scrolls. Studying your one fighting style was easy enough. He then reseals Fox Naruto and leaps away. Hokage-sama, are you just gonna let that monster go? Yells a villager. He's nothing but a DHWAK. The man falls to the ground with a kunai jammed in the back of his head. Sarutobi sighs. Hiyashi-sen, I suggest you go and clean up. All of you villagers returns to your homes at once. The villagers do without any more comments. Sarutobi body flickers away, leaving behind a stunned Hiyashi, a gaping Hanabi, a few unconscious Hyugas, a shivering Hinata, and a gasping branch house Hyuga of about 11 years old, whose forehead sported a green seal. Hiyashi snaps out of it and starts barking out orders. You there. Dispose of that corpse. You wake up those fools. You. Go check the scroll room. Make sure that demon boy was telling the truth. He then turns around and sees a frightened Hinata and a nervous-looking Hanabi. And you too. We need to talk. Scene change. The village was abuzz with talk about the demon doll maker invading the Hyuga clan and trying to kill Hiyashi. Naruto inwardly smirked as people shied away from him. It meant that he could get back to his home without any trouble or killings. He thought about the time and realized he only had an hour before he had to get to the ninja academy. Hopefully Hokage Jiji had informed them of his impending arrival. I wonder just how they'll react, he thought. Surely he would receive a lot of negative attention and the teachers would be less than happy to teach him a bit. He scoffs at that a little. There was very little they could teach him save for ninjutsu and jinjutsu, and that was the reason why he was going. He knew that ninjutsu and jinjutsu were essential to any ninja's career and he was severely lacking in that area. Weapons, puppetry, seals and taijutsu were great and all, but without the other two, he felt incomplete. And Naruto hated that feeling. It made him feel weak. And besides, one cannot become the greatest ninja if he cannot master all form of the ninja arts. He arrives at his home and sighs when he sees the broken remains of 2 of his puppets and 2 trails of blood leading inside. Naruto sighs when he walks in and sees 2 dead chunin with several poisoned senbon needles sticking out of their backs and the puppet of a young woman hovering above them and prepared to throw more. Some people never learn, he thought as he grabs the 2 bodies. Those 2 puppets they destroyed will need to be replaced. Scene change. Sarutobi sighs heavily as he takes another swig of sake. Naruto was one problem after another. The boy did whatever he wanted and it irked the council to no end that he would do nothing about it. Sarutobi didn't fear Naruto, but he didn't bother to mess with the boy either. In his opinion Naruto can act the way he wants. It's the least he could do after the way Konoha has treated him. He takes another drink and rolls up a scroll before tying it to a messenger bird's leg. Almost forgot to send this to the academy, he says with a bit of a slur. Scene change. Yuigao Yuzuki was relaxing in her home watching the television when there was a knock at her door. She sighs and get up. Yeah, I'm coming, she says as she opens the door. Hello Yuzuki-san. Yuigao instantly glares, what the hell do you want Danzo? Danzo smirks and enters Yuigao's home. He walks over and sits down on the couch. Why Yuigao, is that any way to speak to your former captain? Yuigao glares. I'll speak to you in whatever manner I see fit, now why the hell are you here? Danzo grins and says, oh nothing really, I'm just here to talk to you about a certain blonde puppet using Jinchuriki. Yuigao's eyes widen a bit and she says in a whisper, Naruto. That's right, Mr. Uzumaki Naruto. Konoha's puppet user. And a damn good one at that. Yuigao scoffs. Konoha's my ass. Naruto serves no one in this village. Danzo looks up and says, perhaps you are right, but I did not come here to talk about who the Jinchuriki serves but whether who he could be serving in the future. Please old man. It's true Yuigao-chan. I have witnesses Naruto's skill and his potential is boundless. We must get him under our control. Yuigao scoffs. Good luck with that. Danzo smirks as she touches the spot where her left arm used to be. You remember that day, do you not? The day the Kyuubi vessel stole your arm. Yuigao scowls, that demon vessel's name is Naruto Uzumaki and you will address him as such while in my home. Danzo frowns a bit. Fine then. The day Naruto stole your arm changed you, did it not? What are you talking about? Yuigao was getting angry now. Danzo smirks and says, your emotions came back that day. So what your point, old man? Danzo smirks and gets to his feet. Help me get the one you've grown emotionally attached to or I'll send my rude Anbu after him. Not even someone of his power can take them all on and win. He exits Yuigao's home. Good day Yuigao-chan. You have until he graduates from the ninja academy. Yuigao's eyes were wide. She could only stare at her door where Danzo was. The threat kept playing over and over again in her head and the worst part was that Danzo would actually do something like that too. He would carry through with his threat. Naruto was strong. That much was certain, but not even he could withstand an all-out attack from the rude Anbu. Her eyes hardened. I won't play by your rules Danzo, she thought. I have to find Naruto. She then exits her home and takes off toward Naruto's place. Time skip 1 hour. The classroom was abuzz with excited talking and laughing as this year's academy students chatted with each other about the daily events of their home village. They were chatting for about 20 minutes before 2 men finally walked in and told them to be quiet. One was a darker-skinned man with a scar across his nose and a pineapple-style hairdo, while the other had shoulder-length silver hair. Both of their faces were kind and gentle, but held a lot of authority in the classroom. Iruka and Mizuki looked at the students, proud that Konoha was raising so many promising young ninja. They felt honored to teach them. Alright class, listen up. Today we are going to be studying the history of other shinobi villages. There was a bit of groaning from the students, but Mizuki quickly silenced it. Now children, do not worry, it's not as bad as it sounds. Sensei, you always say that, yells a young Inuzuka boy. Yeah, what's up with that? Yells another boy. The two teachers sweat drop as the class explodes into protests. Hey, listen up. This knowledge is also vital to being a ninja. So pay attention. The class quiets down after a couple more minutes. Now, as I was saying, the world consists of. Tap tap tap. Ugh, what now? Says Iruka, causing Mizuki to chuckle. Iruka makes his way over to the window and opens it. A messenger bird sops in and lands on the desk. It's from Hokage-sama, he says as he takes the scroll from the bird's leg and opens it. What's it say, sensei? Asks a young Akimichi. Iruka smiles and says, it appears we have a new student on his way here. He reads the scroll a bit more. It says that this new student has trained in solitude for a while and needs to learn a bit more on ninjutsu and jinjutsu. What's his name? Asks a pink-haired girl. Iruka reads further, then drops the scroll with a gasp. Oh no. It's… Before he could finish, the door to the classroom opens and a reasonably short blonde kid with 3 whisker marks on each cheek steps in. His arms were crossed and his pants and shirt were bright orange. He had a katana, a spear and a battle chain on him and a tattered blue open cloak. Everyone in the classroom gets one good look at the boy and recoil in a bit of fear. Only one person had the courage to speak in the presence of this boy. He was a young Uchiha boy who looked just as emotionless as the blonde before the classroom. He utters 2 words and 2 words alone. Words that would soon send the classroom into disarray and chaos, for they too knew of what this boy is capable of. Uzumaki Naruto, says the young Uchiha. Chapter 4. Relative calm. Naruto was never a guy that reveled in the terror of others, nor did he ever actively seek to terrorize those who have not wronged him yet, but he had to admit to himself as he looked upon the fearful faces of the students before him that it felt pretty liberating to some degree. Of course there were still the few that were boldly facing his presence without any hint of fear, and he felt a bit of respect for those four. The Uchiha didn't surprise him much. Of course the boy didn't fear him. He was an Uchiha after all, and their arrogance was as great as the Hyugas. The boy was staring right into Naruto's eyes as if trying to size him up. No doubt thinking the stories about him are overemphasized. He scoffed slightly at that. A night in my home would scare his ass shitless. The next was the Naru boy. Naruto was amused by every member of this clan. They were all highly intelligent, but some of the laziest bunch of people he had ever come across. Even now this boy was looking at him with half-closed and uncaring eyes that said, "Just let me sleep and I'll leave you alone." He shifts his gaze over to the boy sitting at the back of the room. Sunglasses and a high collar covered his face. The Aburam clan had interested him greatly a while back. After reading a bit about their abilities in his book about Konoha's clans, he took the liberty of observing the clan as the members went about their business. He had been caught every time but was surprised when they didn't brutally attack him, but instead seemed to give him pointers on his stealth. The last boy intrigued him because he was staring at Naruto with curiosity and a bit of hostility. He has tan skin and reddish-pink shoulder-length hair. His eyes were mismatched colors, one brown and the other green. He looks back at the two frozen teachers and speaks. "I'm sure Hokage has informed you of my arrival." Iruka nods slowly with a guarded look. "Yes, we just received the message right before you arrived. I welcome you to our class, Naruto." Naruto nods a bit and heads over to the class. He smirks as the students shy away from him and begin to whisper among themselves. "At him. It's the puppet boy. I know. They say his house is so riddled with dangerous traps that not even a squad of Hyugas could survive trying to break in. It's true. It's also true that he turned a Hyuga into one of his puppets. Is it really a good idea to let him be here? I mean, look at him. Let's just stay out of his way." "I'm with you on that one." Naruto couldn't help but smile a bit. At least the younger generation had enough common sense not to mess with him. He takes a seat next to the Uchiha and waits patiently for Iruka to begin his lessons. Scene change. Yuigao sighs in frustration as she leaps over another house. Of all the times to virtually vanish off of the face of the elemental nations, why did Naruto choose today of all days? She looks around almost frantically. Danzo's threat hung over her like an ornament of dark mockery. She was worried for Naruto, although some part of her told her that she shouldn't be. After all, this is the boy whose trap-setting skills and knowledge of poisons borders on Sannin level. "Naruto, I have to find and warn you," she says as she lands on the ground in the central marketplace. Warn Naruto of what? Yuigao spins around and sees none other than Sarutobi looking at her with a raised eyebrow. Yuigao bows. "Hokage-sama, I didn't expect to see you here," she says with a voice full of surprise. Sarutobi chuckles and says, "Even I deserve a bit of downtime. Now, what's this about Naruto?" Yuigao looks up and says, "Danzo of Root is after him." Sarutobi looks up. "I see, well follow me, I know where he's at right now." Yuigao breathes a sigh of relief and follows her leader towards the ninja academy. Scene change. Naruto was disappointed. The academy didn't really teach any ninjutsu or genjutsu, and that's all he cared about. He already knew most of Konoha's history and the clans of Konoha, so he really didn't pay a whole lot of attention. He instead pulled out his human anatomy book and started reading. His knowledge of the human body was very impressive. If he so desired, he could become an amazing medical nin. Class had just ended and the students were heading out. There were still whispers about him, and the two teachers were still guarded around him. He paid them little attention. He stopped caring what others thought of him a year ago. What is that monster doing here? Naruto turns around and is met with the hate gazes of the parents of the students. "Get out of here, demon boy," yells a man. Naruto sighs and secretly draws a poison-tipped senbon needle. "Enough. Leave Naruto alone to face punishment from the Hokage." Naruto turns around and sees Sarutobi and an Anbu had just arrived. The people back off, but not before glaring at the puppet user and telling their children to stay away from him. Naruto looks back up at Sarutobi and says, "Thanks, but you know I didn't need your help." Sarutobi sighs. "Yes, I know, but I can't have you injuring people in front of their own children." Naruto scoffs. "Like I care." Sarutobi sighs again. "Anyway, I have something important to tell you. Or rather, Yuga-chan here does." At the mention of her name, Yuga removes her mask and looks directly into Naruto's eyes. Naruto raises an eyebrow in slight surprise. "Alright then, follow me," he says to the two ninja. "There might be a few nosy eyes around that I don't want spying on us." In the bushes, the Uchiha and the tan-skinned boy flinch. Saratobi nods, also knowing who was present, and places his hand on his shoulder. "Where to?" he asks. Naruto smirks and says, "My place." Saratobi and Yugao look at each other before vanishing with Naruto. They appear at the doorstep of Naruto's home a minute later and have to duck as two Chunin suddenly lunge from the roof. Naruto does a few finger movements and the puppets return to their posts. "Sorry about that, Anbu-san. I still trust you very little, so I have not added you to the non-enemies list on my ID seals." Yugao merely nods. Naruto approaches the stairs with Saratobi and Yugao close behind him and eventually reach the door marked Uzumaki. He channels a bit of chakra into the door and pushes it open. Unlike the Hyugas who were dragged down to his underground dojo by one of his many ingenious traps, the door merely opens, revealing a small apartment room. Decorated in puppets' parts, tools and jars of body parts. Yugao and Saratobi look around a bit grossed out by the morbid settings of Naruto's home. It reminded him all too well of his old student. He points to the couch and says, "Sit." They do, and Naruto flops down into a rocking chair and grabs up a puppet torso and begins to tinker with it. "Now what was it that you wanted to tell me?" he asks after a minute. Yugao clears her throat. "Uzumaki-san." Naruto raises an eyebrow at her. She gets her scruples together and continues. "Danzo of Root Anbu is after you." Naruto scoffs. "Root Anbu, huh? You know about them?" asks Saratobi. Naruto shrugs. "A little, but not a whole lot. A couple of the ninjas who have died here were once part of the Root Anbu, so I know a bit about them. They are a secret branch of Anbu. The more ruthless individuals, and this Danzo is their leader." Yugao nods. "And this Danzo wants me under his control, no doubt." "That is precisely it, Uzumaki-san. Danzo has instructed me to convince you to join his Anbu division or be eliminated by him." Naruto looks up, then glares at Yugao. "Tell this Danzo that he is going to die. No one threatens my life." He stands up and looks her dead in the eye. "I answer only to Hokage. No one else. If this Danzo wants so badly to control the Jinchuriki of Konoha, then he better come at me himself and try and force me." Yugao goes to say something else, but Saratobi interrupts her. "Naruto, don't underestimate Danzo. He is powerful." Naruto nods. "I underestimate no one. The day Danzo sends his Anbu after me will mark the day of his death." "How long do I have?" "Until the day you graduate from the Ninja Academy," says Yugao. Naruto stands up. "Fine then." He heads into a back room and Saratobi and Yugao could hear numerous clicking sounds and the clinking of metal and weapons. Just as Yugao was going to ask Saratobi what Naruto was doing, the blonde returns with a large bundle in his arms. He looks at the two ninja in front of him as if surprised that they are still there. "Naruto, what is that?" asks Saratobi. Naruto drops the bundle and causes Yugao's eyes to widen. The bundle unravels and reveals a new puppet. This one was huge. At least 7 feet tall and had pitch black skin. It had the body of a very muscular man. One arm was covered in a huge gauntlet and a foot-thick giant clock's gear. The other arm wasn't connected to the body yet and still looked pretty normal. The upper half of its face was covered in a thick steel Roman-style helmet and snow-white hair sprouted from underneath the helmet. It was dressed in a tattered black kilt and a thick white sash that went from its left shoulder diagonally across the chest and around the right hip before coming back up across the back. A huge feathery black wing and 2 metallic tentacles were placed next to the puppet, and so were numerous canisters decorated with seals and kanji for different elements. He grins and returns to the room, returning a few minutes later carrying a shield that was twice as tall and as wide as the boy and a double-bladed battle axe that was also nearly twice as tall as he was. The shield was triangle-shaped and had a golden outline. The center was decorated with a golden fox head and the rest of the shield was black. The axe blade was black and the staff part was gold with a design of an in-tailed fox lunging at something toward the blade. Perfect weapons for a warrior of this new puppet stature. He drops the items next to the puppet and grins at Saratobi and Yugao. "Meet my newest puppet. 2 months in the making. An original Uzumaki design. Onitenshi. Demonic angel." Saratobi and Yugao could only gape at Naruto, who smirks. "Human puppets are not the only puppets I know how to make." And to prove his point he unseals Fox Naruto and has it look at Yugao. "You say Danzo will come at me the day of my graduation. Fine then. I'll use that time to prepare." He kneels down next to Onitenshi and picks up the disconnected arm of the huge puppet. "Hokage, do you know of anyone who can teach me ninjutsu and jinjutsu? Someone I won't end up killing would be preferable." Saratobi looks up as images of Tsume, Inoichi, Chaozu and Shikaku dance through his mind, but before he could voice his thoughts, Yugao speaks up. "I would love to teach you, Uzumaki-san." Naruto looks at her with a critical eye. Although he heard her apologize that one day, he still was guarded. He doesn't throw out his trust foolishly. "And why would you want to teach me, Anbu-san? Aren't you the one whose arm I have taken?" Ryuga nods slowly. Naruto stands back up and approaches the woman. He looks deep into her eyes a mere 5 inches apart. Ryuga quickly became lost in Naruto's eyes. Eyes of the deepest blue she had ever seen. Eyes of a boy who has long since stopped caring about the world. Eyes of one who has dealt with a soul-gripping sadness. She felt something build up in her. A deep feeling in her stomach. At that moment all she wanted to do was embrace Naruto in a hug and comfort him forever. She refrained at the risk of getting jammed in the neck by a poison-tipped senbon needle. Naruto, as if sensing Yugao's emotions, takes his eyes off of her and looks up. "What is your name? I have seen you on several occasions and yet I do not know your name. Tell me Anbu-san and I will allow you to train me." Yugao nearly smiles happily and she gets to her feet. None of them had noticed that Sarutobi had left with a smile. "My name is Yugao Yuzuki. Former member of Root Anbu. Instigator of the attack that changed you. A woman who is deeply and severely sorry for what she has done to you, Naruto." Yugao ends her sentence with a deep bow. Naruto approaches again and lifts her chin with his fingers to look into her tear-brimmed eyes. "Anytime someone should be bowing to me is when they are either begging for mercy before I kill them or because I control them." He has Yugao stand back up and is a bit surprised to notice that she is only about a foot taller than he is. "I am not killing you and you are not under my control. Therefore never bow to me, Izuki-san." Yugao didn't know what to do. The way Naruto had said that sounded almost. No. It definitely wasn't that. Thank you, Naruto." Naruto nods. "Now I'm sure in order to teach me ninjutsu you need 2 hands, am I correct?" Yugao nods. "It's okay, Naruto. We'll figure something out." Naruto grins. "I already have the solution to your problem." Yugao looks at him confused. Naruto merely smirks and vanishes into his bedroom. He returns a minute later holding a jar. The jar was full of yellow liquid and glowing with numerous preservative seals. Yugao widens her eyes when she sees what this jar was preserving. "My arm." "Correct, Yugao-san. The day I took your arm I kept it. It was also the same reason why you are still alive today. That day I found out about the Kyuubi and asked that group of Dumbus villagers and shed some of my first tears. I saw your eyes. Eyes of a person that felt no hatred for me, no emotion at all in fact. I let you live because I felt you could redeem yourself. Regain your emotions as I lost mine." Yugao gasps. "I spared you because I didn't want to kill you. It's that simple." He raises the jar to her. "I can reattach your arm in the span of an hour. Would you like me to do so?" Yugao's body moved on its own without her consent. It just reacted. That is how Naruto Uzumaki found himself in a bone-crushing hug from Yugao Yuzuki. Scene change. Sarutobi smiles as the image fades from his crystal ball. Things were finally beginning to look up. At least that's what he thought. He knew Naruto was probably never going to return to the way he was, but at least someone was finally there for him. He just hoped Naruto would be ready for Danzo. Perhaps the 4 other shinobi clans on his side would get involved. He sighs and decides not to think about it for now. Besides, he had a huge stack of paperwork to get signed. Scene change. "Sai," calls Danzo. A second later a young man seemingly melts from the shadows. "How may I serve you?" asks Sai in an emotionless voice. "I want you to keep an eye on one Naruto Uzumaki. The puppet user?" "Yes. He shows great potential. I want to observe him. Keep track of his movements and make sure Yuzuki is doing her job." Sai nods but then asks another question. "Are you even sure Yuzuki is going to cooperate?" Danzo glares. "She had better if she knows what's good for her. Now go. Do not get caught and do not try and enter Uzumaki's home." Sai raises an eyebrow. Danzo sighs and says, "Uzumaki's home is riddled with traps so advanced they took our 4 highly trained Hyugas and numerous others over the past year. If you enter his home you will be killed. Ink drawings or not." Sai nods the bows. "Now go." "Hi Danzo-sama," says Sai before vanishing back into the shadows. Scene change. Yugao sat on the couch and watches mesmerized as Naruto practices with Yoshino. The puppet was moving in patterns far more graceful than anyone living could move. Naruto was a prodigy of the puppet technique. That much was glaringly sure. His weapon skills were also really great and so was his taijutsu and seal making. She watches as the Hyuga puppet twirls gracefully on one foot, producing chakra streamers that glowed blue in the room. She flexes her left arm and smiles in Naruto's direction. She still didn't know how he reattached it so well. She remembers him saying something about tiny chakra strings, but that was it. "Yugao-san, how is your arm feeling?" asks Naruto suddenly. Yugao looks at the blonde as he continued to practice with his puppet and says, "It feeling great, Naruto. I can finally move it with ease now." Naruto looks at Yugao and says, "Are you ready to teach me?" Yugao inwardly laughs. Although Naruto was calm and collected on the outside, she could detect a bit of anticipation hidden in his voice. "Of course, Naruto. Whenever you are." Naruto pauses in his movements, then seals Yoshino into his arm. "Hold on," he says before walking into his room. He returns a few seconds later holding the jutsu scroll he stole from the Hyuga clan. "There is a technique I wish to learn in this scroll," he says simply as he makes his way outside. Yuigao follows the blonde and asks him where they were going. Naruto walks down the hall a bit and opens the stops at a door that was 4 doors away from his apartment. He opens it and steps in, Yuigao close behind him. Yuigao was awed at the sheer amount of traps that Naruto had set up. There was no way in hell someone was getting very far into this home without getting killed. Yuigao had never seen such elaborate, well thought out and dangerous traps. Add to the fact that Naruto's puppets patrolled the place constantly and attacked anyone Naruto deemed an enemy without mercy and without tiring, and it kind of unnerved her a bit. They made their way down a slanted hallway for what seemed like 2 hours before Naruto finally speaks. "We're here," he says as he opens a door marked Dojo. He steps in and signals for Yuigao to follow. She obeys and widens her eyes at the sight. This dojo had everything needed in order to train. Weights, weapons, targets, a post, numerous open scrolls, a few books, and numerous instructions for different puppet techniques. There was also a small letter taped to the wall right in the center. It was from Sasori of the Red Sands. A taunt to Suna. Naruto turns to looks at Yuigao and says, "So what must I learn first?" Scene change. Sasuke-Uchiha. A boy with principles. A boy with nobility. With the respect of the entire village. A boy who in his eyes could have no rival. Yet this Uzumaki Naruto was treading all over those beliefs. He grits his teeth a bit. Naruto was talked about all over Konoha. He was quite famous. But not in a positive way. His very name struck fear into the hearts of some of the villagers and inspired angry mobs in others. Sasuke felt a bit of jealousy for this boy. He was a dead last student when he used to attend the academy, now he was strong enough to kill Hyuga Jonins with traps alone and turn them into puppets. He was stronger than him. Sasuke grits his teeth. He had to train harder. Naruto was not going to surpass him. Not ever. Scene change. Tsuchi was an orphan. A boy of unknown origins. The only family he ever had was his older sister. She had gone missing a few years back though. He didn't like this Naruto. Didn't like him one bit. The guy acted like he was above everyone else. Yes, he heard the stories. He heard the rumors, he had even heard some of the villagers call the boy the Kyuubi. He didn't care. He saw Naruto as a stuck-up little brat who needed to get over himself. He huffs as he punches the training post for the 400th time. He had other things to worry about like getting stronger and locating his sister eventually. His reddish-pink hair swaying in the wind. Scene change. Neji Hyuga sat in his room and pondered. Never in his life had he seen someone fight a Hyuga so effortlessly, and yet this blonde boy a year younger than himself had utterly humiliated the entire clan. He sighs. He had training to do. Perhaps he would listen to the words this Naruto had said to Hiashi and modify the Jaiken. Who knows? Perhaps it was possible to take it to all new heights and defeat the fate of the Hyuga clan. Time skip. It was 10 at night when the doors opened and out stepped Yuigao and Naruto. Naruto looks at the Anbu woman and says, "I thank you for today's lesson. I look forward to tomorrow." Yuigao smiles and grabs Naruto in a hug. He would never get used to that and had to fight the reflex of jamming a kunai in her ribs every time she had done it, and counting now it was the 6th time. He wondered why she was suddenly so affectionate. Perhaps it was her way of being grateful for him accepting her apology and giving her arm back. He didn't know, nor did he really care. Yuigao lets go of him and says, "I look forward to it as well, Naruto. Take care." She then vanishes. Naruto smirks and walks over to his apartment room. "I've been taking care since I could walk," he says in an amused voice before closing his door. He didn't notice that Yuigao was still there. Sitting on his roof and smiling sadly. Her heart ached. She was in pain for the way Naruto was. Because of this village. Because of her. Naruto. Scene change. Sai materialized in front of Danzo bowing. "Well?" asks the old warhawk Anbu. Sai clears his throat before speaking. "I seems that Yuigao-san is growing attached to him." Danzo raises an eyebrow. "Not only that, but it seems that she is training him in the arts of both ninjutsu and jinjutsu. And Uzumaki actually let her get that close to him. It appears so, Danzo-sama." Danzo looks up and rubs his chin. "This is most interesting. Anything else?" Sai nods and says, "Actually yes. Uzumaki has returned Yuzuki's arm to her and didn't seem to care when she embraced him." Danzo looks Sai in the eye. "Is the boy growing soft?" "Not in the least, sir. He just trusts her a bit more is all." Uzumaki still holds that burning desire in his emotionless eyes. Danzo smiles. "Good. Continue keeping tabs on him. Approach him with my message on the day of his graduation exams. If he refuses, I give you full authority over my troops. Kill him." "Hi, Danzo-sama." Danzo smirks and dismisses the young soldier. Uzumaki-san, if you know what's good for you, you'll join me. Become my tool. Hehehehe. The next day Yuigao arrives at Naruto's home. Naruto himself had decided to skip out on the academy this day so he could learn more under the Anbu. She knocks on the door, relieved to know that his puppets didn't attack her. "Enter," says Naruto in that same hollow voice he always has. Yuigao obeys and gasps a second later. Naruto's newest puppet was finished. Chapter 5. Training. Onitenshi. A puppet not even a day old and yet is already able to elicit a gasp from those who are fortunate or unfortunate enough to lay eyes on it. Naruto smirks as Yuigao stumbles backward a bit at seeing the huge figure. She obviously hadn't been expecting to see that. Naruto twitches a finger and Onitenshi steps aside and gestures with its arm. "Come in," says Naruto after 10 seconds. Yuigao obeys. Her eyes still firmly locked on Naruto's newest creation. It stood 7 feet tall, had pitch black skin and snow-white hair. It wore a Roman-style helmet and was built like a very muscular man. All the same parts as the day before, only everything was connected. The puppet's left shoulder now had a massive black wing sprouting from it that arched up, then folded like a bird's wing. The fold was 4 feet above the puppet's head. The huge axe was strapped to its back and the shield was connected to the right arm. The sash held a large brass knuckle, and the left forearm's gauntlet and huge clock gear was painted in seals, and several forward-facing cylinders were connected all along the edges of the gear and were also decorated with assorted kanji. Onitenshi's last feature was the 2 metallic 20-foot-long tentacles that sprouted from right shoulder wrapped diagonally around the chest 2.5 times. Naruto notices Yuigao staring at his puppet and clears his throat to get his attention. "I know he is truly fascinating, but we do not have time to waste," he says, causing her to flinch. "My apologies, Uzumaki-san. So what do you want to work on first?" "Ninja-gen." Naruto eyes glint with sick anticipation. "Teach me Genjutsu first. I will learn that for the first half of the year, then we will work on ninjutsu for the second half." "Why Genjutsu first?" Naruto looks up. "If I can drive an enemy to the brink of absolute terror just by looking at them, that would truly be a satisfying feeling. To have the power to completely immobilize my opponent with the use of illusions alone. I could kill my opponent so much easier." Yuigao's sweat drops a little. "Right, well. Let's begin, shall we?" "Of course, Yuigao-san." Over the next 2 weeks the Anbu unit of Konoha would lose complete track of Yuigao Yuzuki. Naruto attended the academy about 3 times a week, but other than that he had become an enigma again. Sai, Danzo's root spy, would tail Naruto whenever he wasn't holed up in his home, learned that the boy's already impressive chakra control was getting better. He still had yet to find out why. Danzo himself was also wondering where the hell Yuigao had vanished and had sent a few of his subordinates to search her household. It had been literally abandoned. Danzo came to 2 conclusions. Either Yuigao was killed by Naruto and thieves broke in and stole all of her stuff, or… He froze. "Yuigao is at Uzumaki's." This comment earns the attention of several of his subordinates. They look at him with the same look of understanding that Danzo himself had come to realize. Yuigao was training Naruto. "That wench!" yells Danzo in a fit of rage. Scene change. Yuigao was half asleep in one of Naruto's bedrooms when she sneezes. All of her stuff was still packed and in boxes. The room was quite large. Having used to be a whole other apartment, she sighs. Naruto's offer was sudden. Completely out of the blue. "It is more convenient for you to stay here while you train me. Gather all of your stuff and bring it here," he had said. This had of course stunned and caught her completely by surprise, but she reasoned with his thinking and realized it made perfect sense to have her staying with him for the time being. 1. No one could be inclined to stick their noses where it clearly should not be, and 2. The time wasted while Yuigao was heading to Naruto's place had been eliminated altogether, resulting in more training time. Naruto intended to make full use of the year he had. She sighs again. Naruto had been all she had been thinking about lately. It was kind of annoying actually. She was an Anbu, an elite ninja, yet here she was laying in the compound of the most feared and hated boy in Konoha, who would kill an ignorant villager before he would ask questions, and she was thinking about him almost constantly. Ever since that semi-touching moment they had the day he returned her arm. She gets to her feet and heads down toward Naruto's dojo. He was probably training with Yoshino and Onitenshi down there, and she figured she might as well help him with his taijutsu. She makes her way down and approaches the door that led to the dojo. Crash. Bam. Yuigao leaps to the side as huge axe slams into the ground where she just was. Onitenshi, Fox, Naruto and Yoshino were attacking Naruto in a 3-on-1 battle. How Naruto was able to spar with his 3 puppets was still a mystery to her. The concentration it must have taken must be on par with a Sannin. She watches as Naruto draws his katana and leaps away from a Jaiken strike from Yoshino. Then he ducks under a slash from Fox Naruto's Zanbatsu. They were moving at high Chunin level speed and only seemed to be getting faster. Yugao could see 3 of Naruto's fingers twitching on the hand not holding the katana. Strings attached to the puppets. Naruto was a genius in this art. The fighting style was exclusive to Naruto and Naruto alone in Konoha. She doubted puppet masters in Suna had this level of skill. Suddenly Fox Naruto's tails split apart and the swords stick out from them. The spinning demon wind shuriken also extends from the puppet's arm and rolls out. Yoshino takes up a Jaiken stance and Onitenshi straightens out. Now this was something to see. Onitenshi's wing extends out to the left and the 2 tentacles unwrap themselves from its chest and began to dance wildly to the right of him. The large puppet hefts its shield to the front of it and the large axe rests on his shoulder, ready to slice at a moment's notice. Yugao couldn't help but say, truly a representative of its namesake. Naruto's head snaps in her direction. Yugao-san up for teaching me more genjutsu? He says after a second. Yugao smiles and nods. We might as well since I'm here. Naruto nods slightly and seals his puppets without a word. It was quite interesting to watch the puppet seemingly turn to mist and seep into the seal on his forearm. Let's begin, he says, I still need to perfect the hell viewing technique. Yugao was no genjutsu specialist, but she knew enough to get Naruto going in the right direction. If his unique ideas concerning his puppets were anything to go by, then all he would need is a gentle push in the right direction and he could improvise from there. Which in his case is not a bad thing. She looks around the dojo. It was dimly lit and the forms of puppets waiting to attack could be seen hiding in the shadows of the corners on the ceiling. She briefly wondered how he maintained all of the security seals and pre-programmed chakra seals and automatic attack puppets distributed all throughout the complex, but cast it aside. Hell, what she should be wondering is where the hell is he getting all of his resources? She shakes her head. It was none of her business and she could only pray that he one day trusts her enough to tell her. Come on Naruto-san, let's begin. Time went by fast. Naruto's ability to learn was astounding. Yugao only knew 5 genjutsus but still. Naruto had learned them all in 2 months and mastered them in another 2 months. Then he started to improvise and create his own. Just as she knew he would. Why, just the other day had her believing she was flying. With actual wings and everything. He called it false freedom and it was designed to make you commit accidental suicide. Yugao had been most impressed by Naruto's progress and had gave him a hug out of excitement when he cast a high-level genjutsu known as the tree bind. She had been doing that a lot lately. Hugging the boy. She wondered how it made him feel. Naruto was thinking similar thoughts. His genjutsu was above average and his own creations were good, but he wasn't a genjutsu type person. He just couldn't take them to the levels he clearly desired. It was as if there was some sort of mental block trying to prevent him from perfecting genjutsu. Oh well. He would figure it out one day and remove that block. He closes his eyes and prepares to go to sleep. The ninjutsu training started tomorrow. Yugao couldn't sleep. Thoughts of Naruto once again were plaguing her head. The boy was still a mystery to her. He was cold and showed no emotion. His demeanor was that of a hardened war veteran and he opened his heart to no one save for Hokage-sama. The old leader had come to visit on several occasions over the last 6 months and she noticed that Naruto became more relaxed around him. More like the 11-year-old boy he still was. But once Sarutobi was gone he returned to his usual self. Yugao found herself wishing she could be one of those people he could relax around. She wanted to be one of the people who he could open his heart. To return those hugs she so freely gave to him. She sighs and gets out of bed. She puts on a pair of slippers and quietly makes her way to Naruto's room. With the skill of the job she is trained to do, she slips into Naruto's room and approaches his bed. He was facing the other direction asleep. She stares at his still form for a whole minute, barely noticing the puppets and the other traps, ready to spring to life at the first wrong move. Naruto. She says as she leans down. Naruto was awake. He had been as soon as Yugao left her room. He knew she was coming to his room and prepared. Was she coming to try and kill him? PFFT, yeah right. She's died just like the others. He pauses a bit as Yugao enters his room and slowly approaches his bed. He was getting tense like no other now, but decided not to spring his traps. She was too close. If she wanted to kill him she could. Just as he was about to roll around and confront her, he hears her say his name in a tone he had never heard anyone use toward him. It was confusing. He didn't know what feeling was associated with this tone, but he knew it wasn't hate or anger. It felt more like sadness and regret with a bit of longing. He tenses again and widens his eyes when he feels a pair of slender arms wrap softly around his torso and a pair of lips land gently on his cheek. He could see the purple hair of the Anbu as it spilled over into his face and he could feel the softness of her breasts pressed gently against his back. Naruto, I want to see you smile. Okay, this was getting too awkward in Naruto's opinion. What the hell was this woman doing? Naruto. I don't want you to be alone anymore. I don't want you to be sad any longer. Naruto had to suppress a snort. His tears had dried long ago. Sadness, like any other emotion beside anger and a bit of excitement, was a thing of the past for him. He could feel Yugao's silent sobs jerk through her body as she continued to hold him. She was one in a million, that's for sure. Naruto inwardly commended her for not being an ignorant dumbass anymore, thinking he was the fox, but was still questioning why the hell she was clinging all over him. Finally, after a few minutes, Naruto sighs and sits up, causing the woman to gasp. Holy crap, how long have you been awake? Naruto chuckles and says, since before you even left your own room. The woman eeps loudly and leaps away from Naruto. Her face a very dark red. Naruto grins as Yugao tries desperately to form a sentence. Finally Naruto says, Yugao, well, I appreciate your concern for me and I'm glad that you have an open mind. I'm going to have to ask you to return to your room. Yugao's sputtering stops instantly and she opts to stare at Naruto as he gazes into her eyes. All of this mushy stuff isn't me, Yugao. I have decided that if I am going to strike fear into my enemies so that I may be left alone, I cannot, no. I refuse to open up my heart. Emotions are a useless obstacle that constantly held me back and kept me weak all that time. Anger, indifference and amusement at the expense of others are the only feelings that are useful to me. So abandon your effort to unlock the others within me. It's useless. Yugao couldn't take it anymore. She launches herself at Naruto and grabs him in a fierce hug. She holds onto the boy for a whole 10 minutes before finally letting go and staring into his eyes with her own tear-filled orbs. Naruto, I'm going to reawaken your happiness, your sadness. I want to be the one who can do that for you. Naruto sighs and gently pushes the woman off of him. I suggest you return to your room now, Yugao-san. Yugao sighs and turns to leave. The door opens for her and Yugao steps out. As the door closes, Yugao looks back at Naruto one last time. She sighs again. Naruto continued to stare at the spot where Yugao disappeared for 3 more minutes before sighing and laying back down on his bed. Foolish woman, he whispers. Time skip. The next day proceeded like any other day, only this time Naruto and Yugao stood facing each other in the dojo, getting ready to begin ninjutsu training. He noticed that Yugao was looking at him with a hint of determination in her eyes. Perhaps formulating a plan to try and find a way to his heart. He flicks his wrist and a puppet lands from a hole in the ceiling. The puppet approaches and hands Naruto a scroll with the Hyuga clan symbol on it. Before Yugao could express her surprise, Naruto speaks. I stole this from that pompous clan with the blank eyes. It turns out they've grown so arrogant that they believe that they no longer need their clan ninjutsu. He opens the scroll and says, all of these have to do with flowers, be it shape, name or actual use of flowers. I will learn these first. Yugao nods and look at the scroll. There were 4 jutsus described in the scroll. The first 2 were water techniques. They were both named for a type of flower. Water release. Cry of Splitting Daisy and the water release. Fury of the Blue Rose. Then there was the fire technique. Tears of the Dandelion. And finally was the flower release. Dance of the Cherry Blossom. The scroll gave no descriptions of the jutsus, but she could see why Naruto would be interested in learning them. Flower-style techniques were something she as well as everyone else save for probably the Hokage and the older Hyuga clan members had never heard of before. She sighs at the arrogance of the Hyugas and pitied them a bit as well. Because now their secret jutsus were in the hands of Naruto Uzumaki. Okay Naruto, which one first? Naruto grins and points. Scene change. All around Konoha, young ninjas in training were picking up their regimens. Neji Hyuga had indeed decided to switch up his style and even agreed to learn another taijutsu style from his team sensei. He was actually getting along quite well in his opinion. The Jaiken was becoming more and more of a thing of the past. He still used the basic fundamentals such as attacking the inner coils and the tenketsu, but the style would often change. He started to incorporate the iron fist that his sensei was teaching him as well as other jutsus into the Jaiken, creating a style that could one day destroy the Hyuga. Hanabi and Hinata had also stepped it up. Hanabi had first focused on getting Hinata to open up more and cast her insecurities to the wind. It was a difficult task, but 2 months after her encounter with Naruto she had succeeded. Hanabi had used Naruto as a sore spot on several occasions, saying to look at how strong he was because of his own confidence. She had said to Hinata that lack of confidence would get her killed. It took a whole lot of effort and time. Finally though, after 2 months, Hinata's stutter had vanished. She still was insecure, but she wasn't as sad as she was, and because of this they were finally able to begin their revised training. They too had heeded Naruto's words and were branching out in different directions. Hanabi had a goal, and it was to surpass Naruto in power. The puppet user interested her greatly, and she didn't want to be a weakling in front of him. Hinata, although scared of Naruto, still found his strength something to admire. She wanted to be like him. Strong, confident and tolerant of no one. That was her goal. And from the shadows with glaring Byakugan eyes watched an angry Hiashi. Those three might become a problem. He would keep an eye on them and put a stop to their actions if they got too out of hand. Scene change. Sasori continued to push his body to the limits. He had to get stronger. He had to improve. He studied all of the scrolls and even began to wear weights. If he remembered correctly, Naruto wore weights as well. He trained his body and his mind to the limits and beyond. If Naruto could be as strong as he is, then so could he. He would reach the level needed to kill his brother. Now he was currently doing a vigorous chakra training exercise. He needed high reserves if he wanted power, right? Definitely. Especially if the person he wishes to surpass before he surpasses his brother was as strong as he is now and would only get stronger. Sasori pants as he focuses his concentrations on hanging upside down from the ceiling with a cinder block hanging off of his wrists. Scene change. Sasori was in the forest. The area around him was littered with weapons and what appeared to be claw marks from a large beast. He was panting heavily while holding a large sitter in his hand. The item itself was a strange one. It was shaped like any other sitter, only it was black and much thinner than regular ones. The base of the instrument also sported a white crescent moon-shaped blade that curved perfectly with the shape of the base. It looked like a guillotine. Sasori places the weapon in a case and straps it to his back. His training was done for now. It was getting dark and he had been out in the forest for 5 hours. Thoughts of Naruto crossed his mind. He had finally come to realize why it was that Naruto acted the way he did and felt a bit more respect toward him. But he still didn't like him too much. Quiet, emotionless people just clashed with his personality. It was natural to feel that way. He briefly wondered how his lost sister would have felt about him. That thought causes a bit of sadness and determination to well up inside him. I'll find you. That's a promise. I'm Skip. Naruto woke up to Yuigao once again giving him a loving hug. He sighs. When was she going to quit this? Naruto, do you know what today is? She asks. Naruto looks around then spots his calendar. He grins and gently pushes Yuigao off of him. It's the day I meet this Danzo and claim his head. Yuigao nods and heads toward the door. Good luck, Naruto, she says. Naruto nods. Scene change. Finally the day had come. This was a day that he had been waiting for 6 whole months. Danzo grins as Sai appears before him. Report. Sai nods and says, the 6 months are up. Uzumaki is headed toward the Ninja Academy as we speak. The Genin exams will be held precisely 60 minutes from now at 3:30 p.m. Judging from Uzumaki's previous visits to the Ninja Academy, he will leave out of the southwest exit and head to the Hokage's office before heading back home once he has passed. I see. And Yuzuki? Sai shakes his head. She is still staying at Uzumaki's place. I will confront her myself. You talk with Uzumaki. Danzo frowns. The plan is for all of us to go after Uzumaki. Sai nods then looks up with an alien glint in his eyes. But wouldn't it be wiser to kill Yuzuki before she meets up with Naruto, should he refuse? Danzo smiles. Sai, you are indeed my greatest subordinate. Yes, go locate Yuigao and eliminate her. Sai nods and says, hi. She shall not meet up with Uzumaki today. Thank you, Sai, that is all. Understood, says Sai before melting into the shadows. A second later a group of 30 kneeling Rudanbu members appear. You are all to follow me when the time comes. I will go to Uzumaki myself and offer him a position. If he refuses, you are to kill him. Understood. There was a chorus of hi Danzo-sama. Before they vanish. Now all we do now is wait. Scene change. Naruto entered the class and made his way to the back of the room and silently waited for his turn for the test. The students around him were chatting excitably, talking about how they were going to make their parents proud and become great ninja for Konoha and all that. He scoffs. These bunch of fools are lucky their parents were wise enough to keep the ignorant mouth shut around him, otherwise they'd be orphans right now. The talking went on for another hour as the students continued to fall into an air of confidence and anticipation until finally Iruka and Mizuki walk in. Good afternoon, class. Today is the day you've all been waiting for. Today is the day you all take the graduation exams. There was some cheering and other such yells of joy. Iruka clears his throat and says, not the exam is quite simple really. All you have to do is make sure you can efficiently do the 3 academy jutsus. There were some whoops of joy. Some groans of disappointment and a big sweat drop from Naruto. One by one the students would leave the room with one of the teachers and come back 5 minutes later, either wearing a Konoha forehead protector in victory or hanging their bare foreheads in defeat. Naruto didn't really pay much attention. He was not too happy right now. He watches as Sasuke is called up and sighs when he returns 5 minutes later wearing a headband. Naruto Uzumaki, says Iruka. The class focuses its attention on the young puppet user and face vaulted what he says next. Iruka-sen, I guess I failed because I do not remember how to do the 3 academy jutsus. Iruka face vaults as well. What the hell do you mean by that? Naruto sighs. It means that I have been so focused on learning higher level jutsus that I forgot how to do these three. Iruka sighs. At least try and remember. Come on. Naruto sighs, gets to his feet and follows Iruka out of the classroom to the room a few doors down. Once he arrives he spots Mizuki and a table decorated in a few Konoha headbands. Welcome Naruto, first I'm going to ask you to do the replacement jutsu, says Iruka not wasting any time. Naruto concentrated a bit and gathers a bit of chakra. He was mildly surprised when he actually managed to switch places with Mizuki. Iruka smiles. Good Naruto, now do the transformation jutsu. Naruto shrugs and without a word he transforms into a somewhat reasonable copy of Iruka. The only problem was that fact that the hair was still blonde. Iruka frowns a bit. Your henge needs work. Okay now, do the clone jutsu. Naruto closes his eyes and gathers more chakra. He takes a deep breath and says, Bunshin no jutsu, there were 6 puffs of smoke and 6 dead-looking Narutos appeared. They were way less than satisfactory clones. Iruka looks at Naruto regretfully and says, I'm sorry Naruto, but you fail. Naruto says nothing. He merely turns to leave, but not before hearing Mizuki. Iruka, that was a bit harsh. Why fail him when he obviously has the ability to be a great ninja? Iruka sighs. It's the will of the council. If he can't do the jutsus then he fails. I would love to pass that boy. He has great potential. Naruto shrugs and adds Iruka to his now 3-person-long people he does not need to kill list, along with Yugao and Sarutobi. He could feel the sincerity behind the teacher's actions and respected him a bit more for it. Mizuki on the other hand, he didn't like that man. Naruto made his way back to the academy and is met with the startled gazes of the entire class. Holy crap, he failed. Yells the Inuzuka boy. How the hell did that happen? It was then that the class exploded into loud chatter. Naruto sighs in exasperation and exits the building. He walked across the small playground and spots an old swing. Now there was something that brought back some memories. Times of his early childhood before that incident. Back when he was still weak and defenseless. He takes his place on the swing and closes his eyes. Content to listen to all around him. Becoming a ninja for Konoha didn't matter to him. It's not like he would willingly serve under someone anyway. No one deserved the privilege except Sarutobi Jiji. Chances are he'd end up poisoning his sensei and turning him into a puppet anyway, traumatizing his teammates in the process. He grins a bit at that thought and another rises up. Perhaps he should create some more battle puppets. It would be nice to have a personal army and not just a bunch of security guards. Besides, if he aimed to be the greatest puppeteer then he would have to. But he couldn't just choose anybody. If they were alive then they had to have been powerful. If they are his own creations then they had to be as strong as human puppets. He looks up and thought. See that? It's that boy. I heard he failed. Good. Imagine if that thing became a ninja. I know. After all he's the SHH, we can't talk about that. Suddenly a pair of senbon needles jams into each woman's legs and they fall to the ground with gasps of pain. Their legs were useless for the moment. They look up and see Naruto standing over them and gasp. Help the monst. Begins one woman but is cut off as Naruto touches a nerve on her neck, effectively shutting down the voice box. The other woman was too scared to say anything. Naruto looks down at the women with ice-cold emotionless eyes that seem to shine with anger. Those who cannot keep their mouths shut are always the first to die. Remember that so next time you'll know how to act around me. He then turns and walks away, leaving an entire group of terrified people. Up in the tree sat a rude Anbu. He vanishes, trailing after Naruto. Time skip. It was dark. Naruto had, instead of going home, decided to take a stroll through the forest. Those 2 women had pissed him off and the only thing that stopped him from removing their heads was his logic. They hadn't openly tried to kill him so they were in the clear. Barely. On top of that he wouldn't dare kill a woman in front of her children. He would do it in private later. After all he couldn't stand crying kids and that's exactly what the killing of those 2 would have caused. Not to mention a lot of fighting. The 2 children and his logic had saved those women. But should they say something again they would die. He made sure to get that point across. As he walked, he became aware of numerous presences within the forest. 5 of them were a bit further away at different parts of the forest. Academy students training, he guessed, stronger than average academy students. Then there were the high-level signatures that were trailing after him. There were 30 people altogether and he mentally thanked Yugao for insisting he train his ability to sense chakra signatures. He was tense, ready to fight at moment's notice. Then there were 2 familiar chakra signatures in conflict. His curiosity peaks a bit and he heads off in that direction. He arrives to a curious scene indeed. Iruka and Mizuki were fighting a death match. Mizuki was carrying a large scroll and Iruka was trying to get it from him. Naruto focuses on the scroll trying to find out what scroll it was. It was then that Iruka spoke. Mizuki. I will not let you take away the scroll. I'll kill you if I have to. Mizuki grins and says, go ahead and try Iruka. We both know that you're weak and near dead already. This scroll belongs to me now. With this scroll I'll become unstoppable. Naruto then sees the title of the scroll. Forbidden Jutsus. Now normally Naruto would have just stood by and watched Mizuki decapitate Iruka and leave, but that scroll was called the Forbidden Scroll. It was a scroll that held some of Konoha's most devastating jutsus within it. And he aimed to be the most devastating ninja. So naturally when Mizuki charged he leapt down and intercepted Mizuki with his foot and snatched the scroll from his hands. Mizuki gets back to his feet and glares at Naruto who was examining the scroll. Hey. Give that back brat, it's mine. Naruto pays him no attention. He merely opens the scroll and looks at the first jutsu. Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. Interesting. Then Naruto don't. Those jutsus are highly dangerous. They could kill you, says Iruka. Naruto shrugs and says, staying in this village could kill me, yet I'm still here. He then proceeds to practice the hand sign for the Cage Bunshin. Mizuki scowls and says, I'll kill you monster and I'll be taking that scroll. Naruto looks over at Mizuki with a glare. No one called him a monster. Ignorant Konoha dumbus, he says before vanishing. A second later a fist buries itself in Mizuki's gut and slams him into a tree. Naruto glares into Mizuki's eyes and pulls out a kunai. I'm getting tired of your mouth. Mizuki grins evilly and says, I bet you want to know why everyone hates you, correct? Naruto stops. Iruka, don't, that's forbidden. Mizuki looks into Naruto's eyes and continues. You want to know why they shun you, treat you like garbage and warn their children about you? Because. He never finishes because Naruto had hit the nerve and shut down his voice box, much like the woman earlier. Mizuki Baka, you think I do already know why? You're a fool. Mizuki's eyes widen. It's because I'm a Jinchuriki. The holder of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Everybody should know that. I put it in my warning almost 2 years ago. He jams his kunai into Mizuki's throat and pulls out a large scalpel knife. I don't know how useful you'll be as a tool, but I'll give you a try. And before Iruka could protest, Naruto opens up Mizuki's ribcage and begins to literally dissect the man. Up in the trees Danzo signals with his hands, okay, do it now. Hi. Dirty Rude Anbu leap from the trees and surround Naruto who merely looks up and says, about time you fools showed yourselves. Iruka widens his eyes. Iruka-san, take the forbidden scroll back to Sarutobi-san, says Danzo. Iruka looks worriedly at Naruto who was still working on Mizuki's corpse. We aren't here to attack him unless he is uncooperative, now leave, says Danzo. Iruka nods, not knowing what else to do and leaps away with the scroll. Naruto now looks at Danzo with a bit of a glare. Danzo approaches Naruto but stray a good distance away from him. Uzumaki-san, I have an offer for you. Scene change. Yuigao was walking down the street with her friend Hade when they are suddenly attacked by a huge ink lion. They leap to the side and run off to one of the training grounds to keep the civilians out of the way. Once they do, they turn to face their foe. It was a young man Naruto's age. He was dressed in black and had a bit of a pale complexion even in the dark, he had black hair and no emotions. An ink brush and a scroll was in his hands. Who is this kid? Asks Hade. Yuigao glares and says, his name is Sai of Rude Anbu. Sai nods and says, that's right, and for failing to follow Danzo-sama's instructions, you are to be put to death. A second later a huge ink dragon burst from Sai's scroll. Chapter 6. The light of the flame that withers the root. Naruto removes his arms from Mizuki's chest and stands to face Danzo. An offer, you say? He asks. Danzo smirks a bit and nods. Naruto looks up in thought. Attack plans were already forming in his head. And what make you think I'll join your little group of lapdogs? Danzo smirks a bit more and gestures with his hands. The 30 Anbu subordinates take up fighting stances and begin to enclose around the boy. Naruto-san, it would be wise for you to join me. We wouldn't want any unfortunate accidents. Naruto glares. Danzo-san, that is the second time you have placed a threat upon me. I think it's time for me to show you what that means. Danzo smirks a bit more and says, it is not wise to threaten me, let alone think you and attack me. Naruto scoffs. Many have said that and all have died. That fool back there is a prime example, says Naruto as he points to Mizuki's mutilated corpse. Some of Danzo's forces cringe a bit. Danzo narrows his eyes. Rude is on a whole other level than that fool. Naruto looks up in thought. Still, it does not matter to me. I am not an idiot and I refuse to be used for your own selfish gains. I know your type. You see me as a weapon that needs to be controlled or discarded. I am no mere object, fool. I have a will of my own. So I'm taking it you refuse to join me? Naruto scoffs. What was your first clue, old man? No, I won't be joining your little organization for one reason. He drops his scalpel and begins to flip through hand signs. Danzo, although joining your group would benefit me greatly and I could easily obtain more strength, you and you little lapdogs have threatened my life. No one does that and lives to brag to the whole world about it, and that my dear old man is something that takes more precedence than gaining more power. I will put up with no one's crap above all other issues, be it offers of power, protection, or any other. That is my way. Danzo glares. And besides, I am not a ninja. I failed the graduation exam and therefore cannot join Root Anbu without permission from Hokage. It was then that Danzo recognizes with stunned shock what hand signs Naruto was doing. Clear the area. He yells, but it was too late. Naruto slams his hands into the ground and says in a voice void of all emotion as a massive amount of chakra explodes off of him and spirals upward, fire release. Scene change. The village of Konoha was in an uproar. The people had gathered and were standing in front of Sarutobi prepared for battle. News of the stolen scroll spread rapidly after Iruka had returned with it. Also the news of Naruto's presence had riled the people up. They were glad to be granted the chance to kill the boy now that he was out of his home. They waited eagerly for Sarutobi's order to go and hunt down the boy. Their weapons were drawn and their adrenaline was high. Sarutobi clears his throat in order to gain everyone's attention. But what he gets isn't silence. It was gasps of surprise. What the hell is that? Yells one villager in a voice full of fear while pointing at something behind Sarutobi. The old Hokage raises an eyebrow. What are you all pointing at? He turns around and gasps. All he could think to say was, no way. Hiashi isn't going to be happy as a huge blaring orange flaming dandelion burst from the trees and towers above in the distance about half-mile out. The villagers were captivated by the beauty of the flaming flower and could do nothing more than watch in awe as it began to rain fireballs down upon the surrounding area. Whomever that was hitting was one poor son of a bitch, that's for sure. That is what most of the observers thought. Sarutobi on the other hand was worried. The Hyugas hadn't used that move in years and only one other person has had access to the Hyuga scrolls recently and not many have the chakra capacity to make the flower that big. Shit. Naruto. He yells. He was getting ready to jet off in that direction when a huge black dragon suddenly rises above the north side of Konoha and gives a mighty roar. Shit. What is going on? Quickly get over there everybody. Asuma. Kurenai. Kakashi. Anko. Ibiki. Come with me. I think Naruto is in a fight with Danzo. What? No time? Come on. Scene change. Sasuke was about a mile away from Naruto training in solitude when he saw it. The flaming dandelion appeared towering above the trees. What the hell? He says as he take off in its direction. Scene change. Hanabi and Hinata had bulging wide eyes. They knew what that was. They had learned about it from their father a couple of years back. Come on Hinata, says Hanabi as she grabs her older sister by the hand and races off with her. Scene change. Niji was also staring with wide eyes. This jutsu. He takes off in that direction. He had to know who was doing that move. Scene change. Tsuchi was the closest one to Naruto. He doesn't say anything as the giant flower rises from the ground. He merely jets off in that direction with a raised eyebrow. And his sitter poised for battle. Scene change. A distant form of the dandelion glowed brightly in the distance and illuminated the scene of northern Konoha. Yuigao looks at Hayate. Hayate looks at Yuigao. They both look at the huge ink dragon then at Sai. Then they vanish. Sai had no time to react. Just who do you think you are, brat? Asks Yuigao as she slams her fist into the boy's stomach and sends him smashing into the wall. Hayate had leapt up and tore the dragon apart with his dance of the crescent moon. Sai shakily gets to his feet and smirks before bursting into ink. Shit, where are you, coward? Above you, Yuigao leaps to the side to avoid a claw slash from an ink tiger. Please brat, fire release. Fire dragon. Sai has to abandon his perch or get incinerated along with it. As he soared through the air, Hayate appears and slams the butt of his katana into his temple, sending him back toward Yuigao who had an almost devilish smirk on her face. Sigh of Root Anbu, huh? You die. Earth javelin. She slams her hands into the ground and a large spike of earth bursts from the ground and soars at Sai. He does a quick replacement but is intercepted once again by Hayate who slashes his legs. Sai grunts in pain and collapses to the ground bleeding from his calves and his mouth. Damn it. I need more training. Yuigao glares and says, Danzo is a fool to have sent someone of your level, Sai. What are you thinking? Just then the other ninjas of the Konoha arrive on the scene. Wait, says Yuigao. She approaches Sai and burns his scrolls and ink with a small fire jutsu. You're helpless, Sai. Don't try anything. Sai just looked up at her with lifeless eyes. Eyes that revealed to her a child who has been stripped of everything that made him human, leaving a mere shell of himself behind. A young man whose sole purpose in life was to fight and serve like a loyal slave. Blindly devoting himself to Danzo and Danzo alone. Inoichi Yamanaka approaches and asks, Yuigao-san, who is this boy? Yuigao looks down and says, he Danzo's student. Take him to the prison chambers please. Inoichi looks down at the boy and says, it's like he's a machine. Yuigao nods as the Yamanaka clan head picks the boy up and vanishes. Pei-8 looks at Yuigao and asks, what the hell is going on? Yuigao sighs and says, it's Naruto. I think he's in a fight with Root. Pei-8 widens his eyes and grabs Yuigao's shoulder. Where is he? He asks. Yuigao eyes the dandelion and says, the forest. Head for the flower. Pei-8 nods and vanishes with Yuigao. Scene change. The hellish firestorm of death. That's what could describe the scene around Naruto. His body was covered in flames that swirled violently around him and towered in the form of the stem of a plant that rose up and connected to a blazing flower. 15 of Danzo's Anbu had been caught up in that attack. And the others had barely managed to get out of range. They didn't know what hit them. All they could remember was rain. Thousands, perhaps millions of tiny balls of flames that poured down from the top of the flaming dandelion like a hailstorm from the depths of Hades itself. Nothing within the immediate area survived. Everything was incinerated or up in flames right now. Naruto honestly hadn't expected that. He stood staring in front of him at the destruction the tears of the dandelion had wrought. There were several still barely alive roots struggling to stay away from the fires that kept coming to life. He smirks a minute later and dissipates the jutsu. He now knew why the Hyugas were deemed the most powerful clan in Konoha and why these jutsus were no longer used. They were powerful and sapped chakra like Kid on Lemonade. He was panting a bit, but otherwise he was fine. Danzo, get out here and fight me, he says as he slashes the throat of another helpless root, sending blood all over. He receives his answer in the form of the other 15 root ambus, dropping from the trees in front of him. Uzumaki, you'll pay for that, says one of them. Naruto smirks and does a few more hand signs. False freedom. The Anbu break Naruto's personal genjutsu with little difficulty. Don't toy with us, Uzumaki. Naruto scowls and draws his katana. The roots smirk behind their masks before vanishing. Shy. Bam. Naruto receives a vicious kick to his head and then a punch to his mid-back. He skids across the forest floor for a second before jamming his katana into the ground. Earth release. Earth Dragon Bomb. Naruto widens his eyes and leaps to the side just as several fist-sized earth bullets whizzed past his head and tore through the trees behind him like paper towels. TCH, damn it, he mutters as she reaches down to his ankles. I don't know how fast I am compared to your forces, Danzo, but I won't get made a fool of tonight. He unclasps the weights on his ankles, then unclasps the weights on his wrists before tearing off his tattered cloak. Revealing a bare chest and a bandaged wrapped torso along with a chain scythe, a small warhammer and a patch of senbon needles. He glares as Danzo's taunting voice rings throughout the area. You wear orange. Quite unbefitting of someone of your caliber. Are you so arrogant to believe it does not matter who sees you? Naruto glances down at his baggy slightly tattered orange shorts and smirks. Arrogance is but a tool to get you killed, Danzo. And your arrogance will be your downfall. He then vanishes. The roots were slightly surprised at the boy's speed but were still able to track him. The leader draws his katana and blocks Naruto's sudden downward slash. What he didn't expect was for Naruto's other hand to lash out and jam a poison senbon into his neck. He collapses in a seizure. Naruto smirks and ducks, narrowly avoiding a decapitating slash from a katana from behind. He then leaps high into the air. 5 of the roots follow, much to Naruto's pleasure. Danzo, I may not be more powerful than your lackeys, but I am definitely smarter. He then channels a bit of chakra and begins to rotate. Ninja art. Senbon storm. Naruto's entire body began to glow with seals as he spun, and before the 5 roots could question what the hell Naruto was doing, they are assaulted by a massive wave of senbon needles. The weapons flew from the seals on his body in all directions with deadly accuracy and force. 4 of the ninjas were killed, while the last one somehow managed to block most of them and keep himself alive. As he and his dead teammates plummeted back to the ground, Naruto speaks again. I knew this day would come, Danzo. I have taken all of the necessary preparations. I have many tricks up my sleeve. The surviving root of Naruto's senbon storm couldn't help but feel his respect for Naruto increase. Right up until his head is removed by Naruto's sword. Ingenious, he mutters right before he hit the ground with a bit of force. Naruto merely looks at the downed man before vanishing again. Flashes of metal could be heard and sparks could be seen appearing at random spots of the battlefield. Ack. Another root falls to Naruto's katana. He had gotten cocky and dropped his guard. Somewhere a bit of a distance away, Danzo was smirking. Amazing, Naruto-san. He then gestures with his wrist and the rest of the members of Root appear. There were 60 of them and each was kneeling. Fill that Jinchuriki, he commands simply. The ninjas nod and vanish. 6 Root Anbu were left. They were panting a bit and Naruto stood in front of them. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. One eye was closed and his katana had been broken. Blood was dripping from his mouth, arms and chest. "Looks like all those spars with Yugao-san are actually paying off," he says as he draws the battle chain in one hand and the hammer in the other. The Rudanbu were a bit weary of Naruto now. His speed was below theirs, but his reflexes, intelligence and ingenious placement of traps on his body had made up for that. Every time one of them would hit a right spot on Naruto, a trap would be triggered. Senbon or any other variety of weapons coated in poison would shoot from a hidden seal and incapacitate the attacker. On top of that was his skill in other weapons. At one time an axe had burst from a seal on his chest and he had wielded it effortlessly and used it to behead the man in front of him before it shattered like glass. They were weary because striking Naruto could cost them their lives. This boy had come fully prepared knowing he couldn't beat them in a contest of pure sword fighting and jutsu wielding. Like the kitsune he was hated for he had a mastery over tricks and deception. He was a worthy opponent. "Danzo, show yourself," he says. He was reaching his limit and the weapon storing seals on his body were running out. He had to locate Danzo and end this. The six in front of him take up stances again. "You shall not harm Danzo-sama," they say before vanishing again. Without thinking Naruto channels chakra into the seals on his body and releases all of the remaining weapons stored within him. Ninja art. Metal hailstorm. Shuriken, kunai, senbon needles and hundreds of different daggers flew from the seals on Naruto's body and tore through the six Anbu who had rushed in, foolishly hoping to end this battle. They knew this was a foolish thing to do, but they would throw their lives away for Danzo-sama. It was their way. Their code. They could not let this boy get to him. After he had called for their leader for what must have been the 10th time, they realized that Naruto is after Danzo's life and would let nothing stop him from accomplishing his goal. Should he get to him, Danzo would surely be killed. They couldn't let this happen. Even at the cost of their lives, so they stalled him and emptied him of his weapon storing seals. That was so the reinforcements that were coming wouldn't be burdened by Naruto's trap. As the six ninja dropped dead around Naruto, the rest of Rudanbu arrived on the scene. They landed in front of Naruto and gazed at the destruction before them and the source of it all standing in the middle of it all. Flames continued to dance all over the area and the smell of death was beginning to linger in the air. Naruto looks at the newcomers and glares. "Is your precious leader so worthy of having such a force throw away their lives for him?" he asks. A ninja at the front of the group steps forward and says, "We of Root will do anything for Danzo-sama. One such as you who merely lives for himself could never hope to understand. You who has become a monster could never understand how we humans feel." Naruto sighs and bites his thumb. "You may be right." He slides his bleeding thumb across the seals on his right forearm and Fox, Naruto, Oni Tenshi and Yoshino appear in puffs of smoke. "I who has felt nothing but hatred from you all could never understand. You who all have been coddled and loved by someone in your lives have a valid reason for judging me. You who have never had to live through the hatred of an entire ninja village have a perfectly valid reason for seeing me the way you do." Fox Naruto draws its Zanbatsu, Oni Tenshi draws its axe and extends the tentacles, and Yoshino takes up a Jaiken stance. Naruto looks down with his hair covering his eyes as he drops the battle chain and grips the hammer tighter in the hand, not controlling his puppets. "You all don't have to deal with what I have to." Naruto looks back up with the fires of determination and hatred burning in his eyes and his chakra spiking to high levels again. "You don't know the obstacles I have had to overcome. The pain I went through that day 2 years ago. You don't know what it's like to realize that no one will ever be there to help you. To realize that you were chosen as a sacrifice by the Yondaime to seal a demon within merely to save a village that probably deserved the death the demon was administering upon it." Up in the trees there were several gasps. Hinata, Hanabi, Sasuke, Neji and Tsuchi had arrived just as Naruto killed those last 6 Anbu and watched as the rest of them made themselves known. They didn't pay any attention to each other and merely stood there frozen. "Naruto has a demon sealed in him? But that can't be true. Unless..." It was Tsuchi who came to the conclusion first. Naruto held the Kyuubi no Kitsune within him. The demon that was so frequently talked about all over Konoha. This revelation causes him to gasp. "I see," says Neji as he unconsciously touches the seal on his forehead. He looks over at Hinata and Hanabi who both had tears in their eyes. Sasuke could only stare at Naruto. This blonde, killing, emotionless boy has a demon sealed within him and judging from what he says it was the Kyuubi. His respect for Naruto increased several-fold. The group of 5 watches as the members of Root circle around Naruto and prepare to attack. They watch as Naruto himself prepare to rush into battle with the aid of his 3 puppets. "We have to help him," whispers Hinata. This draws the attention of the other 4. They look into her eyes and see the flame of determination. Tsuchi opens his case quietly and grabs his sitter. "Yeah." Slowly one by one the flames of determination ignite within each preteen. Naruto smiles as the Root Anbu begin to circle around him, blocking any chance for escape. But no worries. It's all in the past. I am not as angsty as I may sound right now. He twitches his fingers and his puppets take defensive stances around him. Should I be killed here tonight, know that you must have a bit of skill. His grin grows a bit more. But should you all be killed, know you will serve a new master. The lead Anbu smirks and says, we are not like the fodder you have just dispatched, Uzumaki. On top of that, you are weak and half dead already. You will die. Onitenshi suddenly raises its shield and blocks a barrage of kunai. Naruto smirks. You all have to do better than that, fools. The lead Anbu smirks. Naruto, don't waste our time. Come with us. It is your last chance. Naruto glares. Why do you bunch of fools want so badly for me to join your group? It is not us who wish for you to join our ranks. It is the will of Danzo-sama. He sees potential in you, boy. And when Danzo deems you worthy of his attention, you do not ignore him. If you do so, you are severely punished or, in your case, killed. Naruto glares and prepares to charge. I have made my decision. TCH, very well then. It was then that the battle of his life had started. The forces of Root surged forward like a wave of cloaked and masked death and converged upon Naruto with a single desire. The brutal ending of Naruto's life. Fox Naruto's tail split open and a wave of senbon surged forth from the opening and into the wave. Onitenshi raises its shieldless arm and one of the canisters burst open and shoots a stream of fire. Ishino takes up a stance and begins to throw chakra from her palms. One after another fell to the attacks of Naruto's puppets, but it wasn't enough. These Anbu were ready and well coordinated. They were easily adept at fighting in groups and against weapons, such as Naruto's puppets. On top of that, Naruto was tired already. He leaps up and his puppets leap off in different directions. It was either fight or die. He dodges and blocks punches, kicks and swords, while keeping solid control over his puppets. Give it up, Uzumaki. I know your weakness. You may be good at taijutsu while not worried about other matters, but now that you have your puppets out, you're doomed. Naruto takes a slash to the leg. But it only served to enrage him. He gets glint in his eye that causes the insulter's teammates to give out a warning. Hey, look out. But it was too late. Naruto had reached into his bandages and pulled out a pair of spiked brass knuckles. He slams his fist into the man's throat and watches in satisfaction as he drops. Well, I may be a puppeteer, but I have overcome that weakness. I can engage in a full taijutsu match while simultaneously controlling my puppets. Do not underestimate me. You bastard. 3 more Anbu had converged upon him. He was overwhelmed and sent skidding across the forest floor toward Fox Naruto, whose movement had stopped due to Naruto's sudden incapacitation. Onitenshi had stopped as well, with his tentacles impaled through the stomachs of 3 roots. Shit. Naruto quickly re-engages his puppets in battle with their opponents. Naruto was in pain. The wounds he had taken were healing a lot slower than usual and his fingers were getting tired. Still, he had to persevere. He wasn't about to lose to these bastards. He looks up at the smirking faces of his opponents and glares. 10 faces were looking down at him while the others were still trying to take out his puppets. Ack. Another falls to Fox Naruto's sword. Immobilize Uzumaki's hands. Another Anbu right before he too is killed by Yoshino and a Jaiken strike to the heart. The ninjas around Naruto smirk and one grabs Naruto's warhammer. Let's see who good he is without his precious dolls, he says. Naruto rolls to the side to avoid getting his hand smashed but are met with a vicious kick and a katana stabbing into his thigh. He grunts out in pain but does not scream. He was not weak. He would not give these bastards the satisfaction of seeing weakness. Blood was pouring out of his leg, but he kept his fingers moving. Onitenshi spreads its wing and unleashes a wave of blades disguised as feathers. All 4 of the Anbu facing the puppet are killed quickly. Naruto does a couple of hand signs and says, ninja art, feather swarm. The feathers of Onitenshi's wing begin to swirl violently around it and slash at anyone who got too close. Unfortunately for the 5 more roots who had decided to charge Onitenshi. Naruto smirks at the satisfying sounds of flesh being sliced apart and screams of pain echoing through the air. Don't smirk, demon, just because you have managed to kill a few of us, don't get cocky. Naruto receives a powerful punch to the jaw. I'm going to beat you within an inch of your pathetic life, then we're going to take you to Danzo-sama so he can deliver the final blow himself, understand? Crack. Naruto's eyes widen as Fox Naruto is lanced through with 6 katanas. You're losing your control, demon, says the Anbu. Naruto glares and jerks his fingers a few more times. Fox Naruto's tail split open again and reveal 9 poison-tipped swords. Before the Anbu holding the swords in the puppet could react, they are stabbed and killed, pumped full of poison. Arg. Those hands of yours. Naruto hisses as his hands are stabbed with swords, effectively ending the puppet's movements. The 3 weapons drop to the ground motionless and vulnerable. This was it, Naruto realized. These bunch of Konoha bastards were about to kill him. He silently counts all of the root Anbu as they converged upon him again. He nods in satisfaction as he counts 30 survivors. It was merely sheer numbers and exhaustion that had led to their victory. Haha, Naruto-san, you really are a brutal, aren't you? Just look at all these bodies. Naruto widens his eyes a bit as Danzo emerges from the shadows. He walks up Naruto and grins from behind his bandages. You put up quite a fight, but it looks like it ends here. I'm such a shame. You are a perfect candidate for root. Naruto scowls and says, fuck you, old man, with no signs of pain or anger in his voice. Danzo glares and raises his cane. A jagged blade protrudes from the bottom and glistens eerily in the light of the fires burning all around the area. Now Uzumaki, time to die. High release. Grand fireball. The forces of Root had to leap away as a huge fireball falls from the sky. Danzo glares as 5 figures jump from the trees. What is the meaning of this? We will not let you hurt him, says a quiet female voice. That's right. You old man will pay for what you are doing, says a younger female voice. The 5 figure rise from their crouching positions and glare at Danzo. Danzo widens his eyes, then smirks. Well well well. 3 Hyuga children, the last Uchiha and the sitter using orphan. How touching. Sasuke glares and draws a kunai. Hinata, give him a couple of soldier pills, says Hanabi. Hinata nods and crouches beside Naruto, who looks on in confusion. What are you doing? Tsuchi looks back at Naruto and says, we're saving your ass, blondie. No one should have to put up with the shit you're going through without friends. Naruto chuckles. I have no need for friends. Acquaintances, whatever. The point is we're here to help. Danzo smirks and says, incapacitate them but do not kill them. Hi Danzo-sama. Hinata jams 3 soldier pills down Naruto's throat before he could object and leaps into battle alongside the others. Naruto watches on as Neji performs a perfect katen to throw the 6 Anbu surrounding him. He watches as Tsuchi swings his sitter around by a handle connected to the end of the weapon instrument and slice 3 of his opponents. He watches as even Hinata takes out a couple of people. He sighs. Those fools are lucky Danzo doesn't want them dead. He could feel his hands healing and a bit of his chakra returning. Just a bit longer and Danzo's head would be his. Hinata duck. Yells Hanabi as a kunai soars at her sister from behind. Tsuchi intercepts the attack and throws his own kunai. Stay together as a group. Commands Neji as he jaikens another man in the knee, dropping him. The 5 preteens stood protectively around Naruto and deflected any attacks they could. Unfortunately there was just too many of them. Hanabi was stabbed in the shoulder while she was blocking an attack from the left, Sasuke was kicked viciously and had 5 ribs broken. Neji was hit with mild exploding notes and temporarily blinded in the right eye, Hinata was hit with a slow-acting poison, and Tsuchi was stabbed in the stomach by a katana. Hinata gasps. Haha, some no-name demon-loving orphan. No one will miss you, the man had said right before her was jaikened in the back by Hanabi. Why you bastard? Says Tsuchi while coughing up blood. He positions his sitter as if he was going to peel it and does just that. I am the second remaining member of my clan. You know what we specialized in? No one answers. We specialized in summons via musical instruments. He then begins to play a tune. It was an ominous tune filled with sorrow and anger. Taste my music. A second later a huge white wolf emerges from Tsuchi's sitter and proceeds to slash and bite at all of the enemies in front of it, but that's not all. The chakra of the people it hit was consumed. Tsuchi continues to play his tune, ignoring his gaping wound and the sword still impaled in him. Fire was burning in his eyes. You won't kill this guy. I won't let you. He screams. The Anbu were leaping all over the place to avoid Tsuchi's wolf. The others' eyes had also lit up with flames and they too began to attack more relentlessly. Hanabi, Neji and Sasuke charged at speeds that no one of their level should have and slashed and stabbed with their kunai in hands. Danzo was staring with wide eyes. Just where did these children come from? There is no way they are that powerful. He watches as Sasuke, despite having broken ribs, manages to lodge a kunai in the skull of one of his subordinates. It's not possible. These kids. Hanabi grabs a stray katana and leaps into a group of 10. Katen. She spins violently while holding the sword out and making her attack even more devastating. Danzo watches with a scowl as he realizes that he is losing his forces to a bunch of children. Children who wish to protect this demon with their lives. Kill them. Kill them all. He screams. And in a flash the tide had turned. Killing intent was unleashed. There were 25 root Anbu left, but that all that was needed. They charge forward. What a release. Cry of the splitting daisy. No one knows when Naruto had recovered some strength. They were all too focused on attacking the others. But everyone once again became aware of his presence the moment he yelled out that jutsu. Get down. Yells Neji. Naruto slams his hands into the ground and expels the rest of his chakra. I will not lose. Danzo. He screams as the air above him compresses and takes the form of a glowing blue daisy made of water. Naruto leaps up and karate chops the flower with his right hand. It was instant. The flower explodes into water droplets shaped like needles and showered down upon everything around them. The remaining forces of Danzo's route were assaulted. The needles tore through some of them and froze, coating the area in a fine layer of ice and snow. Others were grazed or hit in non-vital areas but still had that area froze over. Neji, Hinata and Hanabi looked on in awe as the water effectively wipes out half of the enemies in front of them. They could only stare and Naruto collapses to his knees panting heavily. "Take care of the rest," he says before he passes out. But they couldn't. They too were at their limits. They too were spent and injured. Tsuchi was already unconscious. The remaining 20 Root Anbu ninjas surge forward yet again and this time met no resistance. Tsuchi is slashed deeply across his lower back, effectively paralyzing him. Sasuke was kicked in the temple and knocked out. Hinata and Hanabi had already passed out due to poisoning and Neji was stabbed in the stomach. He screams out in pain and passes out. The R was a bloodbath. Over 80 ninjas had been killed this night. 80 members of Root had been slain. By children. Danzo approaches an unconscious Naruto with hatred burning in high eyes. "Look what you have done, monster. You have nearly ruined me. I'll kill you." Danzo raises his cane but suddenly gasps. The reason was because a sword had suddenly burst from his chest where his heart was located. "Not today, Danzo." Danzo coughs up blood and turns around and gasps. There stood Sarutobi, Ibiki, Kakashi, Asuma, Anko, Kurenai, Yugao and Hade. "Why you?" He never finishes his sentence as his life leaves him. Yugao yanks her katana from Danzo's back and watches as he collapses, dead. Sarutobi glares at the remaining Anbu of Root and vanishes. None of them stood a chance. Just as Sarutobi reappears in his previous location, the Root members scream out in pain and blood bursts from their necks. They drop dead. Sarutobi looks around the battlefield in amazement. "Unfucking believable!" exclaims Anko. "Naruto!" yells Yugao as she rushes to his side. The others approach as well and widen their eyes when they see Tsuchi, Sasuke, and the 3 Hyugas. Sarutobi looks in disdain at Danzo's cops. "Attacking children and going behind my back. Danzo, what the hell were you thinking?" He approaches the group of downed children and looks at them proudly. "We need to get them to the hospital. They're all severely injured or suffering from chakra exhaustion," yells Kurenai. Sarutobi nods. "Okay, get them to the hospital now. We will clean up this mess later." "Hi." Each person grabs a genin and leaps back toward Konoha. Sarutobi and Yugao stayed behind. Naruto was held in her arms. Sarutobi does a few water jutsus to put out the fires and then does the shadow clone. Each clone grabs a puppet and Tsuchi's sitter. "Danzo, it looks like the light of the flame within this boy has withered your roots. I hope you think about that in the afterlife." He then turns and heads back to Konoha himself. Yugao had stayed behind a bit longer. "Naruto, you worried me," she mumbles as he hugs him tighter. "Don't ever do that again. Please." Naruto's eyes crack open just a bit and he mumbles 2 words. "Yugao-chan." Chapter 7. Special Ops. Hokage's personal ninja. Danzo is what? Was heard all throughout Konoha that next morning. Word had spread so quickly that no one had a chance to stop it. Everyone in Konoha now knew that not only Naruto, but also 5 other genin had wiped out most of Root Anbu before Sarutobi took care of the rest. The council was not happy. No. They were outraged and scared at the same time. And the fact that their Hokage stood on the side of Naruto didn't help the matter either. The clan heads of the Amanaka, the Akamichi, the Nara and the Inuzuka could be seen smirking on that day. "Hokage-sama, are you serious? They're all dead." Sarutobi shook his head and said, "Actually no. A few did manage to survive. It was a spectacular battle. Naruto had outsmarted most of them with traps placed on his own body before using his puppets and 2 flower-style techniques. And that was before the 5 others came to his assistance." At this Hiashi had stood up. "Hokage-sama, do you seriously think I would believe that not one, but both of my daughters and my nephew ran off to assist this boy?" Sarutobi nodded with a smirk. "If you do not believe me, you can visit them at the hospital and question them yourself. They should be awake now as the medics did an excellent job at healing them." Hiashi sat back down with a heavy sigh. "Hokage-sama, I do not understand. They don't even know that boy. Why would they help him?" Sarutobi grinned and said, perhaps it was the skill he showed that day he fought you. Maybe they took his words to heart and decided to follow their own paths. Paths of their choosing. So you're saying the demon is corrupting others with his malicious intent?" This came from a civilian council member. "No, I'm saying we should look into my crystal ball and you all will see what I mean." Sarutobi then gestured toward his desk where the shiny sphere sat, unused for the moment. Scene change. As soon as Naruto opened his eyes, he was grabbed in a hug from Yugao. "Naruto. I'm glad you're okay." Naruto nodded and pushed the woman off of him. A practice that became almost normal in his life. So we won, huh? He said to no one as he slid out of his bed and stood while stretching. Yuigao smiled and raised herself to her full height, which was a foot over Naruto's head. She couldn't help but stare at the boy as he begun to wander around the room collecting his personal items. She wanted to get close to him to become someone special to him. She sighed. He needed more time, despite his calling her Yuigao-chan the night before. She watched as he located his puppets and sealed them back into his arm, then found his shorts and slipped them back on. What happened to those fools? Yuigao's thoughts had been shattered by that sudden question. What was he talking about? What fools? Wait. Do you mean the other 5? Naruto nodded. They're fine. They're all in the large room 3 doors down and to the right. Wait, Naruto, where are you going? Before Yuigao had even been halfway done with her sentence, Naruto had turned and left the room. She quickly recovered and followed him as he headed toward the door she had described just a few seconds ago. Without a word, Naruto entered the room and looked around. Yuigao came in a second later and placed a hand on his shoulder. All of them were there. All 5 of them, and they were staring at him. Hinata reacted first. She eeped and hid slightly behind her blankets and eyed Naruto nervously. Hanabi was staring at Naruto with a look of contemplation and wonder. Neji had nodded in his direction before looking back out the window, and Sasuke was looking on with respect etched into his features. Wait, there was still one missing. Yo. So you finally awake, huh? Freakin' took long enough. Naruto turned to his right and saw Tsuchi. He was grinning and holding his sitter in his lap. Evidence that he had been playing it a moment before. Naruto felt his eyes widen just a bit as the reddish-pink-haired boy rolled into the room in a wheelchair. Like Neji and Sasuke, his upper body was bare and wrapped up in bandages. He still had on his shorts, but that was it. Naruto continued to stare for a few more seconds before his knowledge of the human body kicked in. Paralyzed from the waist down due to a slash across the back from a katana. Your ninja career has been ended before it even began. Tsuchi just grinned a bit more. Yeah, sucks, don't it? All just to save your doll-using ass. All you fools did was nearly get yourselves killed. Yeah, whatever. Naruto's eyes. You are all a group of idiots. What the hell did you think you could accomplish against an Anbu, let alone a large group of them? At this it was Sasuke who spoke up. Oi Baka, in case you hadn't noticed, you were about to get filleted when we showed up. I didn't ask for your help. Nor will I ever. We realize that, Naruto, said Hanabi. But that doesn't change the fact that you have help from us whenever things get too rough for you. Naruto scoffs. If you guys were any older, I'd kill you for being hypocrites. Neji smirks. But we're not hypocrites now, are we? We aren't part of the generation that was attacked by the Kyuubi and therefore cannot become hypocrites when we decide not to hate you for what you hold. Naruto's eyes widened. Who told you? Tell me now or you'll regret it. The tone in his face let them know that he was not playing around. Tsuchi sighed and said, geez, calm down. Nobody told us. We were there when you started yapping about your life to that old man. We heard you tell the man that the demon Kyuubi was inside of you. I gotta tell you, it explains a lot. The other 4 nodded while Yuigao's hand tightened a bit on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto himself had relaxed only slightly and he was prepared to strike should any of them start saying the wrong things. Sasuke and Hanabi seemed to notice this and approached him. Once they were close enough, Sasuke reached his hand out while Hanabi wrapped her small arms around his waist in a hug. Even if you still dislike us, know that we will never see you as the Kyuubi. Even if you should for some reason snap and murder everyone in the village. We all know you are justified in your feelings, said Sasuke. That's right, Naruto-san. We don't fully understand everything that is going on, but we are willing to learn. Everyone needs allies no matter who they are. We are willing to become your allies, Naruto. Neji and Hinata approached next. That's right, Uzumaki. You have earned my respect and my allegiance. And mine too, said Hinata. Naruto couldn't really think of anything to say. These fools were willing to become his allies. People who would fight alongside him and not with the dumbest villagers. He closed his eyes, then snapped them open again a second later as he felt a pair of lips on his own. You have my allegiance as well, Naruto-kun, said Yuigao. Scene change. The Ashi and the council watched the scene with wide eyes. The Uchiha heir, the Hyuga branch prodigy, youngest main house prodigy and the heiress, had just pledged their allegiance to the demon brat. And to top it off, one of Konoha's top Anbu had apparently developed feelings for him. This was bad. Sarutobi cleared his throat and said, now I know what some of you are thinking, and I warn you right now as my standing regarding Naruto has not changed. You all need to stop and think about what you are all doing before you begin to actively hunt the boy. We are losing shinobi to him and I will not allow that. Konoha is losing power because of the ignorance of the village. Okage-sama, you must understand that what we of the council do regarding that boy is merely for the well-being of the entire village. He is corrupting others already and needs to be taken care of. Sarutobi glared and said, make a move on him and I'll allow him to kill you myself. He turned back toward the crystal ball. Naruto deserves to have friends and happiness. You all have no right to try and rob him of that. What that demon deserves to be is eliminated. Sarutobi, open your eyes. The Hokage finally had enough and releases killing intent. Silence. The Hokage has spoken. This meeting is adjourned. Oh, and Hiashi-san, perhaps you should think about your position on this whole affair. After all, the three most promising Hyuga have just allied with Naruto. Will you help them or will you lament in new hatred and lose the three closest to you? And with that, Sarutobi walked out, headed to the hospital. Scene change. Hanabi's eyes widened a bit and Neji noticed that her face flashed with jealousy. For just a split second it was there, but Neji saw it. He decided to leave it alone for now. Naruto gently pushed Hyuga away from him. You are all too close, he said. Tsuchi decided to speak up. Yo. A bombshell beauty kisses you and you push her away. What the hell is wrong with you, man? Naruto scoffs. I have no desire for an intimate relationship with anyone. Tsuchi sighed and said, you really have been sheltered. Oh well. He wheeled over to Naruto and lifted his sitter toward him. I'm paralyzed. That means that I can no longer use this as an effective weapon. Well, maybe I could still use it, but I'm in a wheelchair so I won't be going anywhere. He pushed the weapon instrument into Naruto's chest and said, I want you to learn how to play this. Once you do, come to me again and I'll teach you how to summon the wolf spirit locked within it. Naruto's eyes widened. You're giving me your weapon? The FFT, I see no reason why not. After all, I'm an ally too, but since I can no longer fight, I'm entrusting you with this instead. Naruto examined the sitter and sighed for what seemed like the 1000th time before strapping the weapon to his back. He was not used to getting gifts. Tsuchi grinned and said, oh, and if you ever meet a Falmouth girl with the same hair color as mine, drag her ass to me so I can blacken one of her eyes. Knock her out if you have to. Sasuke, Neji and Hyuga chuckled at this, while Naruto merely nodded. Hanabi let go of Naruto and said, if you want I can help you with the Jaiken. I'm sure you haven't perfected Yoshino yet, am I correct? Naruto said nothing. He merely nodded and looked up in thought. Hanabi smiled a bit. I'm sure Neji-san and Hinata and I are willing to help you as well. All three of us use a different variation of the Jaiken, and I want to see what they all look like when combined into one single fighter. Your puppet, for instance. Naruto looked into everyone's eyes and saw no hints of deception or malice. After a minute he finally nods and says, fine, and in exchange, I will teach you the forbidden flower jutsus I stole from the Hyuga clan. After all, they're your techniques, and if you are so adamant on helping me then I might as well help my allies as well. The group grinned a bit and Naruto grabbed Neji's hand in a handshake. Just then the door opened up and Sarutobi walked in. He was smiling a genuine smile when he entered the room and it seemed to grow when he spotted Naruto exchanging handshakes with everyone. Ah, Naruto, you are awake, he said with a bit of cheer. Naruto turned to the Hokage and gave a bit of a smile. Hokage Jiji. The other children were a bit surprised to learn that Naruto was close to the Hokage but decided to say nothing about it. Sarutobi patted Naruto's shoulder, then looked at the other occupants of the room. First off, I would like to personally congratulate all of you in completing an A-class mission. I don't know how you pulled it off, but you did and I am glad to call you all ninja of Konoha. Sasuke, Neji, Hinata and Tsuchi swelled up a bit with pride, but Hanabi didn't look too sure. She looked down nervously. Sarutobi noticed this and smiled. Do not worry, Hyuga-chan, you are included in this praise. Hanabi looked up surprised. I know you are young, but already you have the strength of a strong ninja. I should probably promote you all to Chunin and Naruto to Jounin right now, but the council is already on edge about Naruto's strength and promoting you all would throw off the graduating teams. Tsuchi chuckled and says, well, I'm in a wheelchair anyway, so won't the teams still be uneven? Sarutobi smiled and said, not if I add Hanabi-chan to the ranks. Hanabi gasped and looked up at the Hokage with wide shocked eyes. Sarutobi reached into his robes and pulled out 3 Konoha headbands and throws one each to Sasuke, Hinata and Hanabi. Neji already had one due to being an earlier graduate and Tsuchi was now unable to fight. Congratulations on becoming ninja, he said with a smile. He turned to Naruto next and pulled out a custom-made headband. It was orange and the cloth was long. He approached Naruto and tied it securely around his head and smiles as the 2 ends of the cloth hung down to his mid-back. The metal plate was vastly different than any other forehead protector. It still had the leaf symbol, but the symbol was a great deal smaller and in the middle of a fox's forehead. On either side of the forehead were 3 lines identical to Naruto's whisker marks and the kanji for special op engraved in small letters at the bottom of the plate. Naruto, you are now a personal ninja of the Hokage himself. You answer to me and me alone and are eligible for high-ranked missions. This caused numerous gasps. You have the authority of a Chunin and the protection of the Hokage and several clan heads. Which ones I'll leave to you to find out. This is an old tradition that hasn't been used since the 3 Sannin were elected, in which the Hokage will choose one or more potential ninja and form a special group, kind of like the Mist Swordsmen. They are called the Konoha Special Ops, and Naruto, you have been chosen as the first member. Sarutobi grinned and headed back toward the door. Oh, and the bodies of the root are still in the forest. Have a nice day, and with that he was gone. Hanabi was gaping at her headband, Sasuke and Neji were gaping at Naruto, and Tsuchi was looking slightly jealous and grumbling something about lucky non-paralyzed people. Naruto stared at the door for a second more before a small smile appeared on his lips. Just the way it should be, Hokage Jiji, he said to himself so that no one else would hear. Naruto. He is lifted into the air and squeezed by an ecstatic Hyuga. Congratulations, Naruto. Personal ninja to the Hokage himself. That's one hell of an honor. Naruto could only nod slightly as his face is pressed against the purple-haired woman's chest. Yes, indeed. Now would you mind putting me down? Hyuga blushed and complied with his wish, but as soon as he was put down, the others who felt the need to congratulate him in some way or another surrounded him. Sasuke gave him a curt nod, Neji shook his hand, and Tsuchi slapped him on the shoulder. An action that nearly got a senbon jammed in his neck out of reflex. Hanabi smiled and gave him a quick hug, and Hinata gave a quiet congratulations Naruto-kun before hiding a bit behind Neji. Hey. We should all go out and celebrate, suggested Tsuchi after a few minutes, but is instantly met with a flat-out refusal. No, was all Naruto needed to say to get his point across. Tsuchi was going to retort, but a slight headshake from Hyuga silenced him. Naruto turned towards the door and adjusted the sitter on his back. All of you. Have my gratitude, he said with no emotion before opening the door and leaving. Geez, he really is cold to everyone, huh? Asked Tsuchi. Hyuga nodded and said, yes, he just that way. Serves the village right in my opinion, said Neji. It's their own actions that caused this. Yeah. Scene change. As Naruto made his way through Konoha, heading toward the gate, he took notice of the looks of fear and hate. He ignored them for now. He had one destination and nothing was going to stop him from getting to that destination as soon as possible, so stopping to rip the throat out of that fool who just sneered and called him a demon's freak would have to wait. Villagers shied as far away as possible from him. No doubt fearing what he was capable of since word of his fight with Root had spread all over. Even the 2 Chunin at the gate said nothing as he exited the village and headed toward the clearing where last night's battle took place. He walked for an hour until he arrived at the spot. It was a war zone. Scorch marks, weapons, broken trees, craters, and even some wood chippings from his puppets. He looked around at the carnage. Bodies, blood, innards and limbs were everywhere. It looked like the set of a corny horror movie. He looked around for a specific corpse and grinned when he spotted it. Danzo's body lay there in near perfect condition with a stab wound where his heart was. He walked over to the body and said, I told you, and you would die for threatening my life. He then hoisted the body up onto his shoulder and walked over to a reasonably clear area and placed the body down on its back. Now then, he said while looking around. He placed his hands in a cross-shaped hand sign and says, ninja art. Kage Bunshin. Now the only knowledge Naruto had with this jutsu was the fact that it created solid copies of yourself when executed. He had never before used this jutsu, but his excellent chakra control and knowledge of the jutsu's rank of forbidden gave him all the pieces he needed in order to successfully create 30 copies of himself. He nodded in satisfaction when the clones appeared in puffs of smokes and awaited orders. Alright then. Your task is to search the bodies here for the ones that are in the best condition. Bring them to me and arrange them in a neat row on either side of this one, he said while pointing at Danzo's corpse. The clones nodded and leapt off in different directions. He put his hand in the cross symbol again and did the shadow clone once again. 5 clones appeared. You 5 head back to my apartment and bring me my supplies. The clones nodded and dashed off toward Konoha. Naruto knelt down to Danzo and unraveled a scroll while rubbing blood on it. In a puff a small set of puppet-making tools appeared. Now then Danzo, let's make that old and battered body of yours into something to be proud of. Scene change. Neji, Sasuke, Hinata, Tsuchi, Hanabi and Hyuga were walking as a group through Konoha, discussing one topic that had their interest. Naruto. Is he really going to do that? Asks a mortified Hinata who had heard little about Naruto's main ninja art. Hyuga nodded. Yes, those are all the necessary steps needed in order to make a human puppet. But what does he do with the organs and such? Hyuga shook her head. Beats me. I never really hung around after that step. Is that even legal? To mutilate corpses in such a way? Asked an intrigued Hanabi. I mean, I know he turned people into his puppets, but I didn't know you needed to do all of that. Hyuga shook her head. In Suna the practice is highly illegal, but this is Konoha and Hokage-sama lets Naruto do pretty much whatever he wants, so I'm guessing it's legal only for Naruto. The group continued to talk about Naruto as they made their way through the village, ignoring the startled looks the villagers were giving them. "And I'm just glad to finally be an official ninja," said Sasuke. "Indeed. And I will further my training and become a member of that special ops with Naruto-san," said Hanabi. The others nodded with slight grins while Tsuchi loudly encouraged them. They didn't notice Yugao smiling warmly as they talked about their new comrade. But suddenly they were cut off as several Hyugas landed in front of them. "Niji-san, Hinata-sama, Hanabi-sama, Hiashi-sama wishes to speak with you immediately." Hanabi sighed. "Fine then, come on Hinata," she said. And with that the three Hyugas left with the group. Tsuchi looked up at Yugao and Sasuke and said, "Well, I'll be seeing you guys later. I gotta go and make my place more compatible with wheelchairs." Sasuke nodded and Yugao smiled. After he was gone, Yugao sighed and said, "I feel sorry for him. To lose his legs like that." Sasuke nodded. "Yes, it is a shame. But like him we cannot think too much about it." Yugao smirked. This coming from a guy who thinks of killing his brother every waking moment of his life. Sasuke scowled then said, "I'm going to see what Naruto actually does to create his puppets." Yugao chuckled as Sasuke left and then vanished, heading toward the Hokage Tower. Scene change. Naruto had just removed the last of Danzo's innards when Sasuke walked into the clearing. "Boy, that is seriously messed up," he said. Naruto shrugged and said, "All is necessary if I'm to have my tools." Sasuke shrugged and approached him. He tried his best to ignore the pungent smells of rot and embalming fluid and leapt up into a tree to get a better view at what Naruto was doing. 10 minutes later 30 or so clones stepped into the clearing, each carrying a corpse. Sasuke widened his eyes a bit and wondered when Naruto had learned such a move. He watched as the clones placed their respective bodies next to Danzo's body in a neat organized line. Naruto seemingly ignored the clones until one last one stepped into the clearing, carrying a body that Sasuke instantly recognized as their academy teacher Mizuki. "Boss," began the clone as he laid the split open and already hollowed out body down at the end of the line. "I discovered this body as well. It was obvious that you had started working on this one too, so I brought it back." Naruto looked up then spotted the body. He had forgotten all about Mizuki during the fight with Root and was surprised that a clone actually brought the corpse back. "Bring him to me," said Naruto. The clone nodded and hoisted Mizuki onto his shoulder and walked over to his creator. After the body was laid down again, Naruto began to examine it to see how much damage the corpse had sustained. It was just as he left it except for a few scorch marks here and there. "There's also something else," said the clone. Naruto raised an eyebrow and so did Sasuke. The clone pointed at Mizuki's neck and said, "I sensed a powerful chakra coming from there." Naruto, intrigued, examined the area indicated by his clone and decided to focus a bit of chakra into that point. What happened next surprised him. A seal appeared and began to expand all over Mizuki's body, covering it in strange black markings. Naruto could feel the chakra getting stronger as the seal continued to spread. "Well, this is interesting," he said as he focused more chakra into the seal. He watched intrigued as the seal spread even further and engulfed Mizuki in a purple light and began to literally transform his body. Sasuke was amazed. Just what the hell was happening? What was that seal that Naruto had discovered? Him and Naruto watched as Mizuki's body transformed into a powerful-looking tiger creature, complete with yellow fur and black stripes. If Mizuki had been alive and used this power against Naruto, it would have been a more challenging fight. Oh well. Naruto grinned as the transformation ended and Mizuki began to revert back. Wait a minute there. He bit his finger and began to draw more seals on Mizuki's other seal and focus chakra. Sealing art. Fusion. This jutsu was a technique that Yugao had shown him a while back. It was originally designed as a medical seal to help with the reattachment of severed limbs and such. He had learned this jutsu as a simple way to help in the eventual repairs of his puppets, but he also began to experiment with it. Now really knowing what he was going to use it for. But now it seemed he found a use for this altered version. Mizuki's body began to glow again with the purple chakra and its own natural re-aiming reserves for a whole minute as the two chakras began to blend together and with Mizuki's corpse. Naruto watched with a satisfied smirk as the tiger markings seemingly exploded off of Mizuki and faded away. He watched as the seal seemed to get absorbed by the body and change it. A pair of tiger ears appeared on top of Mizuki's head. A tail spurted from behind, Mizuki's hands became claws, and so did feet. His eyes turned cat-like and his canines grew into fangs. The skin on his forearms, back and legs also gained a light layer of tiger-striped fur. Once it was over, Mizuki looked like a normal man, except for these new features that had come from fusing with the seal. "Hey Mizuki. You will be a much more efficient puppet this way," said Naruto as Mizuki stopped swirling with chakra. Sasuke leapt down with astonished eyes and bent over the new Mizuki. It was true. Naruto had fused him with that seal on his neck. He stood there gaping. "If you want to know where I learned that seal, ask Yugao. She taught me the original version and I created a different version from it." Sasuke could only nod. Naruto turned his attention to his clones and said, "You all possess my knowledge, right?" They nodded. "Good, because I don't feel like spending the next week out here. Pick a body and convert it into a puppet." The clones nodded and Naruto turned to Mizuki and Danzo. "I have something special planned for you too," he said. "I'm Skip." It was 5 in the morning when Naruto and Sasuke returned to Konoha. It was dead quiet and slightly foreboding. Sasuke was slightly green and Naruto was constantly smirking and sporting a new seal on his arm that said, Konoha. "Boy Naruto," said the Uchiha after a minute. Naruto looked at Sasuke out of the corner of his eyes and nodded slightly to let him know that he was listening. "Where did you learn the puppet technique?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. No one had ever asked him that before. He decided to humor the Uchiha. "I learned it in Suna when I went with Hokage when I was 4. I stumbled upon a master puppeteer's old training grounds and learned there." "You learned all you do by simply reading scrolls?" Naruto nodded. "It wasn't so hard. When you live like I do you learn to do things for yourself." Sasuke nodded in agreement. "Anyway, I'm tired and still have to fix Fox Naruto. I will see you some other time, Uchiha-san. Congratulations on lasting as long as you did while watching me create my puppets. Not even Yugao could stand it after a certain point." Sasuke gave a slight smirk. "Oh, and when you kill your brother, give his body to me. He has certain abilities that I find intriguing." "You mean Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu?" Naruto nodded. "I could become more devastating with that kind of puppet under my control." Sasuke looked up and said, "Fine, but you have to give me something in return." "We will discuss the terms when you show me the Uchiha's corpse." Sasuke nodded and the two parted ways. "All the more reason to kill my brother as soon as possible," thought Sasuke. Naruto didn't say anything. He walked into his compound and to his room. He was tired. He had to sleep. He opened his door and discarded his weapons and a large storage scroll before flopping onto his bed and closing his eyes. What a day, he thought as the images of the other 5 children, Yugao, his special ops forehead protector and Mizuki drifted through his mind. "I have to fix Fox Naruto as well." Scene change. Hinata, Hanabi and Niji sat in their respective rooms wide awake. They could not get what Hiashi had said to them out of their minds. It unnerved them. Hiashi message. "Niji, Hinata, Hanabi. What you 3 are doing by associating with that monster goes against all the nobility and credibility of the Hyuga clan. However, recent events have come to light and changed my opinion slightly of that boy. You no longer see him as the Kyuubi, but the council and the rest of the clan does. I will give you a warning. You no longer have the support of the Hyuga clan. The council has more or less cut all of its ties with you 3. You have to train, learn and grow on your own from here on out. Goodbye." Hinata felt like crying but steeled her resolve and told herself she would grow strong. She would grow more powerful than any other Hyuga. That was what she desperately yearned for. Niji was contemplative. Ousted from the clan. All ties severed. They even removed the seal on his forehead and told him he wasn't even worth having as a servant. The statements had hurt him deeply, but they had also liberated him. He was no longer a servant. He no longer had the threat of death lingering over his head. He felt free. Hanabi was angry. How dare they do this to her? Just because she helped someone that clearly deserved it. It was ridiculous. She had never felt so wronged in her life. The fools were blind. Whatever. She was leaving the clan tomorrow anyway. She wasn't staying here. Not like she had a choice anyway. She came to a conclusion at nearly the same time Hinata and Niji did. Naruto. Meanwhile, Hiashi sat in his office with a look of sadness. "I'm sorry. It was either banishment or death. Please forgive me, Niji, Hinata, Hanabi." Scene change. Naruto woke up to the feeling of a pair of lips resting on his cheek. "Yugao, this has to stop." Yugao smiled and stood back up. "I was just congratulating you on becoming Hokage-sama's personal ninja. Why are you here so late?" Yugao shrugged. "My stuff is still here, so." "I see. You used it as an excuse to be near me." Yugao blushed. "Yugao, I don't understand your affections toward me, but I am well aware of them. I will tell you this again. Abandon this futile attempt at getting me to show emotions. It is useless. Besides, I'm 12 years old. You're like what, 25? Yugao became angry. "I'm 19. Are you saying I look like an old lady?" "Older than 19, was Naruto's simple reply. "Well, I never." "Well, get ready, Naruto, because I will get you to smile. I will get you to show your bottled up emotions, and you know what, I'm going to take a picture each time." She then stormed out of the room and into her room. Naruto couldn't help but smirk a little. Yugao was indeed something else. He fell asleep with thoughts of his ninja career finally beginning and the prospect of all the puppets he would create in the future, be it from killing enemy nin or coming up with own ideas. Yugao sighed and flopped down onto her bed. 25. That was nearly 30. Did she really look that old? Or was Naruto-kun just messing with her? No, he was definitely serious. She glared at the ceiling. Just for that she was going to do everything she could to make Naruto show some sort of emotion. Perhaps she should get him to blush. Yeah, that was perfect. She fell asleep chuckling evilly to herself. Just you wait, Naruto-kun. Chapter 8. First mission. The next day brought the smell of something delicious being cooked in Naruto's kitchen. He sighed and got up. "Yuigao," he muttered as he got dressed and headed toward the kitchen. But when he got there it was not Yuigao who was cooking. It was Sarutobi. He turned and smiled at the puppet user and placed a few strips of bacon and some eggs on a plate for him. "Ah, Naruto, finally away, eh? Have a nice sleep." "Okijiji, why are you cooking food in my kitchen?" Sarutobi chuckled and said, "Actually I kind of just fell into it. I actually came here to give you your first mission." "Already?" "Yes, Naruto, because it's noon already and the genin have been placed in their teams already and will be taking their Jounin sensei's tests tomorrow. Also, as my personal ninja you take assignments directly from me." Naruto nodded in understanding and asked, "What is the mission?" Scene change. Yuigao was walking down the street lost in thought when she bumped into a young woman with purple hair and less the subtle clothing. "Hey? Hey, Yuigao-chan. It's been a while," yelled the woman happily. Yuigao smiled and gave a slight nod. "Anko." Anko smirked and said, "So where have you been, eh? Finally get yourself a boyfriend?" Yuigao blushed a bit and said, "No, Anko. I've just been busy." Anko's smirk grew and she grabbed the woman by the arm. "Come on, Yuigao-chan, we're going out." Yuigao nodded but was thinking, damn, how did I get into this situation? Scene change. Naruto looked over the scroll and said, "I see. So you want me to rid the area of some bandits?" "Yes. This is a borderline B rank mission. It all depends on the number of bandits, but I believe you can do it with little difficulty. You have 1 week. Oh, and get some training and while you're at it." Naruto nodded and gave a small bow. Sarutobi smiled and placed a plate of bacon and eggs in front of him. "Eat." Naruto says nothing but he does dig into the plate. "Hokijiji, what happened with those 5? What teams are they on?" Sarutobi smiled and said, "Let's see. Sasuke and Hanabi are on the same team under Hada Kakashi. Their third teammate is a pink-haired girl named Sakura. She shows potential and wields the double soul bloodline limit." At this Naruto raised a curious eyebrow. If he remembered correctly, the double soul bloodline limit creates another you, but stronger, that can sometimes take control and save you in a life and death battle. Niji, as you know, is already on a team under Mido Guy. His teammates are Tenten and Rock Lee. Tenten is a weapons expert with skill that rivals or even surpasses your own, while Rock Lee uses only Taijutsu. He could crush you in a pure Taijutsu match. Hinata was placed on a team with the Aburame heir and the Inyazuka heir. Their sensei is Kurenai. She's a Genjutsu specialist. And that boy Suchi was taken into the hospital again to have his spine looked at. There is actually a slim chance that he may walk again. Naruto nodded and said, "Fine. Make sure they don't kill themselves, Hokijiji." "Haha, will do, Naruto." After that everything got quiet. Naruto pondered the info Sarutobi had given him. If what he said was true about that Lee kid and this Tenten girl, then he needed to put some serious work into his training with weapons and Taijutsu. This is where another issue came up. He still didn't have a specialized style to his Taijutsu. He was just a street brawler with great speed and reflexes. This would not do, but he didn't want any old style either. He wanted to learn something that perfectly complemented his image of a puppeteer. Perhaps he should create his own style. He finished the food a minute later and stood. "I'll get right on it, Hokijiji," he said as he bit his finger. Sarutobi was getting ready to ask what he was doing when Ishino, Oni Tenshi and Fox Naruto appeared in puffs of smoke. "They are in need of repairs. I will fix them when I get back." "But Naruto, what about your tools? Do you have any other puppets?" Naruto's face contorted with a maniacal grin. "Of course I do, Hokijiji. Mizuki and Danzo along with 30 members of Root are with me." Sarutobi smiled and said, "But how do you plan on using all of those puppets at once?" Naruto shrugged and said, "I haven't figured that out yet. But all I'll need is Mizuki and Danzo for now. Konoha's Root won't see battle until I figure a way to control them all at once." And with that, Naruto got up and headed out of the door. Sarutobi sighed and began to eat his own plate of food. "Well, Naruto. Let's see where your path will take you," he muttered with a slight smile. Naruto quickly gathered all of the necessary supplies and headed out of his door. Anticipation for his first mission gleamed brightly in his eyes. But as he exited his home he smashed into Hinata, who was apparently getting ready to knock on said door. Naruto sighed as the girl squeaked before getting up and looking around. There stood Hanabi and Niji. He raised eyebrow before straightening out his cloak and continuing on his way. "I have a mission right now. If you need something, Hokijiji is in my kitchen. My puppets won't attack, so feel free." And before any of them could say anything he left. Hanabi sighed. I guess we'll have to wait for him to get back then. Niji only nodded as he woke up Hinata. Scene change. Naruto made his way toward the village gates while ignoring the whispers and the gasps of surprise and fear upon seeing his forehead protector. He walked up to the two Chunin and handed them his scroll without saying anything. I'm a personal ninja to the Hokage himself. I don't believe it. Well, here you go and congratulations, said one of the Chunin as he stamped the scroll and handed it to him. Naruto simply grabbed the scroll and headed out. Geez, what a freaky kid, eh? Asked one of the men. Haha, true. The two Chunin grinned and continued with their work. Scene change. Anko giggled as she slung a hand over Yugao's shoulder. She was way beyond the point of drunk and was barely keeping her spot on her stool. So Yugao-chan. Where have you been? It's been a while since I last saw you. Yugao was getting a bit nervous. Anko had been asking her that question for about an hour now and there was no way she was going to answer it. How easy is it to just say, oh, I've been living at the emotionless killing puppet using demon containers place for nearly a year. Yeah. That was gonna get a positive reaction. She kept her lips sealed. Haha, I bet you've been getting some and you don't want to tell, huh? Giggled out Anko. This of course caused Yugao to blush and shake her head furiously. Anko giggled again, then hiccuped a couple of times. She gave Yugao a mischievous smirk and leaned closer. So who is it, eh? Come on, you can tell me. I won't tell nobody. Yugao, who was also getting a bit drunk, blushed a bit more and said, it's not like that. Besides, he's too damn caught up in his resentment and emotionless shell to acknowledge me. Anko smirked, ooh, oh, so it's a stiff, eh? And that narrows it down a bit. Let's see. Oh. I bet it's hate, huh? You know you two have always been close. Just drop it, okay? Hey, what about that Kakashi guy? Yeah, it's him, huh? He is rather emotionless and a bit of an aloof stiff. Hey, it's him, huh? No. And I'm not screwing anybody. Then where have you been, Yugao? Yugao sighed and hiccuped slightly. I've just been around, okay? Anko giggled again as Yugao got up and left quickly. Well, make sure you bring him for me to meet Yugao-chan. Called Anko after her. The young woman glared at her friend with a slight blush before she body flickered away. Damn Anko. I'm just staying at his place for a while, she muttered bitterly. Well, I might as well go see what he's up to. She made her way towards Naruto's puppet-guarded apartment complex. How he got those things to act on their own and attack intruders was beyond her, no matter how many times Naruto explained it, but that really didn't matter at that point. Besides, no matter how far from the mark Anko had been, she was still pretty damn close. Yugao was indeed involved with someone. Though it was more one-sided on her part. Naruto was. He was just too damn hard to crack and he's nearly 7 years her junior. She grinned evilly to herself as she got to his door. That was all going to change today. Younger or not, she was going to completely shatter that barrier of his and get him to at least show her he cared for more than just Hokage-sama. When she opened his door, however, it was not Naruto she saw, but Sarutobi and the 3 Hyugas who now followed Naruto. She noticed that the older girl had been crying while the other two looked pissed and sad at the same time. The Hokage himself was also looking slightly angry. Yeah. Sorry, said Yugao nervously as she tried to back out of the room, only to be summoned back in by Sarutobi. Yugao-san, just who I wanted to see. Yugao stepped into the room. Naruto's living room and suppressed a sigh. She just knew this was going to be a long day and she hoped Naruto knew all these people were currently in his home without his knowledge. Scene change. It was the dead of night. The stars glowed brightly against the inky sky and the moon seemed to glare at everything below it in its intensity. The red-hot glow of a large bonfire illuminated the center of a rather large camp and the boisterous laughter of men could be heard echoing through the woodland. The muffled cries of women could only barely be heard amongst all the activity and the more desperate cries came from the tents toward the edge of the camp. The smell of roasting meat and sake was heavy in the air and numerous weapons and other supplies were strewn haphazardly around the camp. Bandit camps. Though Naruto had never seen one, he knew what this place was as soon as he laid eyes on it. How could he not? The men here were nothing but a bunch of crude ignorant dumbasses who needed to be eliminated. And that's exactly what he was here for. Time to test my new tools, he said to himself as a bloodthirsty grin appeared on his face. Scene change. Bakuto was never one to care about the world around him. He was a free-spirited man who did whatever he wanted, damn the consequences. He was a bandit gang leader. The only things he cared about were money, sex and power. Hell, even as his captive slave girl pleasured his loins, he was continually thinking of more ways to get more of his desires. He was not a barbaric man in any sense of the word. He was just a man with a dream. He smirked at that and pushed a stray strand of his long green hair out of his eyes. He would accomplish his goal and become the richest man alive. Then he would buy a country. It was foolproof. However, there was one little flaw in his plan that he continually overlooked until now. Ninja. The bane of any bandit's existence and also the very real threat of said existence. Ninja were by far the greatest threat to anyone who lived the life of a bandit. They hunted them down and used them for battle experience. They constantly crippled their resources and they showed more brutality than the bandits themselves at times. Makoto was prepared for that. Hell, he was prepared for many things. You had to be if you were to take on the life of a bandit. It was practically a written code. Makoto had learned to hate the ninja with every fiber of his being, while at the same time learning to fear them. It took nearly every ounce of a bandit leader's skill and charisma to keep his men hidden from the predatory eyes of the ninja population, and that's what he intended to keep on doing. After all, how was going to become the richest man on the planet if he had no men to control? Makoto-sama. We're under attack. The sound of his men shouting that came so suddenly it took a second for his brain to catch up and process. What? Yes. It's true. He came out of nowhere. He's Zack. The man stumbled forward, then fell over dead with a large shuriken in his back. Makoto's eyes widened and he quickly got dressed and armed himself with his halberd. He dashed outside and saw no enemy, but he did see that many of his men had been slain and that the rest were looking around desperately. Makoto took one guess at what could have done this so quickly, and that was one word. Ninja. Correct, bandit. Makoto gasped and whirled around. That voice had been right in his ear, but there was no one there. Show yourself. He called in an attempt to at least find out where his enemy was. He spun around in complete circles searching for the assailant but failed horribly. He positioned himself into a fighting stance and narrowed his eyes. Damn coward ninja. All of you are the same. Never man enough to face an enemy head-on. He knew that taunting his enemy was a bad idea, but at this point his judgment was overruled by his growing anxiety. He could hear more of his men fighting over by the slave tents, so he rushed over there. Shit. Ack. Clang. Slash. Crack. Makoto-sama. Run. The green-haired bandit leader gasped when he arrived on the scene. Something incredibly fast was moving in and out of his men and leaving a bloody trail of death behind. Heads flew into the air and fountains of blood rained down upon the grass and the petrified slave women. Makoto stared in horror as every one of his men was wiped out. Then he glared as he prepared to rush at the attacker as he turned to face the women. Naruto looked down at the frightened women and girls before him. The lead female, a middle-aged brunette with bluish-gray eyes, looked defiantly into his own cold icy blue eyes. She examined his two puppets with slight fascination. She had never seen such devices. She found it slight odd that he chose to add tiger features to one of them, but she could not deny the power that she felt emanating from the puppet. For a whole minute she examined Naruto. This guy was still but a child, but his eyes were of someone much older. She felt her anger rising when he began to examine the other females. Some of which were still naked. Are we your new servants now? She asked with a hint of sadness and fear. Naruto just sighed and said, servants. Not on your life, woman. I do not need such things. Then why? Why would you save us? Naruto looked up and thought. It is merely my job. My first ninja mission. And that is to rid the areas of bandits. Also, you women are innocents. I do not kill those who are innocent. Only ignorant bastards and the people I am assigned to kill. You are not on either of those lists. But why not? Why not take us as your slaves? You clearly have the power to do so. At this some of the others flinched slightly and eyed Naruto fearfully, as if expecting him to change his mind and take them. But they were surprised when he knelt down and inched a bit closer to the woman's face, staring intently into her eyes. I do not need slaves nor do I want them. You women are all beautiful, I'll admit, but that is no reason to force you to live a life of suffering. The woman felt ready to cry and grab Naruto in a hug, but before she could add on any of those thoughts her eyes widened. Look out. She screamed. I'll kill you. You bastard. Naruto turned around and saw Makoto practically flying at him with that massive halberd ready to cleave him in half. He raised his halberd and grinned as it stated to glow. Face the power of the legendary Banryu. He was upon the person now, which was revealed to be a damn child of all things. No older than 12 years old, and already he could kill in such a brutal fashion. He swung the huge blade down with the intent of cleaving him in half. Naruto smirked as the blade came down upon him and twitched his finger once. In a flash a new form was there, holding the halberd against its palm. He had silver hair and golden cat-like eyes. Naruto could hear the bandit leader gasp as this new person suddenly began to swirl with a foul purple and very powerful chakra. How? Naruto turned around with a murderous grin. Meet Mizuki, puppet number 34. Special traits. Very potent chakra and tiger strength. Makoto leapt back but not in time as another form appeared and bashed him with a metal combat boot. Makoto looked up and saw another puppet. This one was an older man with a cane strapped to his waist. Bandages covered most of his face and a cloak covered most of his body. The lower half of his right arm was metallic and mechanical like a gauntlet, and there was a large dinner plate-like shield on his back, and his left eye glowed faint blue. Meet Danzo. Puppet number 35. Special traits. Danzo raised his mechanical arm and said, "Get over here." Before a long whip-like rope with a spear attachment at the end shot out of his palm and into Makoto's chest. The man gasped in shock and pain and dropped his halberd. Danzo yanked his arm back and brought the rope spear with it. Along with the still impaled Makoto. Naruto approached the man as he tried desperately to free himself. Mizuki was right next to him and crouched down like a tiger ready to pounce. His tail was flicking back and forth, his ears were flat against his head and his claws dug into the ground. Makoto looked into Naruto's cold emotionless eyes and really began to fear for his life. Please. Let me go. I promise to turn my life around. Don't kill me." Naruto merely looked on for another second before he had Danzo throw the man over toward the group of shuddering women and girls. Naruto focused a bit of chakra throughout his beings and nodded in satisfaction as a fair amount of weapons emerged from the seals on his body and clattered to the ground. He turned and faced the brunette before he walked over and picked up the huge halberd with great effort. Oh, how he wished Tenshi was with him at that moment. He carried the huge weapon and placed it down in front of the woman with a grunt. "Take this and do with him what you will," he stated blankly before turning to leave. Makoto gaped at Naruto and so did the women. Wait. Naruto turned around and saw the woman approaching him. He stood still and waited for her to get close enough. Once she was upon him, she knelt down and smiled. "Please tell us the name of our savior," she stated. Naruto was surprised. Sure, he had saved them if only because it was part of his mission, but he didn't expect for them to react like this. All of them had approached him by now. Each one having eyes that showed great suffering but also a new light of hope and happiness. The ones that had no clothing really didn't seem to mind anymore, and they also stared at Naruto. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto." The woman nodded with a smile then said, "My name is Setsuna and we are in your debt, Uzumaki Naruto-sama." Naruto sighed. "If you really feel that way, then repay your department by getting powerful. Don't let this happen to you again. Hi." Naruto nodded and sealed Danzo and Mizuki into his arm. He quickly flicked a senbon needle past the women and nodded in satisfaction when it jammed into Makoto's neck and paralyzed him. "The filth is yours now," he said before leaping into the trees and out of sight. Setsuna continued to stare at the spot where Naruto was for another 30 seconds before she snapped out of it and faced the other females before her. There were 20 of them counting herself. Each one of them having lived the life of a lowly sex slave. Now finally freed by a blonde child ninja. She looked at each of the women and girls before her and sighed. She then looked over at the downed Makoto and bent down to lift up the huge halberd. She groaned with effort as she struggled to lift up the blade. Damn, that thing was heavy. She approached the bandit leader and raised the blade with extremely shaky and strained hands. "Tonight we choose a new path, thank you Naruto-sama, we are yours from here on out," she said as she swung down. Scene change. Naruto leapt through the trees at a fast pace. He had another bandit camp to eradicate if his map showed right. On his way he encountered nothing. It was quite uneventful. He did stumble across a large wolf that was howling for its pack, but that was about it. For 3 days he ran through the forest toward the next target, then he rested for the 4th day eating and fine-tuning his puppets. Then on the 5th day he continued. He had to pick up the pace a bit. He only had 2 more days to finish the mission and return to Konoha. At last he found what he was looking for at noon. This camp was considerably smaller and there were no traces of any sex slaves. Good. This would make it so much easier. He crouches down and does a few hand signs. Time skip. 6 days after he had sent Naruto out on his mission, he found himself in yet another meeting demanded by the council. This was getting old very fast. "Okage-sama, it has come to our understanding that you have made the demon boy your personal ninja. When were you planning on telling us this?" asked Hamura, his old teammate. Sarutobi sighed. "I am not obliged to tell you everything I do. Besides, you all would have found out anyway. And no, I am not going to strip Naruto's title." Some of the council members looked outraged and one of them even stood up to voice his opinion. One of the civilian council members looked livid. "Okage-sama, I can no longer sit and watch idly by as that monster continues to endanger the lives of everyone around him. And for you to bestow upon him the title of special op is absurd. Hokage-sama, I know you mean well, but you are failing to see what that boy is becoming. He has already corrupted the mind of an Anbu, killed off Rude and several other civilians and ninja alike. He is a menace." "I agree, Hokage-sama. That boy is far beyond the point of trying to protect anymore. You yourself has seen what he is capable of doing. The pure heartless way in which he can murder someone." Suddenly Inyazuka Tsume stood up. "You know, you bunch of ignorant fools are really starting to get annoying. Wasting so much time and energy pursuing one boy who happens to be the most promising shinobi we've had in years. It's ridiculous. What? Do you even know what you are saying? Shut up. Sarutobi had had enough of this. It was the same every time. I will not say it again. Naruto Uzumaki is to be left alone. That boy is already an empty shell of his childhood self. We do not need him wanting to destroy Konoha in the future, which he will eventually become powerful enough to do. Your clouded judgment is going to get us all destroyed if you do not wisen up. Okage-sama, listen to what you have just said. You yourself has just stated from your own mouth that the boy is a threat to Konoha. Only if you make him become a threat. Naruto right now cares for little. He has no emotions and does nothing but train. He has already lost his childhood. If you continue to lash out at him, he will lose his mind and his will to keep living in Konoha. He will grow to hate this village. Do you really want that on your plates? Sarutobi got to his feet and turned towards the door. Think about what I have said. And with that he was gone. Tsume huffed and left as well. Inoichi, Chaozu, Shikaku and Shibi were next to go. They just left the civilian council members, Sarutobi's old teammates and the Haruno clan head. Damn it. They're all a bunch of fools. They have been blinded by that boy's silver tongue, said Hamura with a voice filled with malice. I agree. I fail to sleep at night knowing that monster prowls the street searching for his next victims to add to his little doll collection. I don't want my baby girl to live in the presence of such a vile thing, said the Haruno clan head. There were nods of agreement. Yes, but Hokage-sama has a valid point. We cannot send any assassins after the boy, for it would only weaken Konoha's forces. On top of that, the ones that are strong enough to actually maybe pull it off are indifferent toward him. Well, why not just simply hire an assassin of great skill from another village? Hey, that is actually a good idea. That way, should the boy kill the assassin and word gets out, we could claim to know nothing about it since they are from another land. Yay, but who to choose? There are many candidates and only a few of enough skill to actually pull it off. At this, Hamura smirked. Actually, I know who can do it. This ninja has phenomenal skill and is currently the 5th strongest ninja in her village and still growing in power. It is said that in a couple more years only a Kage will be able to take her down. Hamura then pulled out a file and tossed it to the nearest person. Said person opened up the file and grinned widely a second later. Yes, she will do perfectly. We send a proposal immediately, no. Hamura chuckled, then looked over at her teammate. Uzumaki Naruto, you will plague us no longer. Scene change. It was a blazing fire. One that had consumed everything in its wake and still continued to do so. It glowed brightly in the evening sky and sent black smoke billowing into the sky. And out from the very center of the chaos stepped Naruto. His face was blank and he was dragging the corpse of a very well-built man. His throat was cut and there were burn marks all over his body. You put up quite a fight for a lowly bandit, stated Naruto as he dropped the corpse. And for that reason you shall not burn. Naruto then drew his katana and lopped off the man's head. He then did the cry of the splitting daisy to put out the fire before sealing the man's head in a scroll, then dashing back toward Konoha. Time skip. It took him 3 days to get back to Konoha and felt a bit disappointed in arriving past the deadline. He approached the two Chunin and revealed the head as proof of his mission success before heading straight home. He would talk to Hokage later. For now he just focused on getting cleaned up and fixing his 3 other puppets. But when he got inside, Yugao and a tight hug greeted him. Good afternoon, Naruto-kun. How was your first mission? Naruto ignored the breasts pressed against his head and said, I eradicated 2 bandit camps. Oh, I see. She couldn't help but sweat drop. Now then, let me go so that I may remove the blood, sweat and ash from my body and clothing. Yugao let go of the blonde pretty quickly. Sorry, she said. Naruto merely grunted as a response before heading to the bathroom. What the hell is this? Clang. Smash. Bam. Shit. Yelled Yugao as she dashed over to the bathroom. She arrived to a scene that made her sigh. Naruto had his katana at the neck of a towel-clad and blushing furiously Hinata. Neji and Hanabi were in Jaikin stances looking nervous, and several puppets were poised to attack at any of the slightest of wrong movements. Hinata was sweating bullets and trying to blend with her towel. Half of her body was still soaking wet and the tub was still draining. Naruto looked up at Yugao and glared. I want an explanation immediately. Yugao could only stare. Naruto's deep blue eyes were shining with great annoyance but nothing more. Though he did look ready to slit Hinata's throat at any moment's notice. Naruto-san, please forgive us. It was Hokage-sama's idea since we were exiled from the Hyuga clan. He said that even though you are cold towards people that you are very kind and would offer us a place to stay. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he reminded himself to have a talk with Hokage. What Hokage has told you is a lie. Hinata looked down, and so did Hanabi. Neji just looked a bit sad. However, we have just pledged an alliance yesterday, so it would be wrong to throw you out. If those Hyuga bastards have left you without a home then fine, the dojo is in the basement, the greenhouse is on the top floor where I grow my herbs, and the extra rooms are located all over the complex. Do not mess with the seals controlling my puppets and supply yourself with your own nourishment. Hi, said the three Hyugas at the same time. Yugao just smiled. Naruto removed the katana from Hinata's throat and turned to leave. He is interrupted however by a hug from behind, courtesy of a slightly blushing Hanabi. Thank you Naruto-sama, she said in a quiet voice, while ignoring the astonished looks from the other two Hyugas. Naruto just nodded before he pulled himself from Hanabi's arms and continued to another apartment room and therefore bathroom. He didn't see the slight glare Yugao sent at the younger female, but Niji and Hinata did. Niji just sighed and Hinata smiled. Hanabi has a crush does she? She asked playfully. Shut up. And since when do you have enough courage to tease someone anyway? Hinata looked away with a slight blush. Couldn't help it. I have never seen you blush like that and I've never heard you call anyone Sama, so that was quite a golden moment. Hanabi huffed and said, whatever. Just hurry up and get dressed. Hinata smiled as Hanabi stalked out of the door. Yugao was already gone. Heading toward the bathroom Naruto had went to. Yes, the next few weeks would prove to be very interesting. Chapter 9. As soon as Naruto woke up the next day he instantly got to work on his daily activities. He got dressed, gathered his weapons, brushed his teeth and sealed his puppets into his arm. He was on a figurative mission that day and that was getting to Hokageji's office. He shot out of his room, ducked under Yugao's attempted glomp and leapt out the nearest window. He didn't even spare her a glance. She giggled. He must be going to see Hokage-sama. Scene change. Sarutobi Asuma passed the Genin Squad 10 consisting of Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji. Ayuuhi Kurenai passed the Genin Squad 8 consisting of Hyuga Hinata, Inyazuka Kiba and Aburam Shino. Sarutobi nodded then everyone looked at the last Jounin who had given a Genin exam. The said man finally noticed that the attention was on him and put away his little orange book. I had a Kakashi. Passed Team 7. There were some looks of surprise for a second then a man dressed in green spandex stood up. Ah. So my youthful rival has finally found a team worthy of his test. Tell us who these three aspiring youths might be. Everyone's sweat dropped a bit. Kakashi looked up and said, well first there's Uchiha Sasuke. He is very talented. Actually he's abnormally strong. He's a bit arrogant but not above working with others. Then there's Haruno Sakura. She shows potential in Genjutsu and continually argues with herself. Probably her other self. She is very smitten with the Uchiha and often lets it cloud her judgment. The last is Hyuga Hanabi. She too is very strong and is as arrogant as any other Hyuga on the battlefield. Surprisingly though it was her that figured out the meaning to my test. She is also smitten but not with Sasuke, with Naruto. She has already been in an argument with Sakura about which boy was better. Also why does she call him Naruto-sama? There was a pause before someone spoke up. It was a Chunin at the back of the room. Wait, what happened to that boy with the sitter? Did he quit? Sarutobi shook his head. Unfortunately Tsuchi was paralyzed that day he helped Naruto take on Root, so he is effectively out of the ninja program. There is a slim chance he will regain his ability to walk though. The Chunin sat back down as another nin rose up. Hokage-sama, I also have a question. What happened to Uzumaki? He obviously has more than enough skills to become a genin, so why isn't he on any teams? Who cares? Asked that same Chunin from earlier. Sarutobi sighed and said, Uzumaki Naruto has become a ninja, but not a genin. He has a higher rank already. I see, said the Chunin as a scowl formed on his features. Sarutobi was about to say something else when an Anbu materialized in the office. Hokage-sama, I do not need to interrupt, but there is someone coming this way and… Ah, get your filthy hands off of me, you abomination. Was suddenly heard on the outside. Then a few loud crashes, then the sound of something hitting the floor. What the hell is going on? Yells Ibiki. A second later a Chunin smashed through the doors and collapses in a broken heap in front of Sarutobi's desk. The group freezes when they see Onitenshi vanishing in a puff of smoke. Then they tense up as the sound of a woman screeching at the top of her lungs tears through their eardrums. You monster. I'll have you executed. Let go of me. Naruto walked into the office with a scowl and was dragging a brown-haired woman that everyone recognized as the secretary by her hair. The woman was flailing about frantically and shouting out insults left and right. The group was shocked. Sure, they knew of Naruto's personality, but they didn't expect him to be so violent. He normally just killed people quickly. Sarutobi was sweating nervously. He knew what this was about. Ah, Naruto, haha, what can I do for you this fine evening? Naruto yanked the woman up by her hair and forced her to face the Hokage. Well, first off, you can tell this bitch to watch her mouth when talking to me. Being called a freak demonic abomination that no one will ever acknowledge is not a way to improve my already deteriorated mood. Sarutobi gulped and Kakashi stood up. And what exactly did Hokage-sama do to put you in a bad mood, Uzumaki-san? Naruto sighed and released the woman, who instantly lunged and was put into a near-death state by a senbon to the neck. It involves 3 certain Hyugas suddenly moving in while I was away on my first mission. At this, Sarutobi gulped again while the others looked confused. I have merely come here to ask you not to do that again. If they were people I don't like or haven't met before, I would have thrown them right back out. At this, that same Chunin stood yet again. Hey you. That is the Hokage you are talking to. Show the proper respect. He can allow whoever he wants to live in that place of yours. Everyone tensed and waited for the kunai to get thrown, but were surprised when Naruto merely shook his head. I already know that, you dumb prick. However, just because Hokage Jiji can do it does not mean it is wise to do so. Understand? Because if I do not like the person or the person causes me any trouble, then I will throw them out, regardless of who said they could be there, and if the person refuses to leave after I have told them so, then they will be forced to leave. That apartment complex belongs to me. No one else, and I will not have a bunch of people I do not know suddenly barging in. The Chunin glared and was going to retort but was cut off by Sarutobi. Enough. Naruto is perfectly justified in expressing his annoyance. After all, how many times do I get complaints from everyone else, huh? He turned back to Naruto and said, I apologize for my actions, Naruto. I couldn't really think of a safer place for them other than under the highly protected roof of the one they swore their allegiance to. After all, you're their only support now. Naruto sighed and said, fine, but I want full payment for my mission. I completed it, but not within the time span. Sarutobi nodded and Naruto turned to leave. Oh, and I have allowed them to stay, he said before vanishing. Kurenai looked at the downed secretary and said, that is one scary-ass kid. The others could only nod. Sarutobi cleared his throat. Now then. About your genin teams. Scene change. As Naruto made his way back home and thought about what he should do, he took little notice of his surroundings. He contemplated going back to Hokage Jiji's office and asking for another mission, but soon decided against it. He contemplated stopping by Tsuchi's place to get a bit of lessons or perhaps a book on the basics of the sitter. He was getting tired of not knowing how to use it. He briefly wondered how his allies were going to handle their first missions. Ah, whatever. They're strong enough to handle themselves. Hey, look out. Oof. Naruto was suddenly barreled over by something smaller than him. A child, most likely. Hey. Watch where you're going, you imbecile. Yep. Definitely a child. He suppressed a sigh. This was just what he needed right now. Geez. Hey, idiot. You gonna say something? Yelled the child. Naruto got to his feet with a suddenness that sent the kid sprawling to the ground and flopping onto the ground with a dull thud. Watch where you're going, brat. He then turned to continue on his way. Hey. Don't walk away from me. Apologize. Naruto turned around with a glare that caused the kid to flinch. Leave me alone, he said. This was not the time to be on Naruto's nerves. The kid quickly regained his composure and said, screw you. After you knocked me over, you expect me to just drop it? Who do you think you are? Naruto turned around. By this time several villagers had gathered and were looking worried. First of all, you idiot. You crashed into me, so shut your mouth and leave. The kid scowled and ran up to him. Hey. Do you know who I am? I'm Sarutobi Konohamaru. The honorable grandson of the third Hokage. Show some respect. As soon as those words left Konohamaru's mouth, he was roughly lifted into the air by the front of his shirt. He gazed into Naruto's cold eyes and felt fear. But before he could say anything, a sunglasses-wearing Jounin appeared and scowled at Naruto. Hey, hooligan. Release the honorable grandson this instant. He shouted. Konohamaru felt a bit of courage return and he began to speak again. Yeah, put me down. You don't want to have to face my grandfather, do ya? If you hit me, then you're screwed. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the kid began to smirk. Hey. Release the honorable grandson. Yelled the Jounin once again. The villagers were getting antsy. They wanted to say something, but they knew they would only make things worse for the boy. Konohamaru gazed into Naruto's eyes defiantly and said, so you won't put me down? Are you scared? You can't touch me. If you do, then you face punishment from my grandfather. It's better for you to just apologize and put me down. Yeah. Listen to what he says, yelled the Jounin. Ha. I'm untouchable. You'd be an idiot to hit me. That was it. And the villagers saw it. They went to say something, but it was too late. Without a word, Naruto flung the kid up and over his head to the hard ground behind him. The kid landed squarely on the top of his head, skidded a couple of feet before collapsing into an unconscious heap. The Jounin was stunned. Naruto looked at the Jounin and said, I wouldn't care if the brat was related to Kami himself of the Shinigami. Make sure he knows that labels and association mean shit to me, and if you don't avert those hateful eyes, I'm going to pluck them from behind those ridiculous glasses." And with that, he was gone. The villagers moved over to where Konohamaru was unconscious to give the boy any kind of help. They also made it point to tell him that Naruto was not someone to piss off. The Jounin glared. "Don't think this is over, Fox," he grumbled. Scene change. Naruto arrived at his home feeling more annoyed than when he left. Neji, Hinata and Hanabi had gone, but Yuga was still home. He opened his apartment door and found her sitting on the couch watching the TV in a bathrobe. "Hi Naruto-kun," she said as she stood up. "How was your meeting with Hokage-sama?" Naruto sighed. "I had a talk with him." Yuga approached him and smiled. "How come you seem more annoyed then?" "It's because I had a run-in with a pompous little brat." "Ah, I see. Would you like to sit down?" she asked. "No. I would like to rest in my room." He suddenly froze when Yuga placed her hands on his shoulders and began to massage them. "Why not just relax with me, Naruto-kun? I can help you with your stress." Naruto's mind was suddenly running at a million miles a second. Crap, since when was she so suddenly bold? He knew she was attracted to him, but goddammit. Even now he could feel Yuga getting more intimate with her little massage. He pulled himself away from her arms and sighed in annoyance. This day was beginning to grind on his nerves. Yuga, slightly disappointed by his rejection, tried again. She lunged forward and grabbed him in a hug. Unfortunately, Naruto was not prepared for this and lost his balance. He fell onto his back with Yuga on top of him and sighed again. "Damn it, Yuga, get off of me. Today is not the day to grind on my nerves." Yuga closed her eyes and rested her head on his chest. "Am I that ugly to you, Naruto-kun? If I say yes, would it get you off of me?" She gasped. "Look. I know you're attracted to me. It's plainly obvious. But this is getting annoying. I already told you I have no need for an intimate relationship." Yuga didn't seem to hear him. She ran her fingers through his hair and said, "Naruto-kun, just let me stay like this for a little while longer." Arg. Naruto was annoyed. Yuga, although she was very beautiful, was too persistent for his liking. He admitted to himself that he was beginning to care a little for her, but he had cast aside such feelings. He wasn't going to expose himself to such things again lest someone capitalize on that and hurt him. He looked up and studied his ceiling as Yuga continued to play with his hair. "Yuga, get off of me." Was Yuga half asleep response. He growled and looked around for an opening. He spotted one in the form of one of his security puppets. With a very supple finger movement he attached a chakra string to the puppet. There was more than one way to get her off. But before he could do anything else though, something else happened. The front door opened and 3 people stepped in. "Naruto-sama, I passed the genin Iksa." Hanabi froze when she stepped into the living room and saw Yuga lying on top of Naruto. Neji and Hinata just walked over to the other side of the room and suppressed chuckles. Yuga looked up at Hanabi with half-lidded eyes and smiled. "Why you? What are you doing? Get off of Naruto-sama, you old hag." Yuga turned red and she leapt up. "What did you say, you little brat?" "You heard me. Someone like you doesn't need to be doing those kinds of things to Naruto-sama." By this time Naruto had leapt to his feet and opted to glare at both females. "Brat. What would you know of what I'm doing?" yelled Yuga. Hanabi scowled. "I know enough to know that Naruto-sama clearly finds you undesirable." Yuga let out a loud battle cry but was stopped when a senbon hit her in the neck and paralyzed her. Hanabi, Hinata and Neji looked over to Naruto and saw him glaring. "God damn it, both of you, shut up," he said. "You two had better work out your differences right away or I'm throwing you both out." He turned and headed to his room. On his way, Neji approached him. "My apologies, Uzumaki-san, for not informing you of Hanabi-sama's infatuation with you. I honestly forgot about the Anbu woman's infatuation as well and therefore failed to see the common conflict." Naruto just huffed and said, "Just make sure they keep quiet. I'm going to sleep because this day is just not the day for me to be awake." Neji nodded as Naruto yanked open his door and slammed it shut. Scene change. In the land of lightning's Kumagakure no Sato, the Raikage sat at his desk and scanned over the scroll. When it had first arrived he nearly ripped it in half but decided against it. Perhaps Konoha actually had something worthwhile in this message. He was shocked when he found that the scroll was only signed by a part of Konoha's council and that this message was sent in secret without the Hokage's knowledge. It was a request. The request was a simple one really. They wanted to hire an assassin. The entire situation was described within the scroll. He couldn't help but smirk. Konoha wanted their Jinchuriki assassinated because he was out of control. The scroll described Naruto's skill level, which was extremely high, and the scroll explained that Naruto was an extremely talented puppet user. Though things kept getting better with each line. The message also explained that the Jinchuriki has under his protection 3 Hyugas. two of which were the main house heirs, and that if the assassin completed the task he or she was free to take one of them. The Raikage smiled. This part of Konoha's council had just gotten themselves a deal. Time skip. Time passed after that day with no more surprises. Naruto took on 3 more B-rank missions that dealt with assassination and trained more in the area of weapons and taijutsu. Neji, Hinata and Hanabi instructed him on the basics of their variations of Jaiken, and he in turn translated them into finger movements for Yoshino. His puppetry if possible got even better. Able to make his puppets fight with the skill of an elite jounin and move at speeds of Anbu. He still could only control 1 puppet per finger, but he was trying to find a way around that. After all, he still needed to use Konoha's root sometime before he died or something. It was only after he read a section of Sasori's instruction scrolls that dealt with armor did he finally have his answer. Currently that was his newest puppet idea, and he was sure the others were going to be shocked once he was finished. Also, he ventured to Tsuchi's home regularly to learn how to use the sitter. Tsuchi was a surprisingly good teacher despite being paralyzed and had shown him which attacks could be performed with which musical notes. He then handed Naruto 2 books. One that dealt with learning how to read music and the other dealt with learning how to use the guillotine-like blade at the base of the instrument. He then gave him a scroll that described the process in which members of the clan bonded a spirit of some sort with their weapon and how to call it out. Tsuchi had told him since the sitter is already bonded to a spirit he merely needed to learn how to call it out. Naruto had nodded and began the annoying process of learning how to read music and how to fight with the blade part as well. Ryuga was another person he trained with. She had worked with him on his ninjutsu and his taijutsu every time she was free and was quite impressed with his progress. He also increased the weight on his limbs after noticing that he had gotten used to them a while ago. Ryuga was also the one who showed him the true secret of the Kage Bunshin. This significantly upped his training. It was crazy. Naruto's strength skyrocketed. Even now as he made his way through Konoha toward the market district, the villagers shied away from him. The way Naruto carried himself just screamed at them powerful. So they stayed out of his way. He had grown a bit. His muscles developed nicely, and if it weren't for the fact that he was Naruto, he would have had an army of fangirls. Of course that didn't stop some of the more daring women to steal a glance or two. His attire hadn't changed much either. He still wore the tattered baggy orange shorts that went down to his shins, and he still had his abdomen and lower back wrapped in white bandages. He no longer wore a cloak. He had replaced it for a sleeveless open orange trench coat. Ryuga had caught him sewing and stitching the item together one night, and when she asked him why orange, his simply replay was, "I like orange." Naruto made his way into the market district and looked around. He hadn't been here in ages. The street was crowded with people chatting happily with each other, and the smells of many different foods wafted through the air and cancelled out everything else. Naruto felt his stomach growl and sighed in annoyance. He decided to look around for a restaurant. After a minute he finally spotted one. It was called Ichiraku's Ramen Bar, and an admittedly delicious smell was coming from there. He entered without much thought. "Ah. Welcome to my shop, young ma." The old man who owned the shop froze when he saw Naruto. There was no way this was happening. He knew who this boy was and he could only stare. Naruto didn't see any hate in the man's eyes, but he was still getting annoyed. "Old man, I would like some ramen now," he said in a voice just above a growl. "Oh. Ah yeah, right, what would you like?" Naruto looked down at the menu and said after a minute, "I want a bowl of miso ramen and a bowl of beef." "Right. Am. 1 miso and 1 beef." "Okay," said the voice of a young woman. While the meal was being prepared, Ichiraku looked down and examined Naruto. So different than he was 8 years ago, he thought. Naruto noticed the man stare and narrowed his eyes. "What?" he said with a voice that could freeze an Amaterasu. Ichiraku snapped out of it and said, "Oh nothing. I'm sorry if I'm annoying you." Naruto merely huffed and closed his eyes, waiting for his meal. Finally, after a few more minutes, a pretty brunette walked out with Naruto's order and placed it down in front of him. "Here you go," she said in a sugary sweet but not fake voice. Naruto nodded and took his meal. He broke his chopsticks in half, muttered a quiet "Itadakimasu sp," and began to eat. He ate in silence and paid attention to nothing around him. He ate quickly but not so fast that he had no time to taste the food. For 6 minutes he slurped away and emptied both bowls of their contents before getting up, placing the money on the table, and walking out without a word. Am looked over at her father and said, "He was pretty cute." Ichiraku sighed and said, "That was Naruto." Am widened her eyes. It was really him. That same playful hyperactive 4-year-old that came in here with Hokage-sama that one time. "I'm afraid so, and it appears the rumors about him are true." Am sighed. "I hope he's doing okay." Scene change. The Raikage grinned down at the young woman kneeling before him. Her long pale blonde hair was unruly from weeks of travel and uncare. Evidence that she had just gotten back from a long and difficult mission. "Rise," commanded the leader of Kumo with a voice of authority. The young woman did as she was told and stood to face the rakiage with cat-like slanted eyes. She was looking with a bit of contempt and a black collar glowing seal around her neck. "You will wipe that look off of your face, girl," he said with narrowed eyes. "Forgive me, Raikage-sama." The raikage smirked and approached the girl. He circled around her several times and looked her up and down. "It appears you had a bit of a difficulty on your latest mission, eh?" The woman tensed. "It was nothing I couldn't handle. There were some unforeseen obstacles, but they were easily overcome." "I see. Well, it seems I need to intensify your training program, wouldn't you say?" "I do not think that is necessary, Raikage-sama." Electricity suddenly pulsed through her, formed the seal on her neck. "Ah." The woman dropped to her knees and clutched in vain at her neck. "You're not here to think, girl. Get to your feet," said the raikage as the current of electricity was cut off. The young woman got to her feet, gasping for air. "I have another task for you, girl." The raikage then pulled out a scroll and tossed it to her. She opened it and read through. When she was done, her eyes were wide. "Konoha." "Indeed. It appears they are having trouble with the target mentioned there." The woman nodded her head sadly and pocketed the scroll. "You know what you have to do." "Yes, Raikage-sama." "Good. Go clean yourself up and leave within the next 2 hours." "Yes, Raikage-sama." The woman then vanished and left the raikage smiling. "Haha, I wonder how this will turn out." Scene change. On his way back home, Naruto ran into Tsuchi. "Hey fox boy," said the boy excitably. "How's your skill with the sitter coming? You getting any better yet?" Naruto shrugged. An action that he found himself unconsciously doing more and more often. "My progress is satisfactory. I can cast minor genjutsu with a weapon, but I still have some sort of mental block preventing me from being able to do anything more complicated. I have no talent for genjutsu." Tsuchi nodded. "I guess that's understandable. What with your lousy chakra control?" "My chakra control is excellent, fool." Tsuchi laughed and said, "Relax, I was just kidding, geez. No need to get all uptight. Perhaps you just ain't cut out of genjutsu." "Perhaps, but I refuse to acknowledge that. Whatever is up with my mind that keeps me from doing genjutsu will be taken care of. I won't be inadequate in any field of ninja techniques." "I think you're a bit obsessed, but whatever. We all have dreams, right?" Naruto said nothing. Tsuchi and Naruto made their way toward Naruto's home in silence for a few more minutes before Tsuchi spoke again. "So how's life living with 2 girls that want your love, eh?" Naruto growled. "It's very irritating. Hanabi has even started sneaking into my room and cuddling next to me in the middle of the night, and Yuga wastes no opportunity to be alone with me. I'm going to start putting them to sleep at night with poisons if this doesn't stop." "Eh? What about Niji and Hinata?" Naruto's scowl deepened. "Those 2 fools find enjoyment in my problems. I'm going to paralyze them as well." Tsuchi chuckled. "Well, I think you crazy to shirk those 2 off like that when they clearly desire your company. First off, Hanabi is 9 years old, and second, I don't need company, and those fools need to hurry up and figure that out." Tsuchi chuckled and said, Old enough to kill, old enough to do anything else, you know. But I do see what you sayin'. I certainly wouldn't screw any 9-year-old girls. Well, anyway, see ya. My place is right around this corner. Keep up with the sitter practice and maybe you'll be as good as me someday." Naruto just nodded and continued on to his place. Tsuchi didn't live very far away from him at all. He entered his home by leaping up and jumping through a random window. That way Yuga couldn't glump him out of nowhere. He came into an empty room and nodded in satisfaction before making his way to his apartment. "Hey Uzumaki." Naruto stopped and looked at Sasuke Uchiha as he finished eating a rice bowl on his couch. "Uchiha," said Naruto. Sasuke nodded and got to his feet. "It's been a while, wouldn't you say?" asked Sasuke. Naruto shrugged and said, "I wouldn't really know. I do not pay attention to things like that." Sasuke shrugged as well and said, "I guess so." Things got quiet as Sasuke took out another rice bowl and bit into it happily. For a few minutes no one said anything. They just opted to get lost in their own thoughts. Naruto had just sat down in a chair when Sasuke said, "We finally got a higher ranked mission." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Our sensei Hada Kakashi deemed us worthy. Our mission is to guard an old bridge builder named Tazuna in the land of waves. We leave tomorrow." Naruto nodded. Sasuke smirked and said, "Well, I better get going. Your little purple-haired concubine is on the way." Naruto growled and placed a hand on the hilt of his katana. "Since when was it okay to make little barbs at me? You Uchiha and the others are heading toward a senbon the back of the skull." Sasuke just smirked and exited the door. Naruto narrowed his eyes and twitched a finger. "Damn. Ugh. Damn it, Uzumaki," yelled Sasuke. "Next time you'll think Uchiha," said Naruto as Sasuke walked away holding his stomach. Time skip. Naruto headed to his room and stripped down to his boxers. He didn't bother unsealing any of his puppets and just opted to flop down onto his bed. The day had been quite an odd one. He hadn't spent so much time outside of his apartment complex since his last mission. HS closed his eyes prepared for the next day. Perhaps he should see the Uchiha and the Hyuga off as they left for their first mission outside of the village. He had to admit. Those fools were beginning to grow on him a little. Scene change. She ran and ran without pause. Dashing through small towns, across prairies, through farming fields and into the vast forest. For a whole day she ran at speeds that most jounin could only dream of. The power of her inner demon drove her forward. She had a task to complete and she had to complete this task no matter how much she didn't want to. A million thoughts ran through her mind as she neared Konoha in the dead of night. Another Jinchuriki? I didn't know any more existed. What should I do? No, I already know the answer to that. I have no choice. At last she came upon the massive walls of the hidden leaf. She paused for just a second, then took a deep breath before leaping up and sticking to the wall with chakra. She ran up the wall and leapt down on the other side as silent as a cat and ducked to avoid being spotted. Now, where does he stay? She remembered the scroll saying something about the Konoha slums, so she headed in the direction of the place that looked the most run down. It didn't take her long at all to find her destination. It was instantly recognizable because of the puppets that continually clicked and marched around the premises. She was intrigued. His puppet techniques were extremely well thought out. She could see the seals and the wooden hands that controlled them. She approached slowly and severed the strings of the forest two puppets and caught them before they made a lot of noise falling. She then quietly leapt up onto one of the balconies. Instantly she had to dodge a wave of senbon needles and kunai. She calmed herself and continued on cautiously. Green gas suddenly blasted her in the face. She smirked. Poisons didn't affect her. She weaved in and out of traps for 20 minutes and was starting to get worried. Surely the target was awake now. But she didn't let that stop her. She had a task to complete and she had to complete it or die by the seal around her neck. Finally she arrived at the door marked Uzumaki and turned the knob. Shit. She slashed frantically at the numerous metal tentacles that tried to grab a hold of her and drag her into the void below. That was one hell of a trap. She could see a wooden floor below before the door and the floor closed up. She huffed a couple of times and examined the severed tentacles at her feet. There were 7 of them. Obviously meant to drag me down into an enclosed space, she thought. Should I try again? After a minute of contemplative thought she decided on another try. She turned the knob with tense muscles and inwardly sighed when the door opened to reveal a basic apartment room. The place was littered with wooden body parts, weapons and things preserved in jars. He's a charmer, she thought sarcastically. She made her way into the kitchen and looked around. It looked like he lived a pretty normal life. Though she knows firsthand that looks can be deceiving. She turned to the far end to the apartment and approached the room. She saw that there were numerous puppets on the ceiling, but they weren't attacking. She wondered why. She approached the room and opened the door. Thunk. She ducked just in time to avoid a horizontal slash from a katana. Who are you? The young woman looked up and saw her target. She gasped a second later. Thank you for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the next part, don't forget to turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Please like, subscribe, and comment below to let me know your thoughts. Check out my other videos for more content you might enjoy. Until next time, take care.